Welcome back, everybody. It's another lovely Wednesday evening. The normal day for these is the MLG Prizefight series. My name is OptimusTom, and as the camera pans over very slowly, you can see that we are joined once again by William Chobra Cho.
Thank you, Tom. Excited to be here again for the return of the MLG Prizefights, Day 2 kicking off in December here. What are we looking forward to tonight, Tom?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're looking for a really awesome matchup. We have Team Dignitas going against CLG North America, CLG Prime, whatever you wish to call them. They're the main team from Counter Logic Gaming, and both of these teams just as of a couple hours ago, have had some very interesting storylines, Chobra. So why don't we run down what's exactly happened?
Yeah, we're definitely going to need to review a little bit of those roster changes we faced with both of these teams today. If you guys haven't caught up to that, you'll be able to see that today. But, we'll start off with CLG Prime. Of course, we do have the remaining 4 members of CLG Prime returning. HotshotGG going in the top lane, which we've seen him recently return to. Doublelift on that AD carry, of course, famed AD carry player. Going to be supported, though, by Nhat Nguyen.
It's going to be really exciting to see. Everybody, of course, loves when we had Nhat Nguyen in the bottom lane on TSM EVO. So now Nhat Nguyen is going to be subbing. Locodoco, unfortunately, no longer on the roster of CLG Prime. Of course, everybody who reads Reddit, anybody who's been on the internet or played League of Legends within the past 24 hours has already realized that Locodoco is no longer on CLG Prime's roster. He's actually going to be turning to Korea. So big shout out to Locodoco as he makes his journey back to his home, because he is from Korea, correct?
Yeah, so he'll be returning, and hopefully we'll see him enter the pro scene once again when he gets back home. But, to round out the roster, of course, we do have bigfatlp in that mid lane with AP carries, we call them, but I don't know if we can call it that anymore because we are seeing a lot of changes. And of course, Chauster going to be once again in the jungle. It's still pretty new with the change between Chauster and HotshotGG and their roles. Kind of HotshotGG going back to top lane, Chauster in the jungle, but going to be an exciting game for sure.
I think it's a change for the better, actually. Chauster has been a very proactive jungler. He's played Imaqtpie, he's played Lee Sin. He can play basically any champion in the role whatsoever, and Hotshot really hasn't been able to do that. He used to play a lot of big beefy junglers. He played a little bit of Shyvana as well, but Chauster's actually gotten the role down pat. He of course was one of the main shot callers. Even when he was in support, he took big control over that bottom lane and really helped out Doublelift come into what we know as the Doublelift mechanics of his AD carries nowadays. Chauster in the jungle lets him call shots for the entire team. That of course means that he's going to be roaming around absolutely everywhere. We see him be one of the most active supports in warding the river and warding areas to keep his lane safe. HotshotGG in top lane loves his split pushing methods. He loves being up there in his own little land, his island, as we've seen M5 do that with Darien recently. Even Chauster's going to be warding for him right out of the get-go, so Hotshot's going to be safe. So with that, and with GG in the mid lane, GG used to play so passively and so farm heavy, nothing like he did in Season 1, which was, he was one of the top players in the game at that point. So GG, with Chauster in the jungle, has really started to return to his very deadly and scary role, where he's roaming around, he's playing Twisted Fate a little more often, he's playing characters like Evelynn and Diana. Even when he's been playing Ryze recently, we've seen him move out of that mid lane, really go to make plays for his team, and it's worked out fantastically for CLG.
And not to mention, HotshotGG is still commanding a lot of those target bans from their opponents. So that means that, even though he recently returned, people still think that he is a force to be reckoned with, and that puts him in a really good place to just kind of be in that island like you mentioned, Tom, and for HotshotGG to just do his own thing while Chauster goes ahead and helps command the rest of the team. But going against them tonight will be Team Dignitas, also with a roster change.
Yeah, they have some of their own little changes in their lineup as well. I believe we have the graphic again. So we have Zuna is going to be playing top lane. We've seen him recently on Team Fear playing top lane. Of course, a member of CLG Black, maybe a little traitorous CLG instincts going on there. Imaqtpie will stay as the AD carry. Scarra, of course, being a very powerful AP mid is in and of himself. Crumbz returning to his role in the jungle, which we saw him do when he was still a member of Curse Gaming. And Patoy going to stay as the support character.
Yeah, so once again, we're seeing some shifts. We're seeing a new member, of course, subbing in for at least tonight, Zuna being in that top lane, but Crumbz being back in the jungle is also something we need to note. Of course, he used to play on Curse as a jungler, but this is pretty last minute for him. So is he still going to be able to return, especially with the jungle changes? Has he been able to do his research and prepare for that, or is he going to just go in kind of blindly in today's match? We'll have to wait and see.
I think that's actually going to work out in favor for him. Because of the Season 3 changes coming in, not a lot of these pro players are going to know what they're doing. They're going to have a lot of things they want to play with and a lot of things that they can fall back on. It hasn't exactly been the longest amount of time since Crumbz has been in the jungle. It's only been less than a year, so it's not like he's forgotten everything from the jungle. Of course, he could actually in solo queue be practicing the jungle as well. He switches between the two. Top lane and junglers, of course, they overlap in a lot of champions. We could, of course, see characters like Shen being played in top lane or jungle. Same thing with Olaf, both of which have been very popular picks in recent times. So Crumbz, he's going to be a little rusty, and he's going to be a little shaken up with all the Season 3 changes going on, but he's not going to be in the worst position in the world. So I think it might actually work out very well for them. Zuna, of course, coming over from Team Fear and CLG Black, he commands a decent amount of target bans in and of himself, and a lot of the same characters that he plays as does HotshotGG in the top lane. So we can potentially see contesting over Shen. That may or may not be banned out, just in case either team wants to be able to snatch it away from one another. We could also see Aurelia being a point of contention. Hotshot doesn't really play a lot of Aurelia, but Zuna has a deadly Aurelia, as well as Jack that's Hotshot's been playing around with just in recent amounts of time. So now we have the whole, he was on CLG Black, he was trained to basically practice with CLG, he knows their champions inside and out, and that could really work against CLG Prime here.
Yeah, it's going to be a dangerous game for CLG Prime, and we'll have to wait and see to go into the game. But like you mentioned, those new changes coming in and the similar champions, we talked about this yesterday, Tom, but it's all a mind game when it comes down to the pick and ban phase. And yesterday we kind of had to hypothesize on why we were missing out on a ban from X-Quantic. But today, like you mentioned, are they going to try to steal away champions? And again, in the mid lane, it's going to be GG versus scarra, two of the top AP mid players in North America. Are they also going to have that same problem, in which case 3 bans isn't going to be enough for either team? So we'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things coming to Season 3 a lot of summoners have had on their minds. Is 3 bans going to be enough regardless of the professional scene, or regardless if it's going to be playing in solo queue with you and a friend? So, I mean, we have a lot of different things that we could see in this game. A lot of it, I think, one of the biggest lane matchups we're going to have to look at, there are a lot of roster changes going around, of course. The junglers are a little bit different from the side of Team Dignitas. We have the support character in the bottom lane. Maybe Doublelift's not going to have a lot of synergy with Nhat. However, he has been duo queuing with them for a decent amount of time. We actually saw him duo queuing with Nhat before Loco Doco arrived at the CLG house in the first place, so they do have a little chemistry at one another. I think the big matchup this game, though, like you mentioned before, it's going to be GG against scarra in that mid lane. Both of these players had been known for a very passive, let's farm the game and try to carry it from their kind of style, but they've broken out of that shell. We already talked about in a lot of detail how GG has benefited from the fact that Chauster in the jungle is a lot more aggressive and more proactive on the map. Same thing now for scarra. How is that going to affect his matchup? Scarra has been playing a little bit more aggressive mid laners. Diana, on any patch she's going to be played right now, is a very broken champion, so that could be banned out or taken away depending on the picks and bans phase. Evelynn, of course, we haven't seen Scarra playing a lot of her, but he does still have a very powerful Karthus. He does still have a very powerful Ryze, and some of those champions, which way is it going to go? We saw Nhat last night in the prize fights, bringing Ryze into these Season 3 changes, and he floors beautifully for it. Has Scarra been playing around with these changes? Has he actually gotten some practice with Crumbz in the jungle from just scrimming or duo queuing? We really don't know, and I think that's going to be a big factor in this mid lane matchup.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Tom. Like you mentioned, Chauster going to be supporting GG a lot. Is Crumbz up for the job? Is Crumbz going to apply enough counter pressure that maybe Chauster's just going to have to turn to another lane so that they can spread out that pressure across the map, and GG can just go back into a Season 1 or Season 2 style farming war against scarra. Also, scarra has been talking about the item changes, the mastery changes, and he's mentioned some of the new AP items, saying he's not sure if they're really worth the gold. Are we going to see those new items come in, or like you mentioned, is he going to return to what he's used to? Go for that Ryze, go for that Karthus, and just go for a late game build, building items such as Rod of Ages, Deathcap, the standard build in AP mids, and try to dominate from the mid lane with that.
I think, and now that we talked about the top lane, we discussed a bit of the jungle. The mid lane's been taken care of. Why don't we head down into that bottom lane matchup for a little bit? Imaqtpie and Patoy have been working together for a long time now. We saw Patoy sub at a recent LAN event for Curse EU, and he did phenomenally. He wound up working very well with the team, despite, I was talking to him at the event, he said that they hadn't even practiced at all. They played 2 games, and that was it. They went into the tournament, and they took out TSM. So it was a very impressive feat. So regardless of who Patoy's playing with, he's doing extremely well. Same thing for Imaqtpie. He's been working with him for a while. We've seen QtPie recently also bust out a lot of unconventional AD carries. He's been bringing out the Twitch, which Afro move, of course, made extremely popular. He has the potential to also be one of those AD carries that can play Draven. On the flip side, Doublelift has also been breaking out Twitch. He's been playing a lot more Caitlyn. Of course, the CLG style Caitlyn Nunu bot lane. If anybody's going to be able to adapt to supporting a new AD carry, it's going to be Nhat, who's supported for almost everybody in the scene right now.
Yeah, and not only is he a good support in general, but he has excellent map awareness. He kind of has the same style as Chauster used to in having that map awareness, the game sense, more so than his support micro. That's what brings him to light. And with him and Chauster combined, CLG is going to have a lot more time to set up plays, go for those larger picture game plans. And so that, kind of Chauster can focus in that top and mid lane while we have Doublelift and Nhat Nguyen going in that bottom lane. Nhat can make sure that Double can just purely focus on that micro we talked about so that he can dominate the lane and hopefully the late game.
One of the other things we really want to see what happens in this game is now that each team has a bunch of subs, they don't really have a full roster yet. Unfortunately, both teams will end up losing members within a couple hours of one another. So we're going to have to see, are these teams going to be experimental with their builds a little bit more so than we saw X-Quantic and Curse going last night? And are they going to really delve into those Season 3 changes? Of course, the jungle has been changed, ambient gold gain has been changed, but a lot of change has been brought upon the top lane, especially that bottom lane. Doublelift, of course, has his new favorite toy in the world. Doesn't have to worry about getting that Guardian Angel. He's going to be able to get that Mercurial Scimitar, which basically is Quicksilver Sash plus BF Sword spells Doublelift all over it. Are we going to see him getting something like that? Are we going to see top lane Zuna subbing? Is he going to have a little bit of fun? Is he going to be going for something like Blade of the Rune King, which we can play? We are actually talking about beforehand when we were streaming and just checking out Season 3 changes. Blade of the Rune King seems like it's absolutely amazing on a character like Jax, which he totally loves to play. Is Hotshot going to try to do something a little bit split pushy style? Could we see him pick up Galio and go for the banner? I can't even remember the name of it right now. The promote item. It says CLG all over it. It's an item that gives you promote. It adds ability power. It's going to be adding armor, and Hotshot can just split push away because it gives an aura to benefit all the minions in the top lane too.
Yeah, that item I'm really hoping CLG brings out, not only because that fits their style, but because that item is very oddly built. It builds out of an Emblem of Valor, I believe, and then a Blasting Wand. Not two items you usually combine together, so we'll see if CLG brings it out, what's the timing for it. Again, a lot of people are starting to realize League of Legends is also a timing game, just like a lot of other RTS and MOBA games. Has CLG figured it out, or is today going to be an experimental phase for them?
I really hope we get to see a lot of new things being thrown around in this game. I think that's what everybody tuning in for these first of the season 3 matches really wants to see. They want to see their favorite players experimenting with these items. They want to see what they're going to be using them for, and they want to see how they're going to work out in pro play, so they could use it for solo queue. Let's be completely honest here. A lot of us out here looked at these pro players not only as fan favorites, but they looked at them kind of as their idols. We look, of course, at solomid.net, CLG Gaming, Curse, of course, with LOLpro. All these websites have lots of guides out there, and a lot of them have now been updated for Season 3, but we haven't seen a lot of the pros playing around with them. Even the same thing with solo queue. A lot of the pros have only been streaming for a little bit of time now. These rosters, both of these have been shaken up a little bit, so potentially these two teams haven't been playing with the changes a lot recently either. Are these things going to be big factors in this game, or is it going to work out like normal? Well, guys, we're going to find out in just a little bit. We're going to head to a quick commercial break while we're waiting for everybody else to get into the lobby. You have about almost all of Dignitas, only missing a couple members of CLG. So we'll be right back after a short break for game number 1. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the MLG Prizefights here on another lovely Wednesday evening in New York City. My name is OptimusTom, and joining me for this prize fight, when it does get underway eventually, will be Will Chobra Cho.
Yep. And we are going to have CLG Prime and Team Dignitas if you haven't caught on to that yet. And we talked about the roster changes so far. But, you know, this also means a lot, not only from yesterday's game between Curse North America and X Quantic, but CLG Prime and Dignitas, two of the top teams in North America. Are they ready with the season changes? And also, is this going to highlight maybe any big changes coming for the North American scene in Season 3? We've already heard a lot of talk about, you know, scrimming schedules, gaming houses, people really picking it up after the Asian scene. Even the European scene started picking it up this past weekend. We saw Fnatic come out of nowhere, going back to kind of their glory days of in the, you know, world top teams. Asian teams, of course, have consistently been in the top. Can North America rise back to the top also?
And between these two teams, they've been in the top 3 of those North American teams for a very long time, pretty much since the North American scene really got underway with League of Legends. It was one of the first to really do so. We, of course, had Team Solo Mid sitting at the top of the North American scene for the longest of time. CLG was always kind of right below them, and Dignitas kind of able to trade blows, but they're just jockeying for position for the longest amount of time. Now, Team Solo Mid's kind of fallen out of their former glory days, but at the same time, rising from the ashes of the Bay life there has been Dignitas and CLG Prime just really working at it, going back and forth and taking some of these top tournament positions. Unfortunately for Dignitas, they weren't able to qualify for the last LAN event that CLG Prime had attended, where they put up the best showing from any of the North American teams. Loco Doco, of course, was a big point and part of that one because he offered a new perspective to CLG's play style. They used to like to sit back and farm. They used to like to be reactive rather than being extremely proactive. When Chauster switched to the jungle, we've beaten this into the ground. He is everywhere on the map. He is one of the busiest junglers in North America, and even though he played the support position or the AD carry position in that bottom lane for the longest time, one of the ones that kind of sits back there and is the only thing they really know about junglers is, well, when they gank us, we die or hopefully run away, or if ours doesn't come, we complain about it. He's been doing a really good job at just being everywhere on the map and being all over the place for his team, while also making a lot of the shot calls. Also, on the side of Dignitas, they've been extremely successful ever since they've been able to pick up Patoy as a support character. He's been bringing a little bit of convention that their old support Locust really never brought to the team. Lulu came out. Patoy picked him up. He's been playing extremely well while being Lulu. Blitzcrank, these aggressive supports that Lucas wasn't able to play. He was more a Soraka Tarek kind of guy, and that was pretty much it. Patoy has brought a little more variety and breathed a little bit more life into that Dignitas bottom lane and made them one of the top contenders in the North American scene. Same thing with Scarra. As his more aggressive playstyle got to play throughout the rest of his team, Scarra joined on top of that in the bandwagon and figured, if you guys are going to be doing a lot of action in the bottom lane, this lets me roam around, this lets me take enemy rates, get my farm score up, this lets me harass the other jungler, this lets me roam to the top lane, and it also lets me do whatever I want on the map, but I could still carry my team from that position. This is just absolutely insane to see how the evolution of these two teams has come this far, just at the same exact time that the team they were really rivals with has kind of fallen down.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of good points, and you know, continuing from yesterday we talked about maybe we'll see some new things because we have a Curse North America and X Quantic who have players who are known to be experimental, but today we have players who are known to be very calculating, who do their math craft and theory crafting. We have Scarra and Dignitas who, you know, on his own stream, he's just always commentating, always analyzing the situation. He brings out some safe builds, but albeit safe, they're going to be perfected to the bottom line. And then, of course, on CLG, we have Chauster, who's praised for his game knowledge. You know, throughout North America, everyone really recognizes his game sense and his game knowledge. And in the jungle, we have a lot of big changes. The jungle's changed, the items have changed. He's going to be able to utilize that a lot better, and also maybe share that knowledge with the rest of the team, especially for Doublelift, who's really going to want to focus on his micro. If they can do the math craft together and Doublelift just gets in a comfort spot, he's going to rise as possibly the best AD in the world.
And a lot of those masteries and runes have changed around. Penetration we've seen has been really the bane of almost everyone's existence so far in these first couple days of the patches. Can Doublelift adjust his pages, and is he going to be running a more armor penetration heavy rune page? Will he maybe be going for more? The attack speed items have been a little bit more expensive recently. Is he going to be able to go for penetration, mix a little bit of damage in there, and get some of these new attack speed items to kind of benefit from that? Is he going to be going for that Mercurial Scimitar like we were talking about earlier? Seems like a complete Doublelift item. Speaking of Doublelift, actually, he's now in the lobby. If you, ladies and gentlemen, you probably both follow all these teams on Twitter, but if you saw, Doublelift said he was going to go take a nap, but he's also been known to be the guy that said, 24 hours. That's a new record. So now that we have everybody in the lobby, we got underway with game number 1. As soon as these guys say that they are all set, I'm just going to let them know that we're ready when they are.
Yeah, should be an exciting game, everyone. Once again, MLG Prizefights here from New York, New York. It's going to be between CLG Prime and Team Dignitas. And it's on the live client, guys. If you haven't been watching, it's on the live client, so with all the new changes. But before we go into the picks and bans, I just want to hop on what you said. We were talking about the armor pen. Is that actually going to give a lot more room for the mid lane players, GG and Scarra? Are they going to take advantage of the fact that armor, either the enemy tanks are going to have to build more armor or actually build less? They're going to have to make a compromise either way. There's a lot of armor pen options. That's going to come into a huge factor, especially with players like Doublelift, Zuna, and Hotshot.
All right, guys, so everybody in the lobby is saying they're ready. GG is the host, so he's the only one that isn't actually in the house with CLG, so no one can really kick him to get it started. So we'll be underway in just a second. As you said, Hotshot and Zuna, they have contention over very tanky top laners. Malphite, Shen, even sometimes Aurelia, maybe Jack to be important in contention. Jax and Aurelia, they're going to be blowing up a lot more often because the armor penetration changes, because armor being a little bit more expensive to buy. These tanky top laners also, are they going to be going for the reduction or are they going to be going for the HP? We're going to have to find out as, guys, we've hopped into picks and bans.
All right, so CLG did get the blue side, so we'll see if they, go for any new bans, or again, are both teams going to go for safe bans and then experiment with their picks? We already talked about possible contest of, who gets the top lane champions, who gets the mid lane champions, and we're going to see Diana being banned out. We kind of expected that Diana really strong in any of the patches in recent history.
And by banning out Diana, CLG, of course, takes that overpowered, I'm going to say safe to say overpowered champion off the table. This let Dignitas ban out Twisted Fate, targeting down bigfatlp. So now we're going to see there's a Rise ban going out. So we talked about Scarra's Rise. Not a lot of people might have agreed with us, but apparently CLG does.
Yeah, and all 3 champions so far have been mid lane, and then we're moving on to the top lane. Shen being banned out. So far, still pretty traditional bans. Nothing new, but this is going to mean that these players are going to have to bring out some new champions and new builds, hopefully.
And that's always exciting to see. So we'll have to find out if the top lane is going to continue to be contested, or jungle could also be contested. Of course, we know Chauster is an extremely good Lee Sin player. That's the champion we've seen him move all over the map with the most. Rengar, of course, also being banned out. We also note that Dignitas has been practicing Rengar when they had Dominate on their lineup. Fortunately, he's not with them anymore. Doesn't mean that Crumbz can't take up the mantle. Nunu has been banned out, so that eliminates the Caitlyn Nunu bottom lane from the side of CLG, but Lee Sin is wide open, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them pick that up for Chauster here.
Now that we're talking about Crumbz in the jungle, I have to wonder, are they going to bring out Nocturne and possibly the new legendary skin that just came out today? Crumbz has been known to be a great Nocturne player, and a lot of the new changes favor Nocturne. We have a ton of armor pen, potentially the Ravenous Hydra being a favorite item on him. We've seen it quite a bit in public games, so we'll see what they come up with, but they are highlighting Lee Sin on CLG's part, and that wouldn't be surprising at all.
No, this is pretty much the expected pickup here. They're going to take that one away from the side of Dignitas. Of course, Zuna could play a decent Lee Sin in top lane. We really don't know if Crumbz has played a lot of Lee Sin in the jungle in recent times, so taking that one away, giving it to Chauster, even if they decide to experiment with some new items or they're a little unfamiliar what's going to be going on in these Season 3 changes, falling back onto something that Chauster is very comfortable with and the team is comfortable with him playing because of how much vision he gives them is an absolute must.
So now we're on to Crumbz and Zuna up next. Of course, they could be trading, but we'll see what they pick up. I mean, Lee Sin being picked up, again, safe to assume that it's going to be in the jungle, which means Dignitas is still forced to kind of show their hand early, unless they want to pick one of those champions that you can see in multiple places. Maybe like a Vladimir, you could see him in mid or top. Of course, he's been favored a little bit more in mid in recent days compared to the top in the middle of Season 2, but we are looking at an Amumu actually locked in right away, so Amumu jungle, we are seeing a kind of rise of AP tanky junglers coming back because of the jungle changes. The camps are a little bit harder, so Amumu, but they're going to have to cover him a lot better in the early game because it is a tougher clear in level 1. And then Sona, again, safe picks. It shows their hand, but pretty safe choices.
They got a lot of AoE coming out here too. Amumu's Curse to the side mummy and Sona's Crescendo means they're going to have a lot of lockdown to keep CLG in place if they're going with a slippery team composition. At least it's a slippery champion in and of himself. These two are going to keep Chauster out of moving around, bouncing between targets in team fights, which is going to be a good point in time because if they can kill Chauster, they can kill their Oracle's Elixir. Of course, Oracle's doesn't last forever anymore, so it's not that primary of a target. However, if you knock it down within those first 5 minutes they buy it, that's going to be a huge waste of money. We completely forgot to mention the fact too that Zuna in his CLG Black days played a lot of jungle, so there's also the chance that even though they say Zuna's going to be subbing for them for top lane, that doesn't mean that he can't swap it up in the last second and have Zuna playing a champion in the jungle jungle, and Crumbz going into the top lane with a champion that maybe he feels more comfortable with in a certain matchup. So if you're CLG, you're in these picks right now, you're going to have to figure that out. We do have actually Janna being locked in. Nhat Nguyen's going to wind up playing Janna, and he's played a lot of Janna in past amount of times. He's going to be going to the bottom lane with Doublelift Ezreal. That shield is going to be keeping him really safe. He's going to have the Howling Gale and the Zephyr, of course, to supply a little bit of pressure. Sona's not going to be the biggest, tankiest champion of support lineup in that bottom lane. So Ezreal with Doublelift, he could arcane shift forward, put a little aggression on. Just going to be up to PewDiePie to see what he winds up playing as the enemy ADC.
And I think you called it right on the spot, Tom. Ezreal and Lee Sin already two very slippery champions. That AoE, if they can land it, it's going to be huge for Dignitas. But if they can't, it's going to be an absolute terror for them because they're going to have to either waste using their ultimates on single targets or maybe miss them altogether. So we'll see if, these two teams can really play the positioning game once again. That's going to come into play, and Janna's really going to help with that too. If a Mumu jumps in, tries to get his Curse of the Sad Mummy, a really quick Monsoon can push him out right as it's being cast. And so now it's also up to Nhat Nguyen. We are looking at Eve being locked in. You mentioned Evelynn too, and now that's a very interesting, it does add some AoE, but it's going to mean now Dignitas is trying to counteract Chauster's movement with Evelynn's movement.
And they lock in a Kayle pickup as well. I haven't really known the Zuna or Crumbz to play a lot of Kayle, but this is a little interesting. I mean, they have the Evelynn on their side, which it takes it away from GG. GG's been playing a very powerful Evelynn. Of course, everybody woke up, and I believe it was against Team Fear. He wound up getting a quadra kill in one engagement, and then wound up carrying his entire team on his back for the whole game. They know that GG's been playing a little bit more roamy and a little more aggressive playstyle with his mid laners, and when Chauster's being extremely mobile on the map, that's when GG's been at his deadliest. So they gave away Lee Sin. They want to take away a champion that's equally as mobile as that banned out Diana from bigfatlp. Kayle, in the meantime, I don't necessarily know what this is going to be for. We could maybe see a Vayne pickup. Sona, of course, will be able to zone for Vayne a little bit, but if Janna lands a Howling Gale and Ezreal goes forward with his arcane shift, that could be deadly for the support character, and Vayne's going to be left all by herself, not going to be able to farm out. I'm kind of looking to see maybe a little more pokey character, maybe a Corki on the side, somebody that will want to live with that Kayle ultimate on them. At the same time, though, we could see this being used on Evelynn or Mumu to get that hard initiation they want and just secure them throughout these team fights.
And we do have the rest of the lineup picked up for CLG. And we have a Teemo in the game.
That's a Teemo.
A Teemo in the game. Not only is it, it's exciting just because it's Teemo, of course, but Teemo, a lot of people have been talking about how strong Teemo is with this new patch. People are expecting him to be nerfed immediately in the next patch. He has so much going for him. There's a lot of on-hit going on, even in the Mastery. With Spell Sword, you can put up 5% of your ability power in, in every auto attack, and then we have so many changes. He's going to be able to utilize that Malady a lot more. There's just a lot of options for Teemo, and it really fits HotShot's playing style too. Split push with Teemo, and then if he gets in an engagement, he's going to deal a lot of damage, kite back and forth, poke them. It's going to be devastating for Dignitas, but then, of course, they round it out with a pretty safe, traditional, AP mid carry with Anivia. And Anivia has a lot more options now, too. With the changes in the items, the Warmogs change, everything, that goes into that. And then, of course, Athene's being nerfed a little bit, but there's a lot of other options, like Twin Shadows. That was the item you were mentioning yesterday. Are we going to see that come into play for Anivia?
Well, it looks like we had a little bit of a mix-up here at the Champions. Chauster saying in the lobby that it's 0-1 in favor of CLG. Don't know if that Nasus pickup was supposed to be a Nasus or not. I mean, that could have been an AD carry Kayle. Kayle could have been also a placeholder. Unfortunately, it was Elise. Nasus was actually an Elise pickup, who, as we were talking about before with Liandry's Torment, could be a very, very deadly top lane character. That magic penetration and the health benefits, as well as the ability to... I don't remember what our calculations were, but I remember Elise could hit the cocoon, that's an immobilization, and gets the percent damage away from Liandry's Torment. Same thing with her Q. It's going to be dealing a little bit of debilitation as well as percent HP damage on its own, plus more percent HP damage.
Yeah.
Then you switch into spider form, you repel on top of them. That, of course, doesn't add any extra damage, but your Q from your spider form bite certainly does. That's a large chunk of HP going to be missing from the top laner, and Teemo doesn't have a lot of HP.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good pickup against Teemo. And, with Elise, even though it's not Nasus, that means Kayle is most likely going to be in that duo lane with Sona. So Kayle going to be the AD carry. What do you think about that matchup? We have Kayle and Sona, traditionally, of course, barring any lane swaps. Kayle and Sona going up against Janna and Ezreal.
Well, that's an interesting matchup. We talked about looking down the items, the remake to Ginsu's Rage Blade, the ability that it adds when you're below 50% health to give you that increased attack speed, as well as the extra lifesteal spell vamp, Kale's going to be benefiting from both these. Kale activates her E. She's going to be doing that AoE splash damage with magic damage. She also gains a ranged attack. She's a very powerful character, but the one thing is she is, of course, very fragile. Some of these item changes could be extremely beneficial. There was a topic on general discussion before talking about Ravenous Hydra and how it's going to interact with Kale and her E. According to what we could discern from the thread, it treats her as if she's melee. So if she's able to get those Tiamat procs on top of her E splash damage, on top of something, you know, along the lines of the Rage Blade, she could just wind up working out amazingly for this composition with the Sona and the Amumu lockdown, as well as the Evelyn, the Agony's Embrace coming out. If everybody's in this clumped AoE and Kale hits the E button, everybody could vaporize.
Yeah, it's going to be a dangerous pickup. And of course, we also talked about that Rage Blade passive. How does it work? It says it stays until you exit combat. So does that mean Kale can risk jumping in, losing 50% of her health, popping that ultimate on herself, and then retaining that extra attack speed, spell vamp, and lifesteal until the fight is over? Could be a devastating combo, Tom.
Well, something that makes me feel really good about ourselves right now, Chobra, is the fact that we were discussing all this beforehand, and now the pros are playing it. So that makes me think that we're on the right track with something, at least in our theory crafting. And the rest of you guys out the rest of the summer is on Reddit, general discussion, of course, maybe onto something with Teemo, if Teemo is actually going to be doing a lot of devastation in this one. But we talked about it already. Anivia, a pretty safe mid lane matchup going up against Evelyn. We've seen this a couple times. Evelyn, of course, is going to be able to roam a little bit better. Anivia, you know, she can just sit in that farm lane. She can, of course, stall pushes, but CLG's also been using Anivia a little more actively. They've been using it to zone enemies out from underneath their own tower, as well as helping push with this. So we have the Teemo split push possibility. We have the Anivia who could stall or push. We have Chauster going to be jumping everywhere on the map, and if he's in the bottom lane, we're going to have Doublelift and Nhat Nguyen, of course, aiding with Chauster, pushing down a third lane. So it's going to be up to Dignitas to react to this. The AoE composition is great for team fights, but as CLG stays slippery and they stay split across the map, the initiation is really not going to be there, but CLG, they have to worry about getting caught.
That is true. And of course, also, we talked a lot about the new support items yesterday. A lot of new actives, and both of these support players, like you mentioned, like to be active. They have good game sense. They have good awareness. Are they going to rush any of these new items maybe to get a little bit of an edge in the lane? Are we going to see a banner of command on CLG side on any of the champions? We'll have to wait and see, but there's another point we haven't talked about. Are either team going to pick up that early ward from the masteries and then place it for either an invade or to prevent it?
That's a really good point, of course. We have an active jungler on the side of Lee Sin. Those level 2 ganks, with Lee Sin getting a red buff, they've been one of my favorite things in League of Legends since Lee Sin's been put into the game. So that's a very deadly thing. If Patoy is going to be getting that Biscuiteer mastery, he's of course going to have a little bit more sustained in lane, so they of course might be inclined to trade a little bit more. If Kale's going to be a squishy character and they decide to go in on him, and they're going to have the heal coming out from Sona, they decide to go like, well, Sona has no HP, let's jump on her. She has a biscuit, all of a sudden she uses that for the sustain. Oh crap, we might not win out in that trade anymore. Same thing, if she picks up the ward from that, I can't even remember what the name of the mastery is now. It's something about watching, or Watcher I think is actually the name of the mastery. But if they have that, they could deter those level 1 Lee Sin ganks. So ladies and gentlemen, we're getting into game number 1, CLG Prime against Dignitas. I know you guys are really excited for this one, so are we, and we're going to get right into the game right after a quick commercial, guys, so stay tuned. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, after that very short break, just like I promised, to the MLG Prizefights. OptimusTom alongside Chobra about to jump into game number 1 between CLG Prime and Team Dignitas. Just waiting for the load screen with all these pretty banners to go away, and we will be in the level 1 action.
Yeah, so again, a lot of big matchups in this game, and we're excited for maybe any level 1 interaction, but, you know, judging from yesterday games, I think it's safe to assume both teams will probably try to play it safe, at least in game 1. Judge what the other team has prepared with this new patch, and then maybe we'll see some more drastic changes in game 2. But champion-wise, we already have Teemo alone, who's going to bring a lot of change into this match, so it's going to be an excellent match. Don't go anywhere. We're just waiting on that low screen like Tom said, but if there is a level 1 engagement, who do you favor?
Well, I mean, once we get a good look at the champions, we're going to be able to break it down a little bit better. We are just loaded into the game now, so why don't we talk about it already? We, of course, have on the side of CLG Prime going to be your blue team, and then on the opposite side, on your red team, it's going to be Dignitas. And right away, we get into a pause screen, but that's okay, because at least we'll have the champions up while we look very pretty on your screens. There we go. Isn't that awesome? Look at this.
That's beautiful.
I could, like, reach out and grab it, and I could pull it towards me, but it doesn't. I could take the biscuit out. Yeah. So, but unfortunately, we can't do that no matter how hungry I am. But now at least we have the champions on screen, so we can talk about those level 1 engagements. The side of CLG, they have Anivia with Flash Frost. They have Teemo who can offer a blind, which not a lot of people will consider a crowd control effect, but when you're going to be relying on auto attacks at level 1 for almost all of your damage, it could really turn the tide of a fight if you put that on the AD carry, or you put that on that top laner that's going to be trying to deal a decent amount of auto attack. And look at this. I can control this with my mind. That's how good I am at this game. But other than that, you have a little bit of crowd control coming out from Nhat Nguyen's Janna. He's going to be able to pop that Howling Gale or the Zephyr, whichever one's going to be working out a bit better. Probably that Howling Gale, because he's, of course, going to be able to knock up multiple members from the side of Dignitas. On the flip side, Amumu, you don't want to start out with that Bandage Toss. Evelynn, you have a decent amount of damage with Hate Spike if the enemy team is in the same area, but you'd have no hard CC. If Zuna goes for his Cocoon at level 1, yeah, they'll have a 1.5 second stun, but they're going to have no damage output from any of Elisa's skills.
That's very true. And also looking at items, I want to point out, Amumu picked up the Machete. Going for the Machete start, of course, it is a pretty good jungle item, but so does that mean we're bound to expect a Spirit Stone coming out of that into possibly an Ancient Golem upgrade?
Most likely. We've seen this on a lot of champions in recent time. We've seen it, of course, just yesterday. The X-Quantic against Curse North America matchup. Both junglers wound up picking up the... I completely forgot the name of this the Ancient Golem thing.
Yeah.
The Spirit Stone of the Ancient Golem. That's our synergy right here. Our casting pair. You guys can tell that one from there. But the Spirit Stone of the Ancient Golem being picked up, of course, is going to be adding almost everything that Mumu wants out of the jungle. It's like a blue buff almost. It's not exactly the same thing. It gives a little bit more sustain. Doesn't really give the mana regen and everything else that a blue buff would be doing. But a Mumu being one of those junglers that's really dependent on getting something that can sustain him like a blue buff, it's going to be extremely important. We could actually see on the flip side, actually you guys really can't see it as well, but the same item build has been picked up from the side of CLG with Chauster. We were talking about this earlier. Are they going to be going for the Spirit Stone of the Lizard Elder, something to be on more aggressive junglers? Or is it going to be a safe Wriggles Lantern start because it's Lee Sin, he likes jumping around the wards, and Chauster loves putting wards all over the map?
Yeah, I think in this case, we have to assume it's going to be a Wriggles Lantern because of that ward, and also they want that jungle control. You know, if Amumu goes for the Spirit Stone of the Ancient Golem, Lee Sin having that Wriggles Lantern to get that extra damage onto objectives such as Dragon and Baron is really going to help them. And if Lee Sin wants to go aggressive and invade, the jungle's tough right now, so having that Wriggles Lantern is really going to help him against someone who has a little bit of a tougher time in the earlier rounds, such as Amumu.
I want to talk about this top lane matchup, but Zuna, unfortunately, wasn't able to buy any of his items. We can see right down below us that Hotshot has picked up that Crystalline Flask, the bottle of League of Legends. In addition to this, he's picked up what I could only make out as one ward so far, so we could be getting an additional item on top of all this. Could maybe be going for, if he's going AP Teemo, we could see him picking up a Fairy Charm to go for either Philosopher's Stone or maybe going for a Chalice of Harmony, because Elise still going to be doing a lot of magic damage, although the magic resistance might not be as effective as Elise is going to be going for penetration.
Yeah, and also we need to mention that Kale just picked up a longsword. Of course, there's going to be gold left over, but not much. So going for the longsword straight from the start, and most likely building into a Vampiric Scepter. So, you know, we can already tell that PewDiePie wants to go for that early sustain, and what are we expecting from that? Are we going to see a Blade of the Ruined King, or maybe just a traditional Bloodthirster?
One other thing you have to keep in mind is he could potentially be going for a Hextech Gunblade later on down the line with the Vampiric Scepter. He could be building that into the Bilgewater Cutlass. He could be upgrading that later on. He could also just be going for a start where he wants to go maybe some utility mastery. Maybe he's got the wealth and the greed, so he's going to be able to pick up the longsword in addition to some pots to keep him sustained in that lane. Maybe he's going to be counting on Sona and looking at both these support characters. If you guys out there have been wondering if the Biscuiteer and the Ward masteries have been worth it, well, both of these guys have picked up both of those, so it may really be worth it just for these level 1 situations. So like you mentioned earlier in the champions picks and bans, if that level 1 Ward is going to be able to deter anybody from any early aggression, or is it going to be used just to keep your lane safe? We'll have to see. But with that Sona on her sustain, Biscuit's going to be returning some of her mana as well. So she's going to be able to spam that W, keep Kale healthy, and if Kale's just going for straight damage and sustain afterwards, she may be able to trade out in situations where, say, Doublelift has gone for those potions and boots start.
Yeah, very traditional start, which is still pretty favored on AD carries. But then, of course, with the mini ward coming from the master, we can also expect that to be used kind of to force out supports from the brushes. Or, in the case of Dignitas, they can save it, try to put out a timing ward to make sure that they don't get ganked early by Lee Sin. You talked about that red buff start for Lee Sin. They are on the blue side. CLG could easily go for a easy first blood at level 1 in the bottom lane if Dignitas isn't watching out.
Another one of these things that mini ward, which I'm not going to steal the phrase from you, mini ward could be used for is they could put it at one of the enemy buffs. They could put it at their own buff. That 1 minute timer, that's going to be all they need to see where the jungler is going to be going in their path. This is going to save them any more wards that they want to place to keep them safe for that full 3 minute timer as opposed to the 1 minute. If you want to just ward your blue buff and see when the enemy's going to steal it, for example, the side of Dignitas, they have a Mumu. We've talked about how heavily he relies on that blue buff to clear the early jungle. Even in Season 2, the jungle is even stronger now for your first clear. It's a little bit harder for these AoE-centric junglers. That blue buff is going to be a huge point of contention. CLG knows it. They put a 60-second ward down there at about the 50 to 1 minute mark. They're going to know that when that blue buff spawns in just a couple seconds after, even if CLG goes for a delayed invade, by having that ward until the 2 minute or 2 minute and 10 second mark, they're going to know if CLG is making a move on it or not. If they're not, then they know they're going to be relatively safe. If they do, then they know immediately to swap over and try to take away the blue buff from CLG.
Yeah, so we've talked about, the overall matchups, the lane matchups at level 1, the early levels, but when are we going to see some big changes in the gameplay? Are we going to wait for the traditional level 6, or are we going to see a lot more movement earlier? Because we have champions like Evelynn, of course, who could have better ganks at level 6, but is really mobile earlier on. Same with Lee Sin.
I think one of the things that's going to be interesting is Evelynn has been a stable champion in Season 2. She's been building an Abyssal Scepter. Originally, she went for a Deathfire's Grasp first, did a lot of damage with that, and then the Deathfire's Grasp got nerfed. Then we saw people going for an Abyssal Scepter first, or an Abyssal Scepter and Deathfire Grasp around the same time, one sequentially after another, just depending on how the matchup went. We don't know if Hotshot's AP Teemo or not, but that could prompt maybe Evelynn going into an Abyssal Scepter first for the extra magic resistance. But if Teemo is not AP and he's going for that AD kind of build in the top lane, little bruiser Teemo going to split push his little heart out up there, we could maybe see Evelynn going for a Haunting Guise. We don't normally see Evelynn getting a lot of penetration beyond the Abyssal Scepter and her Sorcerer's Shoes, but with Liandry's Torment, Evelynn's going to be one that debilitates with that AoE ultimate, and if you pop an AoE ultimate, slowing everybody down and burn away a percentage of everybody on the enemy team's HP, that could be a huge, huge thing to see.
Well, I also have to bring it up, Tom. You've been gushing about this item ever since its release, but the Twin Shadows, could we see that? It has magic resist, AP, and movement speed. Really great for a roaming mid. On top of that, the active sends out 2 goals who slow the nearest enemy champions. If Scarra can bring it up on top of Agony's Embrace, that's a lot of slow coming in from Evelynn alone. And then with the other members on Dignitas' team, those lane ganks could be very scary.
On the flip side, though, we could see Twin Shadows being picked up from the side of CLG to keep tabs on Evelynn. Just because Evelynn's invisible, I don't know exactly how those rates are going to work. Does he send it out anyway, knowing that Evelynn is there? Does the rate just stop and be like, well, there's no champion here? Fortunately, as much as I've been gushing about it, I've gotten my mid stolen away from me almost every single game, so I haven't been able to get it on Ahri. I haven't been able to get it on Evelynn or Diana, the champions that, like you said, I've been talking about. You should probably get that move speed bonus on. So I really don't know how it's going to work out for that, but if CLG knows something about it, we could see maybe not GG going for it. I mean, he is a Nivea. He really doesn't benefit as much from the move speed, but we've talked about before, he's been aggressive in Nivea. We've actually seen him moving around with Chauster as a Nivea, setting up aggressive walls in the jungle to catch people out of position that they just don't expect, because they expect a Nivea to get blue buff, sit in mid lane and farm. GG's not content in doing that, so we could see him actually getting that. He gets the movement speed bonus so he can get back and forth to lane quicker. He, of course, can just kind of outrun Evelyn a little bit in that mid lane and just separate the distance so he could stay alive during the laning phase. Once Evelyn hits level 6, Anivia, she has to wait until 6 or 7 in order for that blue buff to respawn. Around that 7-minute and 20-second mark, barring any jungle invades or contention of that, if she winds up picking that up after Evelyn hits level 6, Evelyn can burst down Anivia. If Anivia gets ganked from the jungle, Amumu can lock her down pretty easily, especially with the Curse of the Sad Mummy. So that egg form could be burned. We could see the little Cryo Phoenix text popping up in the, or Cryo Phoenix egg text popping up in the chat there. If Anivia gets caught out, it's going to be a little bit dangerous. However, she plays it a little bit safer, getting an item that's going to add resistances, add a little bit of ability power, and give her a little bit more mobility, which is something she really lacks in these games, could be very beneficial.
Another thing I want to point out between these two teams is on the side of Dignitas, there's no one who's just going to burst and then leave the fight. They all have a lot of good sustained damage. Even Amumu, with those tiers, you can't discount that because over time it's going to do a lot of damage, especially in the late game when everyone has a decent amount of health. Then we have Evelyn, of course, with Agony's Embrace. That is a huge burst. It gives her the shield, but then she has hate spikes if you ignore her. We have Kale, who's known, like you said, with that Righteous Fury, she's going to do tons of AoE sustained damage. You don't want to let that going. Who is CLG going to focus in team fights?
Well, I think CLG, they really need to try to focus down one of the initiators that Dignitas is going to have. Sona, of course, with the Crescendo, if they can catch her before the team fight starts, she'll die very quickly. She'll almost vaporize because Sona, we know her as the champion that has about as much HP as a minion. 2 more, in fact, effectively. However, on the same side, Amumu is a strong initiator. He's not going to be burst down as easily as the mid to late game really gets going because he's going to be a bit of a more tanky build jungler. He could go for a Shirelios, but still he's getting the extra health. He could go, just for a Randuin Zone and be super, super tanky. We could see him go for a Frozen Heart as well. If Teemo's going to be relying on auto attacks to deal any amount of his damage, well, buying a Frozen Heart's not going to be that bad at all. It's going to cancel out the Rising Spell Force from Ezreal, so he's not going to have that attack speed steroid, and then CLG is really going to be missing that Amumu pickup. Same side, though, Dignitas, they need to be very secure, that they need to make sure that Kale, even though she wants to kind of use the ultimate on herself to stay alive in these fights, they got to prioritize. If they can get the initiation and they could still deal the damage regardless of everything else, well, then Kale might use that on one of their initiators just to stay relevant in the team fight. But if not, CLG might come out an upper hand. But as you guys can see, we're finally into this game. The pause has been undone. I don't know why, because I had that scroll screen going on like this, so I couldn't actually see the chat. It wouldn't let me do it. But we are in game number 1, guys. And Chobra, we talked about level 1 to a huge extent. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah, so far we do have both teams pretty spread out, so I think they're both expecting the unexpected, making sure that they have their bases covered. They don't want any invades. Every entrance is covered by both teams, so teams are playing it quite safe. Amumu's a little bit ahead of him, ahead of the rest of the team, but it's not going to be a problem because no one is set up at CLG to jump on him as a group. We do see some pings going down from both sides, and the ward, of course, was spotted coming up from Dignitas in that entrance towards the blue. A ping going down again just to make sure that CLG is aware of it, and then now we see another ping going down, another ward being put down at the enemy red, so they want to keep tabs on Chauster's Lee Sin, which of course you have to expect from Dignitas.
And take a look at the items. First off, Nhat Nguyen has gone all consumables on top of the consumables he started with. Crystalline flasks are everywhere. I feel like I'm casting a Dota game because look at how full everybody's inventories are at level 1. Look at all the bottles that have been purchased from either side of every team. This is the kind of evolution of the game that we wanted to see. Curse wasn't really doing it. Quantic, they felt boots and potions were still the way to start. These two teams, they're really feeling the new item changes.
Oh, now we do see Zuna getting caught by that Flash Frost, but again, no kill going to happen because there's not enough people to put out the damage. But as you were mentioning the consumables, we have to point out that Sona, on Patoy, or Patoy on Sona rather, has picked up that rejuvenation bead. So that's going to be used most likely for Philosopher's Stone, but picking that up instead of the Fairy Charm, what does that say for Patoy?
I guess it's going to say that they want to be a little bit aggressive and try to out-sustain that bottom lane. If they know that Nhat Nguyen has been practicing and building all consumables, that means he's not going to have that little bit of extra oomph to heal himself, so they could win out in some aggressive trades early on. I don't necessarily think of Kale as one of the most aggressive level 1 champions, but if we throw back to Kale's in the top lane when Dyrus was playing her, she can of course win some of those level 1 trades against champions that aren't as strong. Ezreal, I like to think of him as a very strong early and mid-game champion, as well as he carries very well into the late game, but if any point in time is going to be his quote-unquote weak point, it's going to be before he gets that phage to trade.
And bottom lane, we already see Patoy taking a lot of damage in the lane. But again, lots of sustain coming out from everyone. Not going to be in too much trouble. Meanwhile, top lane, we did see HotshotGG just kind of chilling out in the river brush, making sure no one else came to go for a level 1 gank, and now returning to the lane for some farm. But Zuna's already being zoned out, being shoved away by HotshotGG's Teemo. Is that already a sign for Teemo's command? He started with a flask and 5 pots, so he's just looking to farm, and push out Zuna.
On top of this, we also see 8 ability power from HotshotGG Teemo, so it is going to be an ability power Teemo. For the folks at home, knock that one down on your scorecards. That means we're going to see the OP Teemo everybody's been complaining about. On the flip side, though, mid lane, we do see a little bit of damage being traded between GG and Scarra. Nothing really too much happening. We saw some aggression on bottom lane, but other than that, with all these consumables spread all over the place, just look how many wards have been used. Every single ward in the inventories of these 2 supports, except for one from Nhat Nguyen, has been dropped everywhere. And if you look around the map, there's some in top lane and river that we saw them put down at level 1, but all the wards in bottom lane have been systematically cleared out.
Yeah, now we do see Lee Sin at the double golems, but meanwhile mid lane we do see Scar running pretty low. He's gonna live with a HP pot for now, but he's gonna need the help of Crumbz if we see bigfatlp sticking around in that middle lane. He could go for an aggressive kill. He's actually setting up for it right now, but Scar flashes out just in time from that flash frost. So again, saved for the time being, but Crumbz is set up. Do they want to go for a counter initiation onto bigfatlp, get that egg out of the way, or do we just want to see Scar farming up and returning to base? We'll have to wait and see. Crumbz is still around, so they're waiting and waiting, but Crumbz eventually has to forfeit and go back to the jungle to make sure he doesn't fall too behind. So Scar, now it's up to him to decide on his own, does he want to stay on farm? He's in a little bit of trouble. He gets walled, and are we going to see the flash frost land? He actually dodges the stun, but the ignite goes down. Scar is going to go down. bigfatlp going to live with the Cryo Phoenix egg. First blood goes to CLG.
And on top of this, the top lane, we see goes to Zuna getting aggressive on HotshotGG, but he runs into a wild Chauster. There's the Sonic Wave resonating strike. Cripple Tempest isn't going to land. He actually used it already. Ignite going off from HotshotGG. Zuna deciding he's going to die, tries to go back in, it's not going to be enough, and Hotshot picks up second blood for CLG.
So CLG is looking really good already, and that was brilliant play by Chauster and Hotshot. Chauster at the right place at the right time. Again, we talked about that. Chauster's everywhere on the map, but then he made sure that Hotshot could get the kill so he could continue zoning out Zuna. Meanwhile, bottom lane, Doublelift takes some abuse from Imaqtpie's Righteous Fury, but of course that's not going to last forever. So as soon as it's gone, we may see Doublelift and Nhat Nguyen going aggressive because Patoy just went back to base.
I'm going to keep our eyes on this bottom lane, but I do want to talk about a bit of a play. Actually, no.
Doublelift is going to start jumping on with that shield, and he puts down the Mystic Shot, but they're not able to chase because a brilliant slow coming out from Imaqtpie.
Yeah, and these 2 teams, after a little bit of passivity in the beginning stage of this game, are really just going at each other's throats. We see Scar aggressively warding once again by the enemy raids. Gonna have to know if Anivia is gonna be taking those, or if he can try to come in and steal them as well, or if Chauster on Lee Sin is gonna be roaming around that area. Speaking of Chauster on Lee Sin, he wound up going back after his first buy. He has gotten those Madred's Razors, so it's indicative to me that he is gonna be going for that Wriggles Lantern. The ward just a little bit too valuable for Lee Sin.
He was hanging around the middle. He's going to just go for the Wraith for now, but we could see a mid lane gank coming out from Chauster. I also want to point out quickly, while we have time, Imaqtpie went for a straight Brutalizer early.
That's a lot of armor penetration. We talked about how much that's been hurting whenever players have been basically playing since Season 3 has come out. Brutalizer is also going to add cooldown reduction on top of everything else, so that means that Kale is going to be able to swing around with the Righteous Fury that much quicker. If they get enough cooldown reduction, it's going to be to the point where Kale is going to become a range carry, stop for maybe half a second, and then become a range carry again.
Meanwhile, mid lane, Scar takes a lot of hurt once again, and there's the Flash Frost falling off. So Scar, again, he's slowly getting pushed out of lane, needs to watch out, and Crumbz really needs to pick up his jungle and put out some pressure for Scarra. Or, as soon as that level 6 comes by, Scars need to leave lane and just roam and try to set up plays that way.
One of the things that's keeping Scarra down a bit is the fact that GG had picked up first blood and gone for a Chalice of Harmony. Scarra, in the meantime, though, had to go for a Crystalline Flask to try to keep himself sustained in that lane, so he's not going to have the magic resistance that Anivia does.
We do see Chauster going for a little bit of a dive on Scar, keeping him low, and although now he's going to retreat, they may still set up for a kill. He's actually going to walk right by Crumbz, and they're going to run into each other. Chauster finally finds him, and he's putting out some good damage. Who's going to get here first? bigfatlp actually just turns onto Scar to force him out of the fight, and there's the Agony's Embrace just for the disengage, really, trying to make sure Crumbz gets out alive.
And now CLG is going to try to contest that blue buff. That was a good play. They knew the blue buff was going to spawn soon, and that was one thing that Evelyn needed to come back into that lane. If you force an engagement and you get the jungler involved and you know that you can come out ahead because of that first blood picked up from Anivia, that means that you can win that engagement, force them out of their lane. Not only are they going to be denying more CS to Scarra, they deny him of the buff that he needs all so much, and they give it away to Chauster. So now GG, he can sit back and take his buff whenever he wants to. Their buff's going to be up a little bit later because Chauster and Lee Sin, he started red buff. He didn't wind up starting blue buff. That's going to come up probably more around the 8-minute mark, and when it does, Anivia's going to have blue, Evelyn won't, and Anivia's going to have that much more advantage after first blood.
Yeah, we do see a lot of action going down bottom lane. They're trying to put out some good hurt onto Doublelift, but a great Howling Gale comes up from Nhat Nguyen to disengage from that. Really good disengages coming up from both teams so far, Tom.
One of the things I like to see in this bottom lane is that Imaqtpie 59 CS compared to Ezreal's 50, so now, even though Doublelift's going pretty standard, wants to get that phase to trade a bit more effectively, that HP, he isn't building armor. That's something you don't really build on AD carry. So when you get an item like a Brutalizer in that bottom lane, it hurts also much more because you're shredding through the little armor that they actually pack in runes and masteries. Look at Imaqtpie, activate Righteous Fury, take one swing at Doublelift, and back away. There's no heal on Zuna outside of that ultimate, so there's absolutely no way for Ezreal to stay sustained in that lane, and Dignitas is pushing this advantage.
And look at the brilliant pink ward in the tri brush by Nhat Nguyen, but in mid lane, Crumbz gets caught by the wall, and then the Glacier Sword, and brilliant ultimate coming out from Chauster. Is this going to be another kill? Crumbz is actually looking for the trade, but Chauster lives, but a flash hate spike from Scarra is going to pick up the kill. Not going to be able to chase bigfatlp though.
CLG did a good job of identifying that Scarra had roamed down to that bottom lane. He'd been missing for a while. They knew that he was gone. Chauster, aggressive flash forward, Dragon's Rages Crumbz back into his team. He would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for that pesky Scarra flashing with a hate spike, but it was a good reciprocation from Scarra, and now he's got double buff after picking up that kill on Chauster, so he's going to be looking scary, and now GG is going to be a little more afraid in the mid lane.
And like you mentioned, that's what Scarra needed, so we're hopefully going to see a lot more aggression coming up from Scarra. How are Chauster and bigfatlp going to react to that? Meanwhile, top lane's been pretty much a farm fest, but if we look at the CS, Hotshot's dominantly winning that trade. It's 69 to 47, and he has that extra kill. So he's just dominating the lane, and now, because of this post-level 6, he's going to have shrews, but he gets caught trying to scout out. He's got the bandage class, and then now we do have Crumbz and Scarra chasing it. Hotshot's going to go down, but they might be able to pick up a double kill here. Crumbz is running very low after that Glacial Storm, but bigfatlp's out of mana, so Crumbz is going to get away. Now he just has to help disengage for Chauster. Zuna comes in, great flash from bigfatlp. Chauster is fishing for Crumbz, but there's a brilliant bandage toss. He does get finished off, but Scarra is going to get this kill.
The red buff we saw Zuna acquiring from the jungle is going to wind up sealing the deal as the kill goes down on Chauster, so they wind up trading 2 for 1 on that trade. GG barely getting out of that engagement. Now they're going to lose the blue buff. Now this is Dignitas taking that one advantage they had in mid lane. Chauster wasn't supposed to die in that gank. They didn't calculate it that way. Now that Scarra wanted to pick up that kill, they could steal away this blue buff. They give it to Elise. So Elise against Teemo, she's going to start pushing back in this top lane matchup. Scarra has double buff. Elise has double buff. CLG, they've been denied these objectives that they wanted to try and secure with their aggressive plays earlier on in the mid lane and in top lane, but now it's backfired on them. So now they have to really kind of compose themselves and figure out, is objective pushing going to be what they do next, or are they going to go for ganks and kills?
Meanwhile, in bottom lane, we do see both AD carries kind of focusing the enemy support, but like you mentioned, Dignitas bouncing back, and we're ready for already an action-packed game. 4-3 at only 11 minutes, and the gold count is pretty similar, but look at that burst going down onto Doublelift. Imaqtpie is just a champion of hurt right now.
He is indeed a champion of hurt, and he's picked up that pickaxe too, so it makes me think he wants to go for Black Cleaver.
But the Howling Gale lands, and there's the exhaust. Chauster comes in, but a brilliant crescendo coming in from Patoy. But the Sonic Wave had landed. Chauster's going in, and Imaqtpie a little bit mispositioned right now. There's the intervention, but Chauster's sticking to a good exhaust coming in. True Sharp Rush is dodged, but Imaqtpie knows he's doomed. He's going for the kill, but a great safeguard. But D Crumbz coming in. Can he get the bandage shots that already missed? But is he going to go for the Curse of the Sad Mummy? It's not on cooldown. Nhat Nguyen and both Doublelift are going to get out with a sliver of health, Tom.
Kale wanted to try to turn that around to a kill on Ezreal, but Doublelift did a good job of positioning himself away, knowing that the ultimate was still up. The invulnerability would have absolutely taken him down. Dignitas are not done pressuring this, though.
Oh, Scarra gets the Agony's Embrace, but the ultimate was saved, but Curse of Sad Mummy lands onto Chauster. Haze Sparks are going down. Is the shield going to be enough? They're diving for it. Crumbz is hanking the tower. It's going to be a kill. Can Crumbz get out, though? The cripple doing so much where he barely makes it into the brush, and he's gonna port back to base.
Yeah, and we wound up seeing Crumbz not using the Curse to the Sad Mummy. The flash was down. Actually, Nhat Nguyen and Doublelift coming back into the lane, forcing Crumbz back. He's going to take tower shots, though, but will he get himself denied? Yes, he will.
Brilliant deny coming out from Crumbz. Last minute escape. I'm not sure if he actually had time to port back to base, but either way, he wanted to play it safe. He knew enough time had passed, going for the deny. Good play by Crumbz.
Meanwhile, mid lane, we saw GG taking down that mid tower. Crumbz did save, he didn't save his flash there. He didn't have the flash when he went down to initiate originally, so he wasn't able to pick up the kill on Doublelift. Originally, it looked like it was going to work out poorly for Dignitas to only get a 1-for-1 trade there, but they wound up getting the 2-for-1 with the tower dive because the flash wasn't off of cooldown. So things kind of working out in favor of Dignitas in that one. Yes, Amumu did die, but he denied himself. The no gold or anything went to the side of CLG. That's going to bring Dignitas a little bit closer in this gold count, but because of the farm, especially towards that mid lane, we have Evelyn a little bit of CS ahead. We have Elise struggling to fight back against Teemo 84 compared to 75. The farm on CLG is a little bit stronger, and that's going to be carrying them to this 1,000 gold lead with the first blood.
Meanwhile, CLG had that timer on the enemy blue buff. All 4 members are there from the bottom half of the map. Scarra really doesn't have a chance, but he actually gets the steal with the hate spike. Brilliant timing, but now caught with the wall. Brilliant wall by bigfatlp, but he's in a little bit of danger right now, all alone ahead of his team. Chobra trying to get the snipe, but it barely misses on Scarra, so Scarra gets out with the blue buff. Chauster is out for blood now. He finds Crumbz in the mid lane. He goes for the flash ultimate, but a brilliant flash coming up from Crumbz in time to cancel it away from Chauster's Lee Sin.
Yeah, and we did see Chauster, and with that tower down, of course, they're able to be a little bit more aggressive, a little more proactive on the map. At the same time, they were able to contest that blue buff, and even though Scarra was able to steal it away, they still had a little bit more presence, but Crumbz with fancy footwork in and of himself, being able to get out of a sticky situation there. Now we have Dignitas still, a couple thousand gold behind, nothing really gained or lost from either team, so where's the next move going to be? Is it going to be Dignitas trying to push down a tower to reciprocate what CLG has for their lead, or is it going to be CLG continuing to push their advantages they've gained? Of course, they've gained the forward map presence from taking on that middle tower. They, of course, have gained a little bit more objective presence because they've been able to contest almost every single buff that Dignitas has had. Yes, eventually they've been able to take it back, whether it's through a kill or by stealing it away like we saw Scarra do with that hate spike, but are they going to keep up this pressure, and is Dignitas going to crack under it, or are they going to respond to it brilliantly like they have been?
Well, Dignitas is set up in the bottom after jungle, and bigfatlp needs to watch out. They're milling about the enemy red buff, so looking for possibly a steal or even a dive in the bottom lane. Doublelift is alone until Nhat Nguyen gets back to lane, so this is some good timing coming up from Crumbz, and there's the port back from Doublelift. He is going to be spotted by the ward and gets caught by the bandage toss. Not a good place for Doublelift. He's out of mana, but a brilliant cleanse comes out. Agony's Embrace follows, but it's not going to be enough. They might be able to get the kill onto Nhat Nguyen, though, putting out a lot of damage. He's surely going to go down. Crumbz takes the tower, and this could be a dragon for Dignitas.
Could be a dragon, or it could be a tower. Depends which one they want to do. The tower, of course, established them a little bit more presence on the bottom lane, and will let them take that dragon at almost free will because they have the bottom lane down. Yes, they lost the mid lane, but they can contest that bottom dragon area a little bit better than the side of CLG.
Meanwhile, Chauster and bigfatlp getting sandwiched. The flash rush is going to miss, but a brilliant flash coming out. Zuna follows with his own and lands a cocoon. There's a ton of burst damage coming out from Scarra and Zuna combined. Bandage toss barely doesn't catch Chauster, and Chauster and bigfatlp will make their retreat, but this could again be a setup for Dragon for Dignitas because they've eliminated 2 of the members of CLG from that mid lane presence.
They've also taken out that bottom tower, so that is going to be a non-factor anymore. And we could see just on the bottom lane, Cutie-Pie deciding to go back and buy. He has boots, a pickaxe, and a brutalizer. What else is he going to add to his repertoire? What else are we going to see this interesting Kale build come out with? We also see Zuna being a little more active on the map and roaming down and around. We see a Stinger being what Cutie-Pie is going to be going for. Very good pickup because he's going to need some sort of attack speed, and that's become super expensive.
Ooh, top lane Bandage Plus lands onto HotshotGG, and there's a repel coming up from Zuna. They're going to get the kill onto Crumbz, so HotshotGG maybe could go for a 2v1 kill. No, the spiders are going to help out Zuna in spider form and pick up the equalizing kill. So all in all, Dignitas still comes out with an assist, but that's the power of Teemo already. All he has really is a haunting, guys. Now he's built the Fiendish Codex, but he did so much damage onto Crumbz, who's going to be the front line for Dignitas.
And that was just a little bit of an awkward trade. Zuna almost missed Teemo by ducking in and out of that brush. He, of course, didn't want to move and went up hitting a mushroom or anything, but playing extremely safe was almost the downfall. They almost traded 1 for none in that situation. But Hotshot, I don't know whether it's him with the moves or Teemo being OP, that was a good engage.
Bottom lane, Scarra comes in with Agony's Embrace. Doublelift is surely going to... No, a brilliant shield coming from Nhat Nguyen. They're going for the disengage. Imaqtpie picks up the kill onto Nhat, though, and now it's Chauster left alone. But Doublelift waits for his buddy so that he can blink on. There's the intervention to deny that kill. Also, Chobra misses, but Chauster is in for blood in this match. He picks up the kill, and excellent safeguard to a minion. Can he make it out through the river? Crumbz is looking for the bandage toss over the wall. He's gonna wait for a second and now try to turn around with cripple, but bandage toss lands, and Imaqtpie picks up a second kill.
And they're feeding the Kale Beast 2-1 and 2 right now. She picked up all those items, the Stinger, the Brutalizer, the Pickaxe, just wailing on everybody. Good job from the side of CLG though. We saw the clutch shield from Nhat Nguyen being able to save Doublelift in that precarious position. We saw Lee Sin use the Sonic Wave after the intervention was used on Scarra, then Resonating Strike after to pick up the kill. Tried to make a Phantom escape out of there by safeguarding away to a minion, but unfortunately the rest of Dignitas had come down to contest that, and that's the power of having that forward tower down in the bottom lane. Dignitas a little bit more free to respawn because they're on this red side. They have the clear path that way, but it didn't work out for CLG.
bigfatlp tried to go for the tower dive in top lane, but gets put into the air. HotshotGG also caught on the tower by Curse of the Sad Mummy, and that's 2 kills for Dignitas. They're well back in this game, Tom.
They did lose that top tower in that engagement. That was a great split Curse of the Sad Mummy by Crumbz. He got into the middle of both champions, knew that he was going to be able to land it and just let it go, so good engagement there. Don't exactly know why GG and Hotshot were so far pressed forward. I thought maybe they thought they could get that tower down, but excellent positioning by Crumbz, good reaction times by Zuna. Of course, he kept himself alive in that 2v1 until Amumu was able to come in there, and it worked out swimmingly for Dignitas.
Yeah, so they're behind in towers by far. The map presence isn't quite there, but they're picking up a lot of kills. 11-7 against CLG. They're now going to have to sacrifice that bottom tower. Chauster making sure that they don't turn around for any cheeky moves, and Imaqtpie with that double buff is going to be really scary for Doublelift. They don't really want to have to duel them right now. When are we going to see the next action? Are we going to see teams go for Dragon at all this game, or is CLG just going to try to make sure that they take down all the towers as fast as possible?
Every single outer tower is down on the side of Dignitas, and that 2-tower advantage as well. Actually, a 2-tower advantage because they've actually knocked down another tower in the mid lane as well. We actually kind of missed on that one. So 4 towers down for CLG on the side of Dignitas in favor of CLG. They could be the ones to try to contest Dragon, but after taking that tower, they've had to fall back a bit. Dignitas thinks they could try to take it, but CLG, they haven't gone all the way back. There's going to be a battle here and now over Dragon.
And Elise is a little bit closer if they choose to make it a 5v4. Elise also picked up that Liandry's Torment you mentioned earlier in the pregame discussion we had, so that's a pretty good pickup already onto Elise. Both teams still dancing back and forth at Dragon, but we see Amumu already backed off, going to the lane to make it clear, but we have Scarra and Imaqtpie making sure that CLG doesn't get a free Dragon. Scarra is trying to scout out from this brush. They might go for a gank, but Doublelift and Nhat Nguyen are also closing in to, and HotshotGG actually coming down from the top lane, so we might just see a mid lane push from CLG, forcing Dignitas back. They know that they're still around Dragon, scouting it out. This could be a really good early push at 20 minutes.
And CLG, of course, they're taking their advantages and running with it. They had forced Dignitas back from that Dragon because they took the 2 mid lane turrets while Scarra was roaming around. He had to do it to get himself back in that matchup. Yes, he still has a decent amount of farm compared to Anivia, only 124 compared to 110, but because of the nature of Evelynn, CLG abused it. They got Anivia in the mid lane, pushing away with that Glacial Storm, and now they took down 2 towers, and Dignitas unfortunately couldn't respond because they were busy responding to every other threat CLG had put out.
And Chauster tried to go for a kill, but Crumbz actually lands a brilliant Curse of the Sad Mummy onto 3 members of CLG. bigfatlp is the first target on Dignitas. They pick it up, kill going to Zuna. There's a brilliant crescendo. Now catching Nhat Nguyen and Chauster. Yet surely going to be the next target. Goes down to Imaqtpie. Are they going to continue pushing? Intervention's been used, and they're actually just going to go ahead and disengage. No! Crumbz is going to come back in with another bandage toss, just landing all these stuns coming out from Dignitas, and they're still poking at this tower. They know Chauster's really low. Cocoon lands onto Doublelift. Zuna needs to watch out. The HotshotGG could come in with one burst and take him out of the fight.
They also have to be careful of running over those mushrooms. If one of those mushrooms explodes on the whole team, they could be in a very bad spot. They're bruised and battered, but they're still going for Dragon. They know that the smite is low. Hotshot trying to come in and contest this. He wants them to walk over that mushroom, but look at Cutie-Pie not following for it. He will get shut down, though. A lot of bonus gold going to Doublelift there. They are going to want to securing the Dragon.
The bandage toss lands onto Chauster, and the repel coming out from Zuna. Doublelift is now sandwiched with an exhaust on him. A double kill for Scarra, and they're going to get... No, they hit a mushroom, though, and HotshotGG gets at least 1 pity kill against Scarra.
And that's why everybody hates Teemo, Chobra, when you put the mushrooms out and pick up kills for no reason. But now bigfatlp trying to turn on Flash Frost. Good dodge there by Ghost of Zuna. They're going to be able to get out of that one. And that was a very long team fight. Both teams wound up taking casualties on either side. But all in all, Dignitas lost 2 members. CLG, I believe it was 3 or 4 members they lost that entire trade, as well as losing out on Dragon. So in the grand scheme of things, Dignitas comes out leaps and bounds ahead. They've jumped ahead now, 16-9 kills, 32.4k to 30.7k. They've taken back the gold lead by about 2,000 gold, even though they have half the amount of towers that CLG has, even though they gave up first blood to the enemy team. Because of good team play, even though they lost that mid lane tower, now that it's come down to let's contest dragons, let's fight for these global objectives and try to establish map presence, something that we raved about Chauster doing in the early stages of the game, Dignitas have been able to counteract that and shut it down.
And you know the Leandre's Torment isn't only going to work for Elise herself, but look at the rest of the team. We talked about this earlier. So much crowd control coming out. Everyone is going to be CC'd non-stop on CLG. Chauster goes for a brilliant ult onto Scar though into the tower. Bandage toss and Crystal. Sad Mummy coming in. Intervention saves Scar. He's actually going back in with Agony's Embrace. Zuna jumps way ahead of the team. Wants to get that single kill onto Chauster, but now he's in a lot of trouble. Chauster's going to wait until he gets an execution. Nearly gets killed himself, but the shutdown goes to Doublelift. A little bit of a misplay by Zuna there.
Yeah, now Dignitas is going to have to back away from this one. They had to be very careful because CLG is going to be able to push out, get that control of that river, get control of the bus. Looks like there's none actually on the map right now, so that's one benefit that Dignitas has, is that there's no bus for CLG to really take, but now they can get themselves a little bit more prime positioning around Baron. One of the big things they have is Teemo, and Teemo can put mushrooms all over the place by Baron. If a support runs over a mushroom while they're trying to ward the Baron area, it could be lights out because all Hotshot has to do is come down from top lane, poke them once or twice with those little lasers Astronaut Teemo's going to be firing, and it could be lights out for Patoy's Zuna. Same thing with the mid lane. If GG decides to roam, they hit a mushroom and he walls him off in a bad position, it's dead person trying to put wards around Baron. So now we see Dignitas playing a little bit more defensively, falling back in these lanes, and CLG, they're roaming forward, they're taking control of the enemy side of the map, and they want to try to come back into this game, and one way they're going to do it is by being aggressive and being smart aggressive, by putting wards down, knowing where the enemy team is, and knowing how to catch them out of position.
I mean, Chauster's been setting up really good plays for CLG, except for that one footwork coming out from Crumbz. He's been able to set up a lot of these team fights, and also bigfatlp going for that late game with the tier, but does get slowed by Imaqtpie. The wall's there, but Scar comes in with the DFG and Agony's Embrace. Now in the egg, bigfatlp has no escape, going to be a quick kill, actually just giving it to Imaqtpie. Smart move by Scar, making sure that Kale can catch back up in the game.
Kale, I don't know if Kale has to catch up at this point in time, though. She has a Ginsu's Rage Blade, the thing we talked about in the chat. We're really good with these champion predictions, by the way, Trump. I'm just going to say that right now. Ginsu's Rage Blade on top of the Brutalizer, the Stinger, and the Pickaxe acquired. She still only has level 1 boots, but that's all they need. Kale is going to be a monster. She's kind of a hyper carry. She's not like a Vayne. She's almost like a Jax, but a squissier version. She deals a little bit more damage as well, so that's a really awesome thing to see. They're giving the kills to Kale. They want the Cutie Pie train to carry him through this game, and it's working out beautifully for them so far.
You know, Kale also hasn't picked up too much other sustain other than, of course, the Rage Blade passive kicking in when he's at 50% health. So really counting on his teammates to set up those team fights with Curse of the Sad Mummy and Crescendo and Agony's Embrace, and then just popping intervention on them so they can stay in the fight longer. It's been working out for Dignitas, but like you mentioned, Tom, CLG has so much map presence still. The 2 towers down in mid lane is devastating for Dignitas. Then we have HotshotGG, the famed split pusher in North America, just pushing away in top lane, trying to make sure Zuna can't go and join Dignitas for the other team fights.
Now, let's take a quick look at the goal counts. We're talking about how maybe Kale wasn't that far behind, but because of the objectives, Double is actually still at a decent gold advantage, almost 700 compared to Cutie Pie. So that could be another reason why they are feeding those kills away to that 80 carry they need to carry. So for even though Dignitas has a gold advantage, it's only on certain champions. A lot of it's going to be in the mid lane where Scar is dominating on bigfatlp for now. A lot of it's also in the jungle. Chauster has 5 deaths and 5 assists, but Crumbz is 3, 4, and 9. He's gotten his Sunfire Cave. He has the I'm gonna hover over it for a second. He has the Spirit of the Spectral Wraith, actually. Hasn't gone for the Ancient Golem. So that's one of those items we thought, who the heck was gonna build this one? Apparently, it's Crumbz.
Well, it does give that spell vamp and that ability power. And of course, Amumu has slowly shifted over to building some damage to make sure that he can stay relevant in extended team fights. So that could actually be a brilliant pickup. And then we have Mikhail's Crucible on the Sona, played by Patoy on Dignitas. And that's another item people weren't sure about. It's pretty expensive. aggressive? Is any support really gonna have the time to build it? He said, you know what, I'm gonna rush it and make sure that my AD carry or whoever really needs it can stay safe. And we do have CLG setting up for a fight here. A lot of mushrooms near that Baron pit. Crumbz already taking a lot of hurt from that because of the Liandry's Torment on Teemo working with his poison. And CLG is now just clearing out the wards in Baron, and the Baron dance begins at 26 minutes, so pretty early in the game, Tom.
And this is what they want to do. They want to fight on the minefield. They want to put Dignitas in an area where they don't feel comfortable engaging, so they can't get all the AoE. You were talking about it. Look at all these mushrooms. Wards, mushrooms, wards, mushrooms. They're all pink wards too, so there's not going to be any ward coverage or mushroom clearing out from the side of Dignitas. They do have to get that orb glitch which Patoy has picked up. Look at GG just doing a great job of zoning out Dignitas. They want them to go in here. They want them to try to force an engagement somewhere else. They're just preventing them from taking Baron. They're taking their own objectives. We saw it right there. GG being able to pick up his own blue buff. They're completely zoning him out of the one objective, which is the quote-unquote win more button when you have it and you're ahead by a decent amount. They're only ahead by a little bit, so that would skyrocket them into that commanding lead of the game, and they're doing a good job.
Oh, Crumbz jumps in with a bandage like Crystal Sad Mummy. bigfatlp is not able to survive through that. Chauster is going to get dove past the tower. Doublelift now the next target. There's a repel. Scarra is going to get killed for the equalizer kill, but Zuna's going to pick it up. HotshotGG now coming in from behind. Is he going to get the cleanup? He's too scared to initiate. There's still 4 members. The tower's already gone. Now he shows himself and trying to get the quick kill onto Patoy. Patoy says, help me out here, Dignitas, but they say, no, we're going to take this inhibitor tower, and now they turn around with a cocoon and the bandage toss. A quick kill again. Dignitas is going to get this inhibitor.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Hotshot played a little bit too curious there, so he decided to go closer and closer and closer until he was within range from Zuna. Instant speed reaction to get that cocoon down. That was a really good play by Dignitas. And we were talking about how CLG wants to force them into an uncomfortable position where their AoE won't exactly be the best for them. Unfortunately, they wanted to fight them in the open lane. They didn't really want to fight them in the controlled jungle area around Baron, and when they were moving down to get back to the mid lane, I don't think they expected Dignitas to be that far ahead of them. They had a Shirelia's Reverie on the side of Elise, so Gosu Zuna picked that one up, activating that. They got into the engagement a little bit quicker. They had a bit better positioning and caught CLG as they exited the jungle rather than after they've come out of it. So they trapped them in that little area. We saw the Curse of the Sad Mummy absolutely wreck what CLG wanted to do. GG evaporated. Doublelift was able to pick up a kill on Scarra, but it was too little too late at that point. I believe it was a 4-for-1 trade in favor of Dignitas.
And CLG now kind of peeking at Baron, but they realize Dignitas is all back from the base, so they can't go for a free one just yet. They could still try to bait them into that minefield, though. Another thing to note, Patoy is 1-0-11, just sticking by Imaqtpie, and they both haven't really been touched in these team fights. CLG hasn't been able to plow through Crumbz, Zuna, and Scarra to get to the high targets, and CLG is starting that Baron right now. Dignitas surely has to assume this, and Scarra is actually scouting it out. They see some movement. Dignitas, as long as they get in place, they could play cleanup here, but Crumbz is going to hit the first mushroom, and there's many more waiting for them. There's a wall, but Agony's Embrace. Scar a little bit ahead of his team, yet gets caught by Curse of the Sad Mummy, and we are going to see a brilliant crescendo coming down. His first kill goes to Zuna once again. Chauster down in a lot of trouble, gets bandage tossed despite the Shriel's Reverie being popped, and now they split. Perfect split from Dignitas. They're chasing down Cocoon, lands onto HotshotGG. Meanwhile, bigfatlp trying to kite away. Brilliant bandage toss following through, but Hotshot wants to get the equalizing kill with the mushrooms. Crumbz should be able to live through this last one despite that hurt, and now Doublelift all alone trying to poke away at the low health, maybe trying to go for a snipe alongside bigfatlp, but Dignitas realizes this, and they say, you know what, we're just gonna go for the kills, and there's a cocoon onto bigfatlp. Meanwhile, Shutdown going to Doublelift, but he needs to watch out. Zuna's going for the repel. He lands, and he's chasing through the brush, but red buff and blue buff on Doublelift. He's going to be able to kite pretty well, but look at that damage coming out from Zuna. Scar's hunting for this kill, but he doesn't want to get hit by another Mystic Shot.
And all that engagement was on Scarra from the side of Dignitas. We looked at the vision very briefly before anybody engaged in that one. Both teams couldn't see anything from the either side. We had that one ward go over the side from Dignitas to know when CLG was going to be using the Baron, and we had the one from CLG to know where Dignitas was in positioning. When they came in straight through the river through a giant minefield of mushrooms. However, they were so busy keeping Dignitas at bay over here, Scarra came around the opposite side and stuck 4 members of CLG Prime in a brilliant Agony's Embrace. Even though Crumbz wasn't only able to get one of them with the Curse of the Sad Mummy, Crescendo locked up 2 remaining members after that one. They were burst down, and Scarra didn't care if he was walking through mushrooms. Using the W from Evelyn, he could get rid of the slow. He could take the damage from the Agony's Embrace shield, and they just went on a cleanup duty rampage. Doublelift, though, the star shining in that engagement from the side of CLG Prime, he was able to stay alive. He was able to take out members of Dignitas and prevent them from doing Baron in that case.
Yeah, you know, it's really kind of interesting to see that Nhat Nguyen's just been getting caught behind the team of CLG so many times in these team fights. Meanwhile, CLG hasn't been able to touch Patoy at all. Once again, finishing the fight with no deaths, 1-0-15. Zuna now has a Guardian Angel, going to be even a stronger front line for Dignitas. We have Amumu returning with a Negatron Cloak now to make sure, and Scar actually catches Chauster with Agony's Embrace. He's gonna chase through because Crumbz is coming in for the pinch. He's gonna be able to land this next banish. The flash has been blown, an early flash, but there's a brilliant safeguard, but both are caught by a Curse of the Sad Mummy. Scar's gonna walk right by that wall, and Crumbz is now caught by the Mystic Shot from Doublelift. HotshotGG does get stunned by the Cocoon, but Doublelift realizes he's really strong. He's going for the kill onto Scar. Crescendo has to come out, but the snipe not gonna come out because of the intervention brilliantly placed by Imaqtpie, and Dignitas is now looking for the disengage.
And Dignitas taking the aggressive mount here, and now CLG has to play defensive. Fortunately enough, both of these teams are still extremely strong. Only about 4,000 gold separating the two teams right now. That's the way it's been for the past amount of time. Even though Dignitas came out ahead in that engagement by Baron, they were 4,000 gold ahead before and worked out 4,000 gold ahead after that. So both these teams trying to stay neck and neck with one another. Like we mentioned before, they each have their certain farmed members on the team, and they're taking those advantages and pushing them to their limits. Now we see CLG posturing for this Baron again, but they don't have the elaborate minefield, and Scarra going for the same loop around. Is it going to work?
They're prepared, but there's a Cocoon to start the fight this time. Agony's Embrace goes down. bigfatlp surely going to be killed off first, and Zuna now looking for another target to repel onto Chauster, and HotshotGG are pinched, but Patoy is going to finally go down in this game. Crumbz and Imaqtpie also have to retreat. They're gonna have to sacrifice Zuna. True Shot Barrage goes out, not gonna be able to pick up a snipe, and Zuna also going down. CLG is gonna come out on top. No, actually, Chauster is going to be finished off there, so it's a 3-2 trade, but Dignitas looking really dangerous. Doublelift could go for the cleanup. Double kill, and now there's the Mystic Shot, gets the Triforce proc, and Doublelift is going to go for a simple auto attack for the ace, going to CLG Prime.
That was an awesome triple kill there, and as we talked about, is it the same engage going to work from the side of Dignitas? They didn't have the Curse of the Sad Mummy in that engagement, and it really didn't work out for them. The intervention had been used in that bottom lane gank as well, so CLG knew this. They took their advantages. They went over to Baron. They felt like they were the stronger team, and even though they started the fight behind in gold, they ended the fight behind in gold. All the kills went to the right person. Doublelift is a monster. Even though on the side of Dignitas, they have Kale, who we don't really know the unlocked potential of after the Season 3 patch. Doublelift is gone for a tried and true build, Bloodthirster, Trinity Force, Last Whisper, Ezreal. In addition to this, an Elixir of Fortitude. There's no more Green Pot, so he doesn't have the extra attack speed, doesn't have any critical strike or anything like that. No, instead he's got something better. He's got HP and damage. And look at that, 248 CS compared to 203, 9-3 and 4 compared to 5, 4 and 8. Look at the gold counts. He is 3,000 gold ahead. The differential between these two teams can be made up by the gold that Doublelift has over PewDiePie in and of himself. So as we said, certain characters have more gold than one another on these teams, and is it going to work out for them? Oh no, we miss Evelyn coming around there, picking up a quick kill on Doublelift. And as I say, Doublelift can help carry his team. He gets caught out and dies.
And now with that pickup, Dignitas is looking to pressure this middle inhibitor. It is open. They took it once before. With Doublelift gone, like you mentioned, he was the power in that last team fight. Can Dignitas get a cleanup? HotshotGG try to put out some shrooms ahead of time. Cocoon lands onto bigfatlp. Imaqtpie going to scout ahead, taking that mushroom out. But now we're seeing Dignitas actually having to disengage just a little bit because of all that damage over time. They're trying to poke at it, and now there's the initiation. Cocoon lands on, and there's a brilliant Curse of the Sad Mummy. Nhat Nguyen still caught behind, but Flash is going to put distance between him and Dignitas. Despite that crescendo, Zuna's still looking for the kill, but he's taking a lot of damage over time. Intervention has to be used. The inhibitor's been taken, so Dignitas now has to get out of here before they get picked off.
And those were two amazing disengages. We saw Chauster Dragon's Rage back the team, knocked it through members of Dignitas, so they were unable to pursue any further either. He barely got out alive. Nhat Nguyen used the Janna ultimate at the last crucial second to knock back absolutely everybody. On top of getting away with a sliver of health, he burned the flash from Gosu Zuna as Zuna tried to go back in and pick up a kill. They burned the intervention from Kale because of this. They had almost all their ultimates up except for Evelyn's for that engagement. Now, during the next fight, if CLG heals up and goes to get Testis Baron, they're only going to have the Evelyn ultimate. So victory in that one, definitely on the side of CLG.
And now CLG going for that Baron. They know that Dignitas had to go all the way back. It's going to pretty much be free. Crumbz is going to peek around here because of that ward. If he can get the steal, good job to Dignitas, but not going to land it. And Dignitas, or Scarra, puts down that Agony's Embrace, but has to run away immediately. Chauster looking for a quick scout around those brushes, not going to find him, and it's okay because CLG comes out with the Baron, and now they're going to be able to push back despite the super minions in the middle lane.
Dignitas going to try to reprise by taking Dragon so they can stay pretty much ahead in their global gold count. They have relatively equalized out. Only a couple hundred gold separates these two teams in global gold, so when you look at it on paper, they're pretty much on even footing. That Dragon puts Dignitas ahead by about 1.5k. We're approaching the almost 40-minute mark. It's not really going to mean as much unless you have one of those giant decisive gold leads. And as we've seen in recent tournament play, the longer the game goes, the less and less that gold lead actually matters. Once again, let's take a quick look at the gold distribution. Almost 12,000 gold on the side of Gosu Zuna, but Hotshot already above the 12,000 gold mark. Edge CLG. The jungler for Dignitas, over 3,000 gold ahead of Chauster. That is, of course, going to be edge to Dignitas, but so they have a little bit more of a tanky front line. Mid lanes, they're a little bit equalized. Scarra has a slight edge on GG, but there's 80 carries. Edge to Doublelift, and that is where the gold is going to matter. The AD carry, the person that wants to bring you into the late game and you want to win with, the side of CLG has him ahead. The top laner, the split pusher, HotshotGG, he's ahead of Zuna. So if we have those edges on the side of CLG, they're the ones being aggressive now. They know it because of how many items Doublelift has gone back and acquired and how much Teemo has been dealing damage with all these mushrooms. Even though he's 3, 6, and 7, he is a crucial part to CLG's success if they decide to go and push.
And again, we talked about penetration before the game, Tom, but we have that last whisper and now the void step. That really made the difference. As soon as those two items came out, Dignitas' front line just melted despite the lead they had. And Dignitas wasn't able to catch Doublelift, so they've been focusing bigfatlp, but as soon as that charge is finished on the Archangel staff, it's going to turn into that Sarah's Embrace, and even bigfatlp is going to be able to live through a little bit more hurt in the beginning. Also, we have the Quicksilver Sash on Doublelift now. Even if he doesn't make it into Mercurial Scimitar, the point is he has 2 cleanses available and then the Arcane Shift on top of the Flash. Even if they do catch him with 1 or 2 abilities, Doublelift is going to bounce back, kite away from the team while Chauster bounces around, while HotshotGG just baits everyone into a minefield. CLG is way ahead despite the 10 kill lead and 2 tower lead that Dignitas has.
And I'm looking around, nobody on either side looks to have been picking up an Aegis of the Legion, so there's absolutely no team fight presence aside from Shirelia's Reveries. All of these are individual item builds, which case in point means that Dignitas, I was looking at Crumbz here, even though Crumbz can initiate and have an AoE disable with that Curse of the Sad Mummy. Even though Dignitas goes for a bit of AoE damage in these team fights, the itemization right now is all about the individual. Like we were talking about before, because of the gold counts and who it's going to be on, Edge is in favor of CLG, especially with that Baron buff still ticking away. They only have about a quarter of it left. 3/4 of it has been used up, so if they want to make a move with it, they're going to have to do it soon, but their individuals have better itemization from the side of CLG than in Dignitas. We see Amumu wound up going for an Abyssal Scepter, as did Evelyn. Sunfire Kate to keep him tanky. He went, of course, to that Spirit Stone. He wound up going for the Wraith one, so he has a little bit of a different play style from that. Isn't necessarily as beneficial for the team as he wants to be. Now going to pick up the Aegis of the Legion. On the side of CLG, same thing. We see Nhat Nguyen, no Aegis in sight whatsoever. Even from the side of Chauster, he hasn't been able to go back and get it. He's actually gone for a Spirit Visage to try to reduce some of the AP damage coming out from the double AP comp of Dignitas. So if they get into a fight, it's going to be all about who has the individual items. Even Sona had to go for something to help Kale out, because Kale has to use the intervention on maybe Scarra, or has been using it on Zuna, but not necessarily on herself. Doublelift, if he gets that Mercurial Scimitar, it's all about the Doublelift show, and if they can just push forward, let Doublelift do his thing, CLG is going to wind up taking game 1.
Yeah, another interesting point is we haven't seen any enchants, as far as I can tell, coming out on any of these boots yet. But if this game goes any longer, they're gonna have, you know, all their slots are going to be used up. It'll be interesting to see which champions pick up which enchantments to make sure that they get the better edge in team fights. Doublelift now farming up in the bottom. We see Zuna walking around looking for just a little bit more farm to try to finish up, hopefully, maybe the Frozen Heart or what's going to be built out of that Negatron Cloak. We can only guess with all these new items. Now clearing up that mid lane with Crumbz. Doublelift now farming up even more in the bottom lane. Already has that BF sword. I think he might just be looking to rush that Mercurial Scimitar.
I think Doublelift wants to get his Doublelift item from Chobra. This is the point in game where it's all on the players. This is up to them to show us which items they're going to favor in these late game team fight situations. Which ones are the end game builds and which ones are the early game builds. What items are going to shine, the new ones or the old safe ones. We see a combination of both coming out from either side. Even like you said, bigfatlp has that Archangel staff. When is it going to turn to that Saris Embrace? Is CLG buying time for it? 729 out of 750. If Dignitas engages now, they might have a chance to burst down bigfatlp. If they engage like 10 seconds or after this wave is down, he's going to have that Saris Embrace.
They're not going to have time because Scarra just blew his DFG and Agony's Embrace. CLG knows that they're pressuring it a little bit, and then we're going to have the Saris Embrace. There it is, coming out from bigfatlp. So CLG is ready for this fight. I'm sure that they've communicated that through. They know they can fight even if Agony's Embrace comes back up. They've been stronger so far in the recent team fights, and that's what matters. Doublelift going to be picking up that red buff. Again, going to be really good for his kiting capabilities, and of course, the extra damage. Meanwhile, Dignitas hasn't really picked up anything new in this time. They've just waited for the cooldown to come back up from Scarra. If Scarra can put out a brilliant ultimate like the first time we saw them at Baron, Dignitas could pull this off, but if not, I have to say CLG is looking a lot stronger, Tom.
I'm just looking at what happened. Scarra ran over a mushroom on his way to bottom lane. I thought maybe he was tanking the minions, but there's a minion wave there. He's at half HP. How much damage is Hotshot's Teemo doing? I'm gonna go take a look at Teemo here. We can see he has 356 ability power on top of that Liandry's Torment, so he's gonna be burning away. He has a Morello's Evo Time on top of that Void Staff. He, looking at his penetration, 35 and 40%. He even has armor penetration. Actually, there's something going on in the mid lane though, as we're too busy looking at Hotshot being cute.
We did see Chauster eventually getting caught. They caught Zuna first on the CLG side, but Zuna disengaged perfectly. Intervention came through, and they pick up Chauster. This is a chance for Dignitas to push against this inhibitor. HotshotGG rushing down, and he's trying to decide, do I just go ahead and split push? Are we going to sacrifice his inhibitor? He's milling about in the blue buff. The inhibitor slowly getting chipped down. Doublelift is hungry for blood, though. He still has that QSS ready, and the IE. Imaqtpie melts to Doublelift in just a couple auto attacks and a Mystic Shot. Intervention had been used, and now Dignitas trying to run away with the Show's Reverie, but they run into a mushroom. Yet still going to chase, puts down the slow onto Scarra. Scarra's going to get rid of it with his ability. He's going to speed through, but there's another mushroom. They're just getting slow non-stop. bigfatlp looking for the wall. He catches Crumbz, but a flash comes out from the mummy, and now there's a cocoon for the extra disengage. Can they now maybe go for Baron then on CLG's side?
It's just such a crazy game. We are talking about, is damage too powerful? The enemy AD carry just evaporated in 2 shots from one other AD carry. I don't know if you can chalk that up to a better item build from Doublelift, how much farther ahead he is in the gold count. He is 4,000 gold ahead of Kale, but he absolutely evaporated Cutie Pie. We of course talked about earlier, because of the way Dignitas is playing, they don't have that intervention to keep their AD carry alive. They're using it on someone who's going to initiate fights. We talked about having Elise get caught out. The intervention was used. Chauster wound up dying because of it. However, Doublelift is too powerful. They tried to pressure that mid inhibitor. They wanted to garner advantage off of their kill, but Doublelift came in and he said, nah, I'm Ezreal, I'm fed, I'm gonna shut you guys down, and that's exactly what happened. I talked about it earlier. It's the Doublelift show right now.
Crumbz goes in with a bandage toss, and Curse of Sad Money followed by Crescendo. Dignitas tries to set up the fight they want, but they have to disengage just after 2 kills because Doublelift is just putting out the pain. Cocoon comes out. There's one play. Scarra now melting to this Ezreal. bigfatlp diving in. Patoy just trying to run away in the side. Doublelift is still chasing. There's a repel, but he's going to have to come down in the same place. He's actually going to go behind because Doublelift is going for the triple kill against Imaqtpie. Zuna has nowhere to run. Going to get that Guardian Angel down. Doublelift is just waiting around looking for that kill. There's the Glacial Storm coming up from bigfatlp. Quadra kill going down for Doublelift. Patoy the only one left denying that Penta, but CLG is going to get this inhibitor and possibly a Nexus turret or 2.
Patoy, we saw him recalling in the bottom lane. As I talked about, Doublelift is too strong. 14-4-4. We saw 4,000 gold lead, 17,000 gold. He's actually got that at 20,000 gold. He literally single-handedly won CLG Pro in that fight and won them that game. There were some clutch walls by bigfatlp in that engagement. Nhat Nguyen, of course, in the beginning of that fight had a good disengage with his Zuna ultimate. It kept them off Doublelift, but they just had too much for Dignitas to combat, and unfortunately, they weren't able to come back into this one. And I think we have a point to make if we could bring up the score screen really quick. How powerful was Doublelift? 20,000 gold worth of powerful. Look at the side of Dignitas. Who had anywhere close to that gold? PewDiePie, 13.8k. Doublelift almost had as much gold as Crumbz and Patoy combined. That's how strong he wound up being. Even on his own team, he doubled his own support's gold. He almost doubled Chauster's gold. Chauster had 100 gold to save him from being doubled there, but it was absolutely insane how powerful he was. Can Doublelift keep it up in game number 2? And is CLG going to use the information they learned from this game to take a quick 2-0 victory and a cool $1,000 cash prize? Or is Dignitas going to get it together? Look strong in that game. We can't blame Dignitas for anything, but guys, we want to see game number 2 as much as you do, so we'll be right back after a quick commercial break. Welcome back, everybody, after a brief musical interlude to the MLG Prizefights series. We're about to get underway. Game number 2 between Dignitas and Counterlogic Gaming Prime. And Chobra, that was such an intense game number 1. Not only did it showcase new and old items working in harmony, but it showcased 2 amazing North American teams really going at each other's throats.
Yeah, I mean, both teams were hungry for blood. We had Dignitas putting out the early pressure against Counterlogic Gaming, but as we said, Doublelift just farmed it up, and he had it going for him. They couldn't touch him at all in the late game. As soon as he got that last whisper, he was just plowing through Crumbz' Amumu and Zuna's Elise. And then, of course, with Sarah's Embrace coming up for bigfatlp, he was also confident to be back in the front line. He wasn't afraid of being caught. A couple really clutch walls coming out from it, and excellent setups from Chauster throughout that whole game.
We were talking about how if Doublelift kept going, it was going to be all about the Doublelift show, and indeed it was. He was 3-shotting Scarra, 2-shotting Imaqtpie. What a 2-shot Patoy. Patoy gave him a pentakill, but he wound up running away at the end of that fight. And all in all, it was just basically CLG. They did kind of what they were similar to doing before. They wanted to stall the game out so that they can let bigfatlp evolve like a Pokemon, that Archangel staff into a Sarah's Embrace. They wanted Teemo to get the split pushing down and set up a mushroom minefield that was beneficial for the positioning in team fights. They wanted Doublelift to get huge so that they could knock down even though they had a Mumu on the side of Dignitas, the rest of the champions, they weren't that tanky. They had an Elise who did build a little bit of utility going for a Frozen Heart, but other than that, she wasn't super beefy, and Doublelift was tearing through armor left and right with the ridiculous amount of damage he had. They played the let's wait to the end game like CLG used to do, but they played it so aggressively and they played it so convincingly by gaining presence on the map, putting that minefield of mushrooms through around Baron, controlling some of those areas around Dragon, as well as warding all the way into Dignitas' jungle towards their base. It didn't look like the old CLG.
Yeah, I mean, I have to wonder. We talked about damage being a huge component of this preseason change, but CLG was able to draw it out, and maybe that could return to, and maybe this is the patch, you know, after a couple of tweaks, are we going to see a balance of different strategies? Is it really going to come down to who can kind of mind game the other team? We also have to note that although Amumu was the front line for Dignitas, he didn't build that much armor. He just rushed it with the Sunfire Cape, but then went for a little bit more damage. They knew they had the lead and they wanted to snowball it, but it ended up biting them back in the late game. He didn't have the armor to sustain through Ezreal and Chauster's damage in the front line. As soon as he initiated, he just had to disengage, or the intervention had to be used on him immediately, not setting up for extra plays for Dignitas.
And we talked about how it was interesting to see the fact that Crumbz went for the Spirit Stone of the Crushing Wraith rather than going for the Spirit Stone of the Ancient Golem. Ancient Golem would have, of course, given him a little bit of extra HP in those engagements, but he wouldn't have had the spell vamp to maybe keep himself alive. Despair and Tantrum still dealing a decent amount of damage. They had Abyssal Scepters on himself and Evelyn, as well as the Amumu passive, which was shredding through the magic resistance from the side of Counterlogic Gaming Prime. So it wasn't a necessary bad pickup. However, you're still experimenting with the new items, potentially in the situation where you're going to be carrying into a later stage of the game. Maybe Dignitas thought they could win with a mid-game team fight and try to go for a bit more of an aggressive push. They kept putting pressure on that inhibitor turret. To Dignitas' credit, they lost their first 2 towers before the 20-minute mark, but then they were the ones putting the pressure on CLG. They took out their inhibitor first. They even put pressure on it on a second time. CLG didn't even take an inhibitor until they won the game in that fight.
That's very true, but also we forgot to mention at the endgame score screen, HotshotGG ended up picking up a banner of command, so CLG was just gearing up even more for the late game. They were going for the bigger pushes. If the game had drawn out any longer, we were bound to see a split push with a super minion and pressuring that top or bottom lane, and then just going in mid, which they had already pushed out so far in the early game, Tom.
So as we're waiting in this lobby here, we are waiting on one more member of Dignitas to join. I do believe it is going to be Crumbz needs to get himself back in here. We'll be starting as soon as that happens, but now that we've seen a couple things that these teams can do, we saw, of course, a comfortable champion composition coming out from the side of CLG. Minus that Teemo pickup in the top lane. It's just something that seems to be flavor of the month or flavor of the patch for the past couple days since it's come out. Dignitas, they tried something new. They had Kale as their AD carry. Imaqtpie thought he could do a lot with it, and he did wind up dealing a lot of damage. He controlled the early game against Doublelift so well. Unfortunately for Dignitas, it didn't transition over well into the mid stage of the game. Doublelift wound up picking up way more kills than Imaqtpie was able to keep up with, and it kind of slipped through their fingers. So if you're Dignitas, what are you looking to improve improve with the champions, bans, and picks in this game?
You know, I don't know if you can really switch up the bans per se, because again, we didn't really see anything new coming up from CLG other than that Teemo, and even if you ban that out, of course, you don't want to leave out, you know, something really comfortable for HotshotGG, such as maybe Shen or even Nidalee coming back with this preseason patch. So I don't know if we'll necessarily see any big changes in terms of bans. With picks, though, they tried something new, which of course, this is the second day of this live patch, so it's the time you really want to try these. It's you know, at these MLG Prizefights, it's the first pro matches we're all seeing with this new patch. Dignitas was willing to go experiment with these, and it worked out for them in the early game, like you mentioned, Tom. Kale was pretty strong, but not able to last out Ezreal. So will we see maybe Dignitas returning to a more traditional pick and then going for a different item build or just stronger team fights?
All right, we are in the picks and bans phase, and a little bit of banter going back and forth to the lobby. Scarra was apologizing that Crumbz was taking a little while to get back. He was taking a little bit of a bathroom break, but said that's okay. We had an awesome game from you guys. We could talk for days about it. And Scarra said, highlight how stupid Teemo mushrooms are. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Teemo ban coming out from Dignitas.
I mean, they were really strong. You highlighted it pretty much towards the end game, doing base, I believe, over 800 damage on top of Liandry's Torment, which not only has the base HP, but Teemo Shroom's already slow on their own. So it's ticking away even more against the enemy. Scarra going down half health with that single Shroom, going to the bottom lane to farm, so they don't want to have to deal with that. They'd rather deal with something more traditional like Shen, because at least then they're prepared for it.
And we do see the Teemo ban coming out, which does, of course, like you said, open up something like Shen from the side of CLG to try to ban it. They don't, so they're going to snatch that one up. Gosu Zuna is a devastating Shen player. Crumbz, he could want to take Shen into the jungle. I didn't think he was the kind of jungler that would play in a Mumu pick, but they did it anyway. CLG, though, their bans really quickly. Character that wrecked them in the game, number 1. Overpowered character, number 1. Overpowered character number 2. So their bans haven't changed too much. I mean, Evelynn, of course, has been a point of contention. We've seen it in recent LAN tournaments as well as online tournaments. It's a pick or ban pretty much up there with Diana and Katarina.
Yeah, and with that Shen pick down, what is CLG going to go ahead and pick up? There's still some options, especially for Hotshot. He could just go ahead and take something, or because that Shen has been picked, he could wait for the last pick, not show his hand, and say, what do we need for the team? Do we still want a split pusher? We're looking at that Lee Sin pickup. Chauster loves his Lee Sin, one of the best Lee Sin players in North America, if not the world. He set up some excellent plays for CLG last game. A little bit of a rougher start after the first few ganks, but, you know, late game, he lasted out. He was, in fact, a much better tank than Crumbz ended up being with Amumu. He went straight health and resist rather than going for damage. He could count on Doublelift to put out that damage. They're going to go ahead and lock that in along with Janna. So they really like the Janna pick too, although Yat had a little bit of trouble not getting caught by Dignitas.
One thing they do by leaving the Lee Sin pick open, I think they're looking for something that's going to dominate a little bit more in the early stages of the game. They shut down Lee Sin's capability to roam around and really keep up vision extraordinarily well. Chauster was 2-5-5 at one point in time when Amumu was like 3-2-9, so he wasn't being as active on the map as we're used to seeing Chauster be. So Dignitas thinks they have the keys to success to shut down Chauster's early game Lee Sin and make it be less scary than a lot of other teams have seen. Case in point, he just built straight tanky after that. He built resistance, just built HP, didn't necessarily go for like something like Amumu did where he built Abyssal Scepter, tried to go for something with the Spirit Stone of the Crushing Wraith and do a little bit of extra damage in these fights. He just went straight, they have to get through me if they want to get to you guys, and it worked out awesomely for the side of CLG. So they're taking it up again. Going to see if Chauster could do anything else in the early game, but now we talked about Patoy with Lulu in the pregame show, and it's absolutely amazing what he's been able to do with it. And that Nocturne that you brought up, something that Crumbz hasn't played for a very long time, now we could potentially see that being picked up.
Yeah, and you know, Nocturne and Lulu, what a combination for initiation. We can see Nocturne jumping in with his ultimate, and then Wild Growth comes out from Lulu. If they're already in place, everyone's going to be knocked out. It could also be used on Shen, or all three could be used at once for immense surprise ganks coming in the laning phase. We could see Nocturne jumping in with his ultimate, Shen going on with Stand United, and then Wild Growth on either of those champions, especially in the bottom lane. That's going to be dangerous for Doublelift and Nhat Nguyen.
I'm really afraid from the side of CLG the way you described that. Like, the taunt coming out from Shen after the Stand United, of course, the Wild Growth could come up. That could be that mid-game kind of team fight that they're looking for. Are we going to see anything interesting coming out from the side of CLG? Yeah, we are. We see a Nidalee pickup. And who likes to play Nidalee? Oh, wait, that's HotshotGG.
Yeah. I mean, HotshotGG back on Nidalee. Of course, he's never really lost the touch from his favorite champion, but are we going to see something new coming out with the items? I'm sure we're still going to see a lot of split pushing pressure, but is he going to utilize some new items to make that happen? Or is he going to go the traditional route, really do what he's comfortable with, make sure that he can put out that pressure confidently so that the rest of CLG can build up once again towards the late game because Doublelift picked up Vayne?
I really want to see here, is this Hotshot saying, I like playing Nidalee. Season 1, I played a lot of split pushing AP Nidalee. Season 2, we saw more of an AD split push Nidalee style, and he adopted that once he went back to top lane a little bit, begrudgingly, albeit though. Is he going to try out some of these new items in Season 3 and see if we're going to go back to that AP Nidalee? If so, they've fallen back on a pretty safe choice for Doublelift. They picked him up Vayne. Doublelift's Vayne mechanics are second to none in the world. Maybe Reckless on Fnatic, we saw him doing some really awesome things at Vayne, as well as Wei Zhao from World Elite. However, Doublelift is really, really up there with what he can do with these late game hyper carries in the early stages of the game. So that's what makes him really, really scary. Opposite side, though, Imaqtpie, we talked about his Twitch play. That is something that we could see shutting down Vayne's early game. Twitch can be aggressive in the earlier stages of the game because of his mix between his spell damage and his normal attack damage. That's something that Riot said has been working on, these AD casters. The ADC, where the C is actually caster as opposed to just normal carry for the physical damage. Twitch kind of falls into that category. What is Imaqtpie going to build? Because we already saw him do something completely crazy with Kayle on the bottom lane.
And also, we forgot to mention, are we going to see a Ravenous Hydra coming out on Nocturne? Some people have been saying it's really good. Other people have said it's not worth getting because of the gold cost, but we'll have to wait and see. The last picks going down. Dignitas picked up Rise for Scarra, so he's in his own comfort zone. Meanwhile, Gragas was picked up by bigfatlp. Gragas had his kind of a flavor of the month moment in the summer for Season 2, but now how he's going to interact with those preseason changes, we can't really guess. But one thing for sure, you were talking about Twitch. Twitch's ultimate on top of Dignitas' initiation. Just imagine that. Everyone locked in, lined up for Twitch. It's going to be just absolutely dangerous for CLG, but they do have some good disengage. Once again, they have Chauster to use that if he has it saved, his ultimate to disengage. We have, of course, Janna, several modes of disengaging, and then Gragas also. His ultimate is on a fairly low cooldown. Even if they just used it to try to initiate, it could come back up in time for CLG.
And we've seen this a lot. CLG has gone for champions where they can play an individual skill style and get ahead in their lanes. They can win their lanes, group up in a team, and they have initiation or disengage enough to just win a team fight. Dignitas on the opposite side, they didn't necessarily get outplayed in the laning phase. They held their laning phases very strong, and they were able to capitalize on things like Evelynn being highly mobile in order to force CLG into these team fight situations, which they seem to be basing team compositions around. They want to win big team fights. CLG, they love to split push. They love to disengage with everything they have. They want Doublelift to get farmed up so far that when Dignitas gets that team fight that they want, like at the end of the game in game number 1, they had an engagement they wanted to, they weren't able to jump on Doublelift, and he just cleaned up absolutely everybody. Are we going to see Dignitas get the team fight that they want, or are we going to see CLG completely shut that down from them?
I mean, it's really going to come down to the setups. Again, Chauster, we're going to have to expect Dignitas also that he's going to be everywhere on the map. He's going to have that map presence. Even in the early game last game, he would wait around lanes to see if they needed a lane gank. If not, just jump right to the next camp that was next to him with a Sonic Wave. So are we going to see Crumbz kind of counteracting that with Nocturne? Of course, post level 6, he's going to be confidently ready to go for those counter ganks with his ultimate, but before level 6, is Crumbz just going to try to farm up as fast as he can, or also just show up, put out some pressure. Of course, Nocturne, not the best pre-level 6 ganker, but he can put out some good damage and scare off maybe a couple summoner spells.
Well, we are going to see if he does pick up that Ravenous Hydra. The best part about Ravenous Hydra, I don't know if it's a hammer or a spear or what it's supposed to be, but when you hit someone with it, there's that resonation off of there. So I call it the dubstep hammer because it looks like no matter who you're hitting, you're dropping the bass all over them. So we're going to have to see, can Dignitas drop the bass on CLG, force game number 3 in this MLG prize fight, or is CLG going to be the ones that walk away with the $1,000 prize and another 2-0 victory under their belt in MLG prize fight history? Guys, we're going to find out in game number 2 right after this. Welcome back to another MLG Prizefight series here live in New York at the MLG studios. My name, of course, is OptimusTom, and joining me for his second prize fight of ever is Mr. Will Chobra Cho.
It's exciting to be here at the MLG office, and today we've already had an excellent game one. So much action from beginning to end, and it was a drawn-out game too. We've been wondering, Tom, you and I, are these games actually just going to end up being shorter because there's so much damage? Not so. CLG decided they can go back to their roots. They can go back to what CLG is really known for worldwide, stalling out games and going for those pushes. They pulled it out in game one. Are we going to see the same strategy in game two?
We'll have to see, guys. We're about loaded in, and speaking of throwing back to their roots, I mean, when we get into the game, you guys will be able to see this, but I remember CLG being very fond of their old school Christmas skins, and Hotshot on Italy and bigfatlp on Gragas, they brought them back into the fray. So are we going to see old school style CLG trying to wait out for the end stages of the game? They have Doublelift on their team now, and he's been playing extremely well when he gets super far. And now that he's playing on Vayne, one of the champions he has some of the best mechanics in the world on, is he going to be able to outlast Dignitas' aggression and trying to force team fights? Or is CLG going to take game number 2 the same way they took game number 1? Guys, we're jumping in right now. Game number 2 is live, and Chobra, our favorite part to talk about in the game, what happens at level 1?
Well, we are seeing some similar pickups as game one. We see, once again, filling up his inventory with wards and consumables. We're seeing the same kind of start coming up from Patoy. Machetes on both junglers, so no one really setting up anything particular for level 1, but we do see a longsword on Doublelift, so we'll have to wait to see what that's going to be built into. bigfatlp scouting out in the mid lane against Scarra, and also we do have Imaqtpie just hiding out in the back lines in that mid lane in case anything happens, but again, I don't think we're going to expect any invades at level 1 in this game.
I'm liking the looks of Scarra's build. We can see he has that mini ward, as you've coined the phrase for, in addition to that total biscuit of rejuvenation. That means that he's heavy in the utility tree. He's going for that spell vamp and cooldown reduction for that mid lane mage. He's getting that little bit of edge on bigfatlp. Actually, bigfatlp has a biscuit to his name as well, so a lot of these pro players are favoring that utility tree. If you guys at home are watching, take note of this. That means that they're very heavy in utility. Gragas on the opposite side, I mean, if we take a quick look at his character screen here, we could see he's of course in the offensive mastery tree because he has that spell penetration. But from the side of Scarra, wouldn't be surprised to see him building a little bit more defensively on Rise, although he actually has the spell penetration as well as the lifesteal, so he's pretty much the same defensive and utility on both sides.
And now that minions are spawning, we can definitely say aren't going to be any particular aggressions at level 1. We do see Doublelift and Nhat Nguyen going for that double golem. Despite the jungle change, they're still confident that it's worth it for the extra advantage going back into lane with that level. They're going to cut it back and forth. Doublelift most likely going to build that into a Vamp Scepter. Last time we were wrong on that expectation, but Vayne, of course, early Bloodthirster, or maybe even Blade of the Ruined King. Are we going to see that in this game? We discussed it on our earlier stream, Tom. Great item on characters such as Vayne. Maybe we'll see its debut in an MLG prize fight.
We'll have to see. Vayne has the kiting potential, and one thing that you could really add to a champion that wants to kite with their tumbles away is something that slows and effectively refreshes your HP in the middle of an engagement. Dignitas doesn't really have anybody. Well, they have Nocturne, they have Shen. They're going to want to jump on Vayne in these team fights. If Vayne can get the Blade of the Ruined King down on someone like Shen, it's going to work awesomely with their Silver Bolt, but it's also going to get the active ability to trade health back and forth so that Vayne can outlive that double dive from the dive buddies of Nocturne and Shen. So we're going to have to see, does he build that into that? Does he go for the standard Bloodthirster? Doublelift didn't really go for anything besides the Mercurial Scimitar last game. A little afraid to explore those item builds. We'll have to see if he tries to do something wacky this game.
Patoy's already taken a lot of damage in the top lane. Of course, still no kill yet. Good sustain coming out. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, we're just seeing some passive farm. Same thing with the bottom lane. Of course, with the lane swap, now it's the top lane players in that bottom lane, both Zuna and HotshotGG. They're not even trading much. They're just safely going for the farm so far because both of these champions, they're content with farming all game, Tom.
I'm taking a look at HotshotGG over here. He has 8 ability power to start, just like his Teemo build did. So this is very indicative of Hotshot, Nidalee, Split Push, GG, whatever you want to call it. So he is going to be going back to his roots as an AP Nidalee. It's kind of a good thing if it goes to Zuna, though. Shen is an extremely tanky character. One thing, though, it looks like that the lane swap wanted to be initiated by both teams. So Hotshot, you know, he built the same stuff that he wanted to. He built the flask, the bottle for League of Legends, so he could sustain himself in that lane. But we had Gosu Zuna thinking that he was going to go into the lane swap by himself. Cloth Armor 5 health potions. It's not going to help against spears that are dealing AP damage.
I mean, yeah, he still does have those pots, but like you mentioned, bottle and pots going onto Hotshot. He's actually going to go ahead and go back, maybe going for an early pickup. We'll see what that is. Meanwhile, Chauster is setting up for a gank in that top lane. Doublelift initiates, but Dignitas is going to back off with that ward sighted in that river. So Dignitas safe for now. Again, Chauster, though, already acting as, you know, a huge movement factor. Mid lane, we're seeing a bit of a trade between bigfatlp and Scarra. No deaths yet, though.
We'll have to see if Chauster is going to be shut down as hard as he was in game number 1. They don't have a very roaming type of mid. Ryze, not the same kind of speedy champion that Evelyn is going to be, but Scarra, he's adjusted his playstyle in recent amounts of time. Could potentially see him moving around the map, being more active with those ring prisons to try to shut down aggression across the map. Bottom lane, we do have Hotshot finally returning. Went back, bought himself some boots in addition to all the consumables he has in his inventory. So he's giving himself a little bit of a move speed advantage over the Shen. As like we said, he started with that cloth armor, so he can already take some abuse from the magic damaging Nidalee.
Meanwhile, on top lane, Doublelift takes a little bit of damage, but he's trying to turn around with Silver Boat. Imaqtpie needs to watch out. Doublelift is going to go down first, though, to Patoy with that last auto attack. Imaqtpie barely makes it out alive, and now Patoy just trying to force Nhat Nguyen back so Imaqtpie can farm up this wave safely. Yet's not going to be able to really go aggressive for a kill, though, and Chauster is nowhere nearby, so Dignitas with the upper hand in the 5-minute mark.
That was just a good trade back and forth. There was a cleanse that went off from Doublelift. It got rid of the ignite damage. It wasn't able to cleanse away any poison or anything from Twitch, so he got the expunge off. He was able to deal a lot of damage there, and Patoy on the backswing was able to clean that up. Good flash away to keep Imaqtpie alive on Twitch, and that was just a really good pickup for first blood for Dignitas. We'll see if it kind of changes the way the game flows, since now they've received first blood rather than giving it away like in game number 1.
Yeah, unfortunately, it did go to Patoy, but now that means, you know, we talked about this before too. Supports getting a little bit of earlier gold isn't that bad of an idea. Crumbz actually steals that big Wraith, so invade successful on Dignitas' part. They're looking a lot stronger in the early game. But again, last game, they were ahead in the early game. They just lost it as Doublelift got farmed out, so can they stop it this time? Hopefully, with Zuna being able to keep up with Hotshot in the split push.
And as you were saying, when we were streaming earlier today, we talked about how important it's going to be, even if supports get some of that early kill gold, even if they get first blood, you could go back, pick up your Philosopher's Stone, get a Crystalline Flask, buy boots like Patoy's decided to do in addition to going for pieces of his Philosopher's Stone, pick up something as early as a Sight Stone at like the early levels of the game, like around level 3, around level 4, and then you can award in that lane and keep yourself safe from the jungler. That could be one way they counteract the very hyper-aggressive and hyper movement style of Chauster's Lee Sin. They get something like a Sight Stone down early. They're in a lane swap, so they're fairly protected on this 2v2, but it could work to their benefit just to shut down his movement in the river.
Doublelift a little bit of a misstep, giving Imaqtpie rather some free damage as he tries to escape through that brush, yet also having to take damage to block for Doublelift. So CLG once again on the back foot in this top lane matchup between Imaqtpie and Patoy versus Nhat Nguyen and Doublelift. bigfatlp looking maybe to see if he needed to roam up top. He's going against Scarra with Ryze, who already has his tier, so Scarra is looking to charge that. Are we going to see an Archangel rush like we did yesterday on Ryze, going for that Saracen Brace, Tom?
We'll have to see if they decide to go for the rush. Ruby Crystal's indicative that he wants to go for Catalyst. We actually see
but
Crumbz.
Top lane, Crumbz jumps in, and there wasn't even a need for crowd control. Doublelift just melted to Imaqtpie. Our second kill going to that Twitch. Can CLG stop it this time?
I don't know. Last time we saw Doublelift on Vayne, even though he is a very, very good Vayne player, he kind of insulted the enemy AD carry, even though he was just joking around about it, and then proceeded to go 0-5. So hopefully we see Doublelift not doing the same thing, not putting on a repeat performance where he is unfortunately going to be on the receiving end of a beating from the enemy AD carry. Unless you're a Dignitas fan. Actually, in the mid lane, we had a little bit of aggression going on between Scarra and bigfatlp.
Scarra thinks he can take it back because of Zuna's ultimate, flashing over to maybe see if they needed the taunt, but Scarra's gonna pick it up with that ignite. Brilliant decision making by Scarra. They knew that Shen was level 6. He was a little bit behind in the earlier trade, but he said, my ignite is still up. I can pick this up with the damage over time. Worst case, you can maybe go for a tower dive taunt, and they pick it up.
There's a really good call there from Dignitas. The Stand United was used. The flash was burned from Scarra, but he wound up picking himself up a kill with the Ignite. One more auto attack was what really sealed the deal there, and even if so, they had the Shen taunt to back that one up. Even if Shen couldn't land the taunt on Gragas, he was going to be able to throw a Vorpal Blade, secure a kill, and that was still a great use of the Stand United. So even though now it's down, HotshotGG was split pushing away in that bottom lane. He does have a bit of a CS advantage over Ghost of Zuna right now, 63 compared to 51, but they wound up netting himself a kill, and right now it's 3-0 in favor of Dignitas, and they're trying to take an early advantage in this game like we said in Champion Select.
On top lane, Nhat and Double are still just trying to pressure on Imaqtpie whenever they have a chance. They know they're a little bit behind, but Twitch has been extremely strong so far. 1-0-1. He has double Dorns and then a pickaxe instead of just a Vamp Scepter and Dorns Blade on Double. Imaqtpie actually charges, and there's the Wild Growth. Brilliant setup, but a good condemn coming out from Double. He's still taking too much damage from Imaqtpie, yet now also in trouble. Flashes over the Glitter Lance. That's going to put him into safety, but Twitch comes out with a kill. 2-0-1 now against Vayne, who's 0-3-0. What can CLG do right now, Tom?
Well, whoever thought of using that combination, the Twitch and the Lulu ultimate, making Twitch go invisible, putting the Whimsy on him so he could speed up into the middle of everybody before they knew it was going to hit them, and then all of a sudden Wild Growth knocks them up, slows them down. Good response times from CLG, being able to get the contempt against the wall. However, the extra HP on Twitch, just far too much, and they were able to pick up a very solid kill on that top lane.
And now Dignitas just trying to pressure down this top lane tower. They might be able to just take it down. They decide to come back. They're going to clear that wave and take down the top tower. So the first tower most likely going to fall here at the 10-minute mark to Dignitas. Meanwhile, Chauster setting up for a lane gank here in bottom. And so HotshotGG just trying to poke out against Zuna. Are they going to go for a dive? They might be able to red buff on Chauster. That's going to be some good damage. And of course, Hotshot could try to go for a snipe afterwards. He's trying to whittle down Zuna's health though. If it doesn't go down too much, actually taunt comes in, so Chauster's forced to show his hand. They get the cripple down onto Zuna, going to dive back in as soon as HotshotGG doesn't take any more tower damage, but Crumbz was nearby with his ultimate. Chauster now forced to retreat. Crumbz is chasing down Hotshot. I don't know if that's the best target as Hotshot's going to run through the brushes, so now Crumbz looking to see if he can pick up Chauster, maybe clear out the lane. Sonic Wave not going to hit, but there's the safeguard and the cripple. Crumbz still thinks he can turn this around, but HotshotGG goes into Cougar form, and now it just keeps going back and forth. Crumbz is still hungry for blood though, but he's out of mana nearly, so he can't really stick into this fight. Chauster just putting out that Sonic Wave to make sure Crumbz doesn't get any second ideas, but Imaqtpie shows up, doesn't get the slow on Hotshot, so both teams finally disengaging from that little skirmish.
And everything started from that little engagement because Hotshot baited out the taunt from Gosu Zuna. He stood in tower range. Zuna, if you are Shen, that is too juicy of an opportunity to pass up. Hotshot would have taken 3 tower hits, and we saw him take a lot of tower hits. That's why he had to back off, and they weren't going to be able to dive Zuna in that case. Because only one member of CLG was really putting out optimal amounts of damage, it gave Crumbz enough time to show up, use the Nocturne ultimate again, then the Paranoia shoots in, they wound up turning it around. Even though no one wound up dying in any of those engagements, it worked out brilliantly from the engage from CLG and then the way to turn it around from Dignitas, so good plays all around.
And now Dignitas utilizing the upper hand they had in the top lane, sending back Patoy and Imaqtpie to the bottom to take down yet another tower. Hotshot's not going to be able to stop this on his own. He's out of mana, so all he can do is go into Cougar form. Not going to happen though. Dignitas takes 2 towers within 2 minutes of each other, and now they're well ahead in the gold count, 17.2k to 13.9.
This is something I really like coming out from Dignitas. They identified that what was the one thing that shut them down last game? It's Doublelift, and it looks like they're going to try to shut him down right now.
They're going for the fear, and there's a taunt following up after. We do see a teleport coming in from Hotshot. Isn't going to be enough. Condemn being used after final hour for the stealth. Zuna still wants to kill, but he realizes it's too late. He needs to run away from HotshotGG and Chauster. They may go for the dive. Sonic Wave hits. There's Gragas to keep Zuna under the tower for the kill. He's just trying to run away with Shadow Dash, but eventually there's the body slam coming up from bigfatlp. Picks up the kill, the first kill for CLG in this game.
And that was Dignitas. Like I was about to say, they want to try to keep Doublelift down. That was the one thing that really destroyed them in game number 1. Unfortunately, in order to keep Doublelift alive, CLG spends 5 members of their own team. Look at Cutie-Pie. He's gotten the second tower here down to half HP already. Yes, CLG is being able to respond to take down that first hot tower on Dignitas' side, but now they're still behind by 1 tower. Dignitas, they're ahead in global gold. Even though they've been able to shut down... they've been able to keep Doublelift alive, Dignitas has shut him down already. He is 0-3. With the movement of everybody in that top lane from CLG, we just heard Dignitas go down and take the dragon. Even though CLG trying to keep Doublelift safe, trying to farm up into the game like they did last time, Dignitas is taking every other advantage they need to make sure that Doublelift is not going to get to that point in time.
And now we see Crumbz diving onto Doublelift once again in the bottom lane. Patoy puts on the Glitter Lance. There's the cleanse coming out. Isn't enough though. Good wild growth coming out from Patoy to keep Doublelift locked in. Kill goes to Imaqtpie. So everything went right for them. For Dignitas in that bottom lane gank. Once again, Imaqtpie farmed up 3-0-1 against the enemy team, pressuring down towers. They're pinging the inner tower in bottom lane. They want to snowball the advantage as far as they can here for Dignitas. And you know, this isn't going to look like the last game because they have advantages on all fronts, Tom.
Yeah, Dignitas is coming out ahead with a huge gold lead in this game number 2. They didn't have that at all in game number 1, even when they were in the team fighting phase where they were coming out ahead. It was always a little bit more in CLG Prime's favor. However, coming into this game, they shut down Doublelift early, 0-4-1. He has a BF sword and a Vampiric Scepter. Imaqtpie has pieces for his Infinity Edge. Could potentially go back and pick up the BF sword on top of that right now.
And they catch Chauster and bigfatlp in the invade. Chauster barely gets out of the fear with an excellent safeguard onto bigfatlp. CLG going to disengage and now just go for their own blue. Scarra hunting around for maybe a pickup, and they're actually going to go for their own invade here from Dignitas. Sees bigfatlp, gets the snare over the wall, but not going to be able to chase through because Chauster and Nhat are both there while Dignitas decides to disengage.
And CLG is going to have to play extremely defensive. They're not going to be able to do what they're doing here. Look at Doublelift get taunted out by Zuna. He's trying to 1v1 against him, gets the condemn away, but Doublelift's not going to be able to safely farm. He does have a couple more CS than Imaqtpie, but Imaqtpie has 3 kills on him. Even if he keeps up in the CS, CLG needs to do something to protect Doublelift. If he keeps split pushing and dying, he's never going to catch up to the 1k gold deficit that he has compared to Imaqtpie. Dignitas, they're roaming around, they're shutting down Doublelift, and then when CLG goes to respond and they try to protect him, guess what? Imaqtpie's by himself or with Patoy in another lane, farming away, taking down tower objectives, getting dragons with his team. It doesn't matter. He's coming out ahead because of it.
Imaqtpie is taking some really good poke coming out from HotshotGG though. So Hotshot's actually looking for maybe a 2v1 engage if he can whittle down both champions enough. Patoy also near half health. Hotshot healing himself up and now pushing. He's starting to hit his stride. He has that Rod of Ages. Meanwhile, top lane, Crumbz looking for Doublelift. They predicted correctly. There's the taunt despite the condemn. Doublelift locked in, Nhat trying to disengage with Monsoon. Zuna trying to decide what's the right move here. Disengages with Crumbz. But again, like you mentioned, Tom, they're just not letting Doublelift ever have any free time. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, bigfatlp trying to farm back up into the game. Hotshot, like we mentioned, has been getting stronger and stronger, now pushing down against the inner tower and bottom against Dignitas. Is this CLG's turning point?
I think this is exactly what CLG wants to do. By having Doublelift have such a huge target on his face and keeping him opposite side of the map, HotshotGG's Nidalee is being able to split push Dignitas into oblivion. They've taken down the outer tower. Look how far forward they are when Dignitas has this lead.
They actually jump onto Imaqtpie, but Imaqtpie had teammates everywhere with that stand united, with that wild growth. They're trying to hunt down HotshotGG. If they can catch him, this is a really good move for Dignitas. They're gonna have to give up because of the movement speed, but good save coming in from Dignitas. But you know what that means, Tom? That means all these ultimates are down for Dignitas. CLG could actually even look for a team fight at this point.
I don't think CLG wants the team fight at all, Chobra. I think this is their plan. We talked about it in game number 1, and they didn't do it as much in that time. Yeah, they let Doublelift sit back and farm himself back into the game, but that was about it. But look at this. No one else on CLG is grouped up. There are 3 members that might be present on the map at the same time in the same lane, and that is Nhat, that is GG, and that is Chauster. Hotshot and Doublelift are split pushing the crap out of Dignitas. When Dignitas wants to get in these team fights, you talked about it in the champion select, the Lulu ultimate, the Shen ultimate, the Nocturne ultimate, Scarra being able to lock people down, all the slows coming out from Glitterlands, the way that Imaqtpie can melt the team by activating that Twitch ultimate, that spray and pray in the middle of a huge team fight. If CLG can keep those 2 lanes completely isolated and Dignitas goes for one, the other one's going to push and that champion's going to be farmed up come the late stages of the game. CLG wants to keep Dignitas everywhere on the map so that where they're not is going in favor of CLG.
That's a really good point, Tom. And Doublelift did finish that Bloodthirster, so now Shirley has those stacks stacked up. Of course, there was a slight change with how those stacks, or how many stacks there are versus the base stat, but either way, still a really good item on Vayne. Meanwhile, in mid lane, we saw some good moves coming out from both mid laners, but Scarra getting the upper hand there, being able to escape the lane gank and actually keep Chauster locked in enough to not lose his tower because Chauster had to run back and disengage, waiting for a new minion wave. So Dignitas doing what they can to keep this lead, but like you mentioned, CLG is getting what they want with these split pushes, and Dignitas needs to figure something out. Zuna needs to make sure that he can keep up with this, because Imaqtpie is actually a bigger danger if the ultimates are down on Dignitas compared to Vayne, who's gonna be able to try to escape with Final Hour and Condemn and Tumble combined.
The one thing really keeping CLG Prime in this game is the fact that Dignitas, you think about it, you think Dignitas could be like, okay, we'll send the 2v2 in one lane, and we'll send the 2 of our AD carry and support in one lane, and then we'll keep our top laner in the other one. Unfortunately, CLG, they're working great because of HotshotGG. Dignitas is like, well, we're going to put the support in the AD carry in the lane with your one split pusher, Nidalee, and then we're going to give Shen against Vayne, where Shen can shut down Vayne because he didn't have a lot of damage.
bigfatlp gets caught with that rune prison, but puts down his own ultimate to kind of disperse Dignitas, making sure they don't jump on him all at once. Good choice coming out. Meanwhile, bottom lane, Zuna and HotshotGG trading a little bit. Zuna running a little bit lower. He has that Sunfire cape because he's been going up against Vayne, but like you mentioned in the laning phase, the armor's not going to help him at all, but he is getting pinched down. Patoy and Crumbz coming in along with Imaqtpie. The fear is going to land onto Hotshot, even though he tries to jump out of it. Todd barely missing. They're chasing through. Can the poison help finish off Hotshot? There's the ultimate coming up from Crumbz. He wanted to try to save it maybe, but he had to use it to finish off the move. But again, this is exactly what you were talking about, Tom. Doublelift is now farming away happily at top lane and going to push up against that inner tower. Meanwhile, mid lane gets taken down against Dignitas.
And Dignitas are going to try to roam around and convert this into a couple of buffs to capitalize. I want to point out, it's not the Doublelift show this game, at least not yet. It's the HotshotGG show. Because of his split push potential, because of how comfortable he is on that AP Nidalee, he's been able to 2v1 in a lane that he's been split pushing. Dignitas, they're finally going to try to do something about this. They're going to start roaming around their own. They have a 3-man roaming squad pushing down on this inhibitor turret, and that's something CLG is going to have to react to, because if they lose an inhibitor, the strategy they've been doing, it kind of gets a bit nullified.
Imaqtpie gets caught behind though. Good flash trying to escape from the cripple, but there's the slow onto Chauster, but Hotshot's gonna be able to chase him down if they split. This is dangerous. Imaqtpie just trying to play mind games with his stealth. Chauster's still looking for him. He's going down the same path. Meanwhile, Hotshot left to chase down Patoy and Crumbz. Patoy puts on the glitter lens. They're going to escape, but Imaqtpie still in some trouble. HotshotGG is coming in from the stream. The spear isn't going to hit. He dodges the sonic wave, but here comes bigfatlp. Imaqtpie surely has no way out. He's like up against the wall. He gets seen by the cripple, and there's the shutdown gold going to Chauster. CLG saves the inhibitor, picks up a kill, and again, they're going to start pushing.
Once again, I have to credit HotshotGG, not necessarily for all the damage in that kill, but we were taking a look on the screen at Cutie-Pie's stealth cooldown. At 1 second left, Hotshot throws down a trap and Cutie-Pie walks over it. That lets Lee Sin figure out where he is, get the Tempest and Cripple down, and now they're going on the Crumbz.
And Crumbz is low, but there is the Stand United. Oh, can they convert this into a kill? Crumbz is too low. The taunt comes out, still going to go down to Chauster. Zuna just trying to pick up the equalizing kill. He does make it happen, but meanwhile, we still see Lee Sin onto him. There's the kill going to actually Scarra, though. Scarra comes in for the assistance with Zuna, picks up 2 kills versus 1. So Dignitas kind of coming back on top in that skirmish, but here comes Doublelift with another strong minion wave going for that push. CLG, this is what people used to know about CLG. They're going for those pushes, and we do see a pause in this game.
All right, so guys, we do have a pause. Unfortunately, I can't look at what's going on again because I was scrolling around with the camera, so unfortunately, I have no mouse. If I try to move my mouse button, it just brings it back to the middle of the screen. So we do have Cutie-Pie disconnecting, so maybe something went wrong with his computer there, but hopefully we'll be getting back into this game very shortly. But exciting stuff we've seen so far in this game, Chobra. We've seen the old CLG with new flair. It's kind of like when, you know, they have Pepsi and Pepsi Twist. That's pretty much what it is. It's CLG that you know and love, but they're being aggressive, they're being active, they're pushing mid towers. something that you normally didn't do. You're like, okay, we're going to sit back and farm and split push the farm. Now we're going to 3-man take towers in one lane. Doublelift's going to farm in another lane. Hotshot's going to farm in the last lane that's left available. If one of them dies, the other 2 lanes immediately push forward, take their advantages, and fall back to disengage. This is having Dignitas literally running from one area to another area to another area, systematically ping-ponging back and forth. It's like a pinball machine. Dignitas is the ball, and CLG is the entire machine. Dignitas has to run everywhere, try to shut down all the big flashing lights that CLG's putting on their mini-map. CLG's just going to back off and disengage. We did see Dignitas doing something good to try to counteract this strategy from CLG, though. They grouped up as 3 of their own. Scarra left, say, in the mid lane. There was someone else in the top lane. I believe it was Gosu Zuna. Nocturne, Patoy on Lulu, as well as Twitch, went into that bottom lane. As soon as the inhibitor became threatened, CLG had to pull back. If they lose that inhibitor, they lose the ability to push out a lane. Those super minions are going to equalize a bit of a split push from a champion like Doublelift, who isn't as farmed as he wants to be at this point in the game. Nidalee, of course, AP Nidalee can't really put out the same damage output the AD Nidalee can, so she's susceptible to some of these super minions. She's susceptible to trying to counteract against those big pushes. If Dignitas can keep the pressure on the CLG side of the map, CLG won't be able to capitalize on this because they're going to wind up sacking an inhibitor and falling behind because of it.
You know, it's interesting that you bring up, people going back to the roots, but with the Flare. First game we saw CLG actually have to adapt to Dignitas, going for those team fights and turning it around. This time we see Dignitas adapting to CLG, going for those pushes. So would you say Dignitas, the really strong hope right now is to continue pushing down that bottom lane inhibitor, pressuring that to at least stop the push from CLG?
I think they're going to have to put pressure on any lane. That's what they want to do. If they take down a second tier tower or an inhibitor tower in any other lane, all of a sudden the split push is going to be defensive. If they push out too far, there's going to be a threat of Dignitas, especially with their very speedy champion composition. They've been using it the entire time. Twitch with a Whimsy, and then there's the Lulu ultimate, the Wild Growth, to stop it. Twitch goes invisible. He's going to move really quickly. They put the Whimsy on him. Guess what? There's an inhibitor exposed. Dignitas, all of a sudden, there's a plethora of open backdoor stuff that they can try to pull off, and CLG's going to have to defend rather than push as far as they are to try to take down the multiple towers at Dignitas and come back with some global gold. You guys can't see it on the screen right now. Even though CLG is down 8 kills to 3, they're only 3,000 gold behind despite Dignitas taking most of the dragons in this game. It is 4-4 in towers because they've been able to equalize with this. Can I actually switch I can switch the gold. That's really cool. They'll let me do that. Let's take a look at the breakdown really quickly. PewDiePie is 3-1-2. Doublelift is 0-4-1. But they're only 200 gold apart because of the towers and all the farm that CLG's been able to give to their team. Mid lane as well, Scarra's been roaming around 2-0-0. He has 4 less CS than bigfatlp. He is only 600 gold ahead, whereas you think with those extra kills and the roaming he's done, his team, he'd be a little bit further ahead in that matchup. Lee Sin and Nocturne, once again, Chauster's far behind the enemy jungler, but he's doing something different from the other jungler. He's building up to be tanky. He has a Kindle Gem. He has the No Magic Mantle. Could be going for that Spirit Massage again to see if he can sustain himself better in these fights. Nocturne, though, Brutalizer, Wriggles Lantern, he's building damage. He's going to be a champion that wants to help carry his team to push down these towers and in these team fights deal damage to the enemy AD carry. We talked about CLG. Their entire philosophy for this game is not 5v5 team fight.
Yeah, so if this game drags out, Tom, both teams have some notable late game champions. Who's really going to pull ahead? Like you mentioned, gold is pretty similar right now. Kills, of course, Dignitas is strongly ahead, but 4-4 towers. Late game, Ryze is going to be a terror. He's going to become that bruiser mage, especially with some of the new items. But then we have Vayne, who doesn't care who's a bruiser or not, going to shred through the entire enemy team. Is it going to simply come down to, can Doublelift stay alive, or else Dignitas is going to push through?
Well, it's really going to come down to what Ryze ends up building. You already see on the items here, Catalyst has been acquired. He hasn't gone for a motion to pick up a Rod of Ages yet, so he's not necessarily going to have as much HP as he's going to normally have in the later stages of the game. He is taking away, I forget, I can't actually scroll over the tier of the goddess here. He's taking away those charges. When he finally decides to upgrade that into an Archangel staff, he could immediately get a Saris Embrace off of that, considering the stacks carry over. That's going to give him a shield that Doublelift won't be able to bend benefit from his Silver Bolts. That's going to be a tankiness on Rise that Vayne won't be able to really plow through as easily, especially coupled with the Frozen Heart he's going to be acquiring. He has pieces for haunting guys, so that means he could be going for that Liandry's Torment. Who's going to be better to get an item than Rise? You throw down the Rune Prison, you're going to be disabling them. You deal as much damage as possible from your immense mana pool, potentially going for a Banshee's Veil, a Frozen Heart. Look at all that mana he's going to be having. That's insane amounts. Put the Liandry's Torment down. All his skills are now going to be scaling off of his mana. On top of this, they're going to be burning away percentage of HP damage. All of a sudden, Vayne is going to be like, wait a second. Dealing percentage of HP damage to someone really hurts, and it's not going to be beneficial. If CLG can keep up the split pushing, and Doublelift is just literally going to farm himself into this game, I think Rise is going to outclass him. There's going to be a little window of opportunity where Scarra is going to be more powerful in the beginning of the late game than Doublelift is, that Dignitas is really going to have to try to force CLG to fight by just grouping up and not caring, and we might actually see a base race situation in that case.
And that would be exciting. We know both teams are pretty used to base race situations. They're both accustomed to it, so we'll see who pulls out ahead. But another thing to note in terms of team composition, Tom, again, Dignitas seems to have a little bit of a clearer choice in who's going to be in the front line. We have a champion like Shen, who's clearly a tank. He has the taunt. He can lock people down. Nocturne, not going to be as tanky like you mentioned, built that brutalizer, but he has a clear initiation. On the side of CLG, though, they're really just counting on Chauster to make those plays again, which he did. And of course, now with bigfatlp, they can really bounce around team members of Dignitas, but no clear front line.
No, they really don't. That's one thing that we were talking about last game that Dignitas really didn't have. They had a Mumu, who was building not necessarily the tankiest build in the world. So he initiated, but he wasn't able to survive most of the team fight, or at least provide that big block that was like, hey, you guys have to get through me first in order to get to our AD carry and the rest of our squishies. So it didn't work out that well. Now Dignitas, they have Shen on the front line. Nocturne, looking at their item composition right now, he can build kind of damaging because Scarra is going to be a late game hyper carry with a lot of tankiness to himself. Scarra is going to be in the middle of the fight. He's not going to be in the back necessarily. He wants to jump up, wants to pop his ultimate. He wants to pop the spell flux down, bounce it off of everybody, get the rune prisons down, start shredding away with those overloads as soon as they come off of cooldown. He wants to be dealing a lot of damage, and he could take a lot of damage because of that. This is letting Twitch build Glass Cannon, Infinity Edge first, probably going for that Zeal, going into a Phantom Dancer, something a little bit more standard. We're not going to see a Renan's Hurricane or anything like that, I don't think, in this game. I don't think Doublelift can be doing the same thing, as he already has his own Zeal, probably going to turn that into a Phantom Dancer. So, looking at the composition, Chauster, he's far behind at this point. He is 2-1-1, but look at this. He's basically 40 CS behind Crumbz in the jungle. That's a lot of disparity when it comes down to the jungle, especially now that as time goes on, those creeps become worth more and more gold. Once again, look at the gold difference. 1,000 gold in favor of Nocturne. That means he's going to be dishing out a lot more damage than Lee Sin can absorb in these fights. If CLG gets in a team fight, if Dignitas can corral them into one area, like if they're going to fight against an inhibitor, they are not going to be able to withstand the damage that Dignitas has right now.
That's a really good point. And also, we talked about some tankiness involved, but let's talk about attack speed debuff, because that was the debuff that was highlighted at the end of Season 2, and we are surely going to see a Frozen Heart on Scarra if the game goes long enough, and the stat is still there, but are we going to see similar stats going on to Shen, because he's going to be diving in first, maybe even taunting Vayne, and he wants to make sure he mitigates that damage, or are we just going to see more armor? We talked about Pen. Is it worth even stacking as much armor anymore?
I don't think that we're going to see a lot of armor coming out from Ghost Zuna this game. It was something that we saw him build on Elise with the Frozen Heart, but that was about it. He built maybe a Guardian Angel, and that was the rest of it. He has a Phage in his inventory, and he has Ninja Tabby, as well as that Sunfire Cape. Sunfire Cape, Ninja Tabby, maybe a Guardian Angel. I think that's all the resistances he's going to be building on Shen. That Phage, it's going to depend. If he builds Frozen Mallet, he's going a lot of tank. He's going to be that dive buddy for Nocturne and try to stick on Vayne or try to stick on whoever they decide to go for in that fight by diving down on them. If he does that, he's going to absorb a tremendous amount of damage. If he turns that into a Trinity Force, decides to be a little bit more extra damage, Dignitas' some of their advantages might start to slip away quicker than we were discussing a bit earlier during the pause, where they could get that big team fight engagement sooner and try to force it by an inhibitor by CLG. If he goes for Trinity Force, he's not going to have the same tankiness. So if they try to go for Trinity Force, there's a certain timing they're trying to hit with this engagement, and if CLG can stall them out from that with all the disengage they have from Janna and Gragas, it'll go swimmingly for CLG because Vayne's going to be too powerful, and Shen won't have enough tankiness on him by building a little bit more damage to really put up with her.
That really goes back to game 1 where Crumbz wasn't able to be that tank. Is Dignitas going to make a similar mistake by not putting enough tankiness onto Zuna, or have they learned their lesson and they're going to have that strong wall in the front so that Twitch can just sit comfortably in the back even throughout the late game, so that Ryze and Shen can just stand in front. Nocturne can go in for the initiate. Even if he gets bursted down, his job is done. Shen and Ryze keep them locked down with the crowd control, and Twitch can just go to town. Or is CLG going to keep up their split push, set up a gold advantage, and then go for the team fights just like in game 1?
From the side of CLG, we've been talking about one of their only hopes is to go for the split push kind of composition. We do have to identify the fact that CLG has some team fight presence. We talked about their ultimates being used as a disengage method. They can be used as an engage, or they can be used to pick someone out of position. If CLG starts being more reactive to what Dignitas is doing to try to shut down Doublelift and to try to shut down Hotshot, if that 3-man roaming squad decides that, hey, we're going to go and gank rather than try to push down a turret or contest an objective from you guys, Janna and Gragas are involved in that 3-man roaming squad to be seen roaming around the map and usually taking up that mid lane from CLG. If all of a sudden Gragas decides that he's going to use his barrel to split off Dignitas trying to collapse down on Hotshot, if Janna's able to get a good knockback on her ultimate, that Howling Gale, to separate Dignitas and really confuse them from the fight, then CLG, if they pick off 1 or 2 members of Dignitas, it's going to go more in favor for them for a team fight. So CLG, what are they looking for in order to come back in this game? They're looking to try to split push to keep their 2 carries, Hotshot and Doublelift, extremely farmed and keep them going into the late game so they can get carried by them. They're also looking to pick members of Dignitas out of place as they force them to roam around the map. Dignitas, we talked about in length. They're trying to corral CLG into a point where they can take them out in a team fight because they know they're stronger than them. They're also looking to get a good engage with Shen and Nocturne to lock up any number of members of CLG that might be caught out of place in a fight to try to push their advantage and just win in a one-game push.
Again, opposites on both teams. We have Dignitas wanting CLG to be grouped up. We have CLG wanting to disperse Dignitas in team fights with the skills like you mentioned. But I don't know if we'll really see any of that happen until the late game, because again, CLG is comfortable where they are. They're comfortable with the split push capabilities they've shown already. They do have that inhibitor open though, so like you mentioned, they're gonna have to keep an eye out for a possible backdoor, especially as Twitch builds up his items and gets that Phantom Dancer. When he gets that attack speed, is he going to speed through? Maybe even get caught at the end and get killed off, but if he gets the inhibitor, that immediately shuts down the split push for a couple minutes.
We do have PewDiePie reconnected to the game though, so hopefully this will get underway in just a couple seconds, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, thank you for tuning in. This is game number 2 of the MLG Prizefight series for this lovely Wednesday evening. Your casters are myself, OptimusTom, and Chobra. Chobra, what an awesome series for your second prize fight.
It has been excellent, and we are back in game. So again, we haven't really been missing too much during the pause, and as soon as it started, because everyone was in a passive farming state, but we had Dignitas grouping up in the mid lane. bigfatlp trying to defend on his own for the time. We actually see a ping going down for Dignitas, so they want to pressure that mid lane. Meanwhile, Zuna making sure that Doublelift doesn't get too much free farm here in the bottom jungle of his own team. Zuna actually catches him with the taunt. Can Doublelift get away? He's trying to set up for a condemn. He's forced to flash. Zuna going for the wraparound as Patoy comes in for the cutoff. Crumbz also coming from base. This is surely a kill for Doublelift. Scarra picks up that kill, and now they're going to ping that mid lane again, go for that push.
Like we talked about, if they can catch someone out from the side of CLG, be it HotshotGG, be it Doublelift, they're going to be able to pressure CLG. They burn these ultimates trying to defend this mid tower from going down, then they're not going to have the disengage or the re-engage they need when Vayne gets back up. Dignitas knows this, so they're putting pressure down on this tower. Only 2 of them actually. We just see in the meantime Crumbz going to be going, securing that dragon for the global gold. So if CLG doesn't want to use those ultimates and decides to back off from this, now there's a tower down, now there's a dragon down, and all of a sudden Dignitas has jumped ahead 5,000 gold, all because Doublelift died.
Meanwhile, Hotshot is in the top lane though, so Dignitas needs to keep an eye out for that. He's pushing ahead, clearing that wave really quick. There's more minions on the way for CLG. We do see Dignitas now trying to maybe split off Imaqtpie thought maybe he could pick someone off, but that's going to be a disengage on CLG's part. Zuna has returned to base for Dignitas to block up that split push, so now HotshotGG is just milling about the enemy jungle. Meanwhile, Crumbz pushed up that bottom lane for Dignitas. So again, both teams trying to keep up the pressure in the lane they had that advantage in. It's really going to come down to who slips up first in their watch. HotshotGG going to successfully pull out that blue buff away from Scarra. Scarra still already has his own though, so not going to be too detrimental against Dignitas.
And Dignitas are going to have to respond. We saw CLG kind of grouping around by this Baron area for a bit, but like you said, it was more to steal away that blue buff from the side of Dignitas. But Dignitas is playing this extremely passive by comparison what we thought we wanted them to do.
Meanwhile, bottom lane, Crumbz initiated onto Doublelift, but Doublelift just had so much damage, especially the final hour, and he just simply picks off Nocturne. He didn't even need a beautiful condemn. It was just straight up pure damage because, like you mentioned, Crumbz went for a damage build. He didn't have the tankiness to survive through that engagement.
Yeah, Crumbz thought that maybe Doublelift wouldn't have been as farmed up as he was. He's going to be able to take him on a one-on-one fight. Unfortunately for him, that is not the case at all. This is the scary thing for Dignitas. If they give Doublelift these kills, he's acquired a Phantom Dancer now. Phantom Dancer and Bloodthirster compared to the Zeal and the Infinity Edge from Imaqtpie. Doublelift 40 CS ahead. They're giving him that kill. They're giving him a little bit extra gold. That's the spark that CLG wants to have Doublelift to carry them. The more that they let Doublelift just split push and farm, eventually they'll come back into the game and be super hyper carry Vayne, but it's not going to be the same super hyper carry Vayne as quickly. Giving him kills speeds up the process. Dignitas wants to look for a team fight, but if Doublelift gets kills and he gets that farm quicker and earlier, Dignitas is not going to wind up winning those team fights. It's going to be a repeat of game number 1 where Doublelift just mops the floor with them.
And because of all that free farm, his Bloodthirster, of course, fully stacked. Like you mentioned, full Phantom Dancer. Those are the 2 core items if you're going for a Vayne with a BF sword item in the early game. 25 minutes, he's pretty content, although he has 5 deaths. He has 213 CS up against Imaqtpie's 172. So I'm sure there's no complaints in that department. Hotshot now joining back with his team. CLG is actually grouping up in mid, and they're rushing forward towards this inner tower. Dignitas, meanwhile, trying to set up in the bottom lane. Scar is actually going to find a Doublelift, and he's going for the Rune Prison. He does get it. There's the cleanse, but there's a Glitter Lance coming out from Patoy. Really well played, and the Wild Growth. They're diving in. There's no tower. This could be a free inhibitor. Scar can take it down fast enough before CLG reacts, but I don't think he has enough damage. Imaqtpie joining, though. Crumbz now there. CLG pinching in. HotshotGG does get the snipe onto Imaqtpie to start this engagement, and they're desperate for this inhibitor. Imaqtpie is still on it. He gets the slow onto bigfatlp. They pick up the inhibitor. Imaqtpie low. Scar's behind. They might just have to sacrifice him, but we do see the Stand United coming in. Dignitas is turning this around. There's the initiate from Crumbz. Monsoon goes down just in time, but the fear still lands onto Chauster. There's a kill going to Zuna. HotshotGG desperately trying to turn it around for an equalizer kill, but he needs to watch out. 3 members still left at pretty confident hope for Dignitas.
If Imaqtpie didn't take a brunt of the damage in that original assault, they would have been able to turn that fight around completely, but it's exactly what we were talking about during the pause. Dignitas catches Doublelift out. They kill Doublelift twice. After that, they try to push the advantage in a lane. Once that inhibitor is threatened, we saw CLG. They were grouping up as 4. They were going to push the middle tower down in the second middle tower in the mid lane. Mid. They're going to push that second inner tower from Dignitas down as a force of 4 with Doublelift safely split push farming. Dignitas identifies, isolates Doublelift, recognizes that that lane is also the weak lane on top of this one, and you saw how quickly CLG pulled back to defend that inhibitor. Now Dignitas knows that's what's going to get CLG stirring. That bottom lane has the inhibitor down. Doublelift's going to be farming that bottom lane still, but it's not going to be as quick because he's trying to take down super minions. This alleviates the pressure of Doublelift ever pushing back onto the side of Dignitas' map that quickly, and this lets Dignitas be able to group up elsewhere on the map. Even though that Shen ultimate is down, they're not going to be able to split push as much to try to counteract CLG's split push. They still have the potential to group up as 5 against 4 though, and put pressure on CLG and start spreading them thin in a way that CLG doesn't want to be spread.
And Tom, we're going to have to stand absolutely corrected here because look at Scar's items. He picked up a Muramana instead of the Seraph's Embrace. He went for the Manami and transformed it into a Muramana with the full stacks, and that means he's going to be doing a lot more damage with his auto attacks using that mana pool, a synergy that we didn't even think to discuss during that pause.
So we have the extra attack damage equal to 2% of his maximum mana. Then he's going to get his single target spells and attacks, which is his Overload, which is his which is his Rune Prison, they are actually going to be dealing an additional 3% damage of his current mana. So when he auto attacks with a full mana pool, that is 5% of his 3,000 mana on his first attack. When he uses it on an overload, take a quick look at his damage here, guys. He's going to have 160 plus 16 plus 194 plus a little bit less than that, about 175 from that 5% from the Mirror mana. He's going to burst people down like Rise shouldn't be able to do.
And not to mention, this is going to help them push even better because that's going to count towards the structure damage. Imaqtpie catches Hotshot though, but he should be able to get out just fine. Imaqtpie still desperate for this kill, chasing through, actually flashes forward, thinks he can get the kill, goes for the expunge. Not enough, just barely not enough to take down Hotshot's Nidalee.
And we saw the flash being expended from Imaqtpie, so that means that if Dignitas does get into team engagement, they're going to have to protect him again like they did in that bottom lane push. Without the flash, he can't disengage from CLG. And even though CLG, we talked about they have a weaker team fighting team at this point in time, they're going for the split pushing, they could still take down Imaqtpie rather quick with the amount of damage that Gragas can potentially put out.
Near steal from Hotshot towards that Baron. Dignitas takes it pretty much for free. And CLG now again on the back foot because of that inhibitor, just like you mentioned, that's completely paralyzed CLG's action across the map. And then we see Doublelift getting caught once. Now Doublelift is in fear of being alone. We look at Rise, he has the two huge items he wants. He has the Haunting Guys, then he has the Mirror Mana and the Frozen Heart. Dignitas is prepared to fight, and now they have the Baron buff.
It's going to be extremely scary when Scarra turns that Haunting Guys into Liandry's Torment. You're going to have all the damage we are just talking about from the Mirror Mana proccing on his Overload. In addition to this, if he uses Rune Prison instead, guess how much damage that's going to be your percent HP draining away. This is Rise. Basically, it's Rise is equivalent to Twisted Fate with a Lich Bane. Only if Twisted Fate had tank treads and was able to bounce his spells among all the enemy team members.
And speaking of items, we do see that Zuna picked up that Aegis of the Legion, going for a little bit more tankiness, and once it's built into a Runic Bulwark, also going to give really good tankiness to the rest of his team. Dignitas now just pressuring against this middle inner tower, taking the jungle buffs and camps. They're setting up for a kill. They're not in any rush though. They have the Baron buff. They're pretty content with where they are, but they have to make something happen before this buff runs out and before the inhibitor comes back up, because as soon as it comes back up, if CLG is the one to catch one member of Dignitas, they could get back in their comfort zone.
Well, we have Zuna recalling back to base to defend against this top, and this top tower being pushed down by Hotshot. Stand United is now available. There's a Nocturne initiation. Dignitas is going in mid lane.
Crumbz jumped onto Nhat Nguyen and then Chauster. They're going in for the kill. They actually baited out Zuna from the base, so Hotshot's going for that inhibitor in the top lane. Meanwhile, the inner tower surely going to disappear. Can Dignitas equalize this with their own second inhibitor in the middle lane? We see Zuna porting back towards base, so he should be able to stop the inhibitor. The bottom inhibitor just came up for CLG. This is a good moment for CLG. Hotshot took down the top inhibitor, so now that's open. They're on equal ground in terms of map pressure. Dignitas now switching over to the bottom lane. They still have that super minion to help pressure them, but they're gonna have to back off.
And that was a good play by CLG. Like you said, they baited out the Stand United from Ghost of Zuna. Hotshot knew that he was absolutely safe from anything that Dignitas could do. Wound up face tanking that tower, got extremely low in that engagement, but he took it out. He wasn't able to get the inhibitor because Dignitas was going to be back in enough time, but he relieved pressure from CLG's base. They only got a tower for it in the mid lane. They weren't able to take down the inhibitor tower. They let the other inhibitor respawn. Now Doublelift is down there. He's farming out the last waves of super minions, and he's going to be in a good spot to take this lane and push it down a bit, keep himself relatively safe. Quicksilver Sash has been acquired. He has the cleanse. Doublelift is going to be extremely slippery. This could be the point in time that CLG was looking for. Looking across the board, they are coming into big items of their own. Aegis of the Legion has been acquired by Lee Sin, so Chauster now has a bit of team fight presence for CLG. Same side, there's a Shirelia's Reverie from Nhat Nguyen, as well as those Ionian Boots of Lucidity. John didn't even have boots until recently in this game. Now upgrading to that Runic Bulwark we were talking about a bit earlier on in the game, or actually earlier on before that engagement, you're talking about Shen going to pick that up. Chauster's upgraded it almost immediately. Death Cap on Gragas in addition to Nidalee. Void Staff, Haunting Guys, Spell Penetration left and right, and that Rod of Ages. She's actually pretty beefy.
Yeah, CLG's in a really good place. Chauster once again going for a little bit more team-based build, like you said, and also playing that tank role. They're filling it in very well using Lee Sin as that front line, and also, again, you told us that they have the choice of using their skills to either engage or disengage. So that's time they baited out the Stand United, then disengaged immediately. So now it's Dignitas back on the back foot despite having that Baron buff.
Stand United has been up again from the side of Gosu Zuna, so we're going to have to see if Dignitas decides to put some pressure on there, or if their own exposed inhibitor makes them a little bit lax on what actions they are going to take. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just tuning in, it is 1-0 in favor of CLG Prime. If they can farm this one out into the later stages of the game and get Vayne to a point where she can carry them all on her back, same thing on HotshotGG's Nidalee, then Dignitas, all their advantages they gained through the rest of this game could be all for naught. We do have pings going down on Chauster as he is walking around now. Looks like he might just be clearing out some wards. Actually doesn't even have an oracle selected to his name. He's just trying to get positioning, putting wards down in of himself to see where Dignitas is going to push. We did talk about any open inhibitors, whether it's going to be MLG backdooring and Dignitas pushing them down. A big point of contention. Both sides of the map though, as Hotshot's doing it cross map. We could have 2 engages at once.
Zuna's taking down Hotshot pretty low in the top lane, though they're dueling. They're just sitting there because of that taunt. Meanwhile, bottom lane, we do see an engagement trying to start, but Zuna's still sticking on to Hotshot. Tries to get the taunt over the wall, but well-timed flash by Hotshot's going to keep him escaped. But again, Zuna can't leave until Hotshot is completely gone, so he can't relax just yet. Dignitas still dancing at this bottom lane inhibitor against CLG. It's really down to who's going to bait out the abilities first. Hotshot's way away from the inhibitor, but as soon as that Stand United goes down, there's no tower. He's going to zip right onto the top lane inhibitor. We'll have to wait and see who makes the first move. Zuna's actually scouting out. He wants to make sure Hotshot goes back to base or is killed off into that death timer, trying to chase him down. Meanwhile, in the top lane, we see Ryze has popped his ultimate there, going for an engage. bigfatlp running really low. There's a Nocturne ultimate going for the kill. bigfatlp flashes that just in time, but Imaqtpie picks up Chauster. This is a good move for Dignitas. Imaqtpie does go down, but the inhibitor is down, so mission is a success. Hotshot had to run away from Zuna. Dignitas back on top.
Best part about that engagement was Dignitas didn't have to use the Stand United. Hotshot kept Zuna busy, but the rest of the team from Dignitas taking this window of opportunity when they're farther ahead of CLG and really running with it. We saw the engagement coming in from Dignitas. They got bigfatlp down extremely low. The paranoia for Nocturne went off. They did lose PewDiePie in that engagement, but he was able to take out Chauster. Chauster is the tanky one from the side of CLG. With him gone, they were able to pressure through, take that inhibitor down, and now they've regained that advantage that they lost during that time where Hotshot baited out Stand United. So now they baited out Hotshot kind of, and he was able to reprise the role back and forth. Dignitas has now come back into the game. On top of this, we saw Crumbz putting pressure on the mid lane while the rest of Dignitas was dancing around bottom lane. Chauster, the jungler, peeled off to try to defend against Crumbz. Crumbz built damage and now has gone for a frozen mallet for a bit of tankiness in and of himself. Chauster built straight tank. So Crumbz was keep pushing the lane into the tower, pushing the lane into the tower. Chauster couldn't group up with his team until his team absolutely needed him to. Nocturne didn't matter. He could keep pushing that lane and then pop the paranoia to go in and disrupt the team fight, much like we saw them do in that engagement. And Dignitas played that one almost picture perfect.
CLG with a good timer on the Baron is going to start it. It's melting pretty fast. Dignitas trying to react. They're not going to get there in time to maybe they could go for a potential steal. Not going to happen. The CLG picks it up. Are we going to see a fight? CLG trying to reposition with that Shredder's Reverie. They're spreading out, and now we do see Nocturne jumping in while Zuna tries to zone out Chauster. Doublelift targeted right away, gets melted by Scarra. Hotshot forced to jump over the wall to run away. Meanwhile, Crumbz and Zuna are on to Chauster. There's the flash coming out. No one willing to follow through from Dignitas, but this means Dignitas can push through once again. Hotshot's going to have to stick around to make sure no one chases through too fast, which means no split push in the top lane. Dignitas going to be happy to push down this middle lane.
And like we talked about, if they get into a fight around an inhibitor, Baron is another great example of that one. CLG did not want to team fight. They tried to take the Baron quicker than Dignitas could get there. They wanted to sneak away with a free Baron, but they couldn't. Dignitas caught up with them. Even though they took down the Baron, they wound up paying with one of their lives, and now look at Dignitas, knowing that they're far ahead, pushing down to this mid lane. They take out the inhibitor tower, and now it's Dignitas being able to split push away. Crumbz built damage, takes down the tower. Is he going to be able to get out though? Hotshot might have caught him here.
Hotshot does run through the brush to get that extra movement speed. Crumbz trying to juke in and out. There's the Stand United, maybe going for the turn. A little bit late on the turn from Crumbz, but it's not going to matter. He gets out safely is what's important. But if HotShot caught sight of that, he knows Stand United is down, and now CLG may try to look for another window to split push, Tom.
On top of this, if they split push with HotshotGG, or if they do it with Doublelift, actually they need to split push with HotshotGG. Doublelift needs to stay with the team now, because if they don't have Doublelift, Dignitas is going to decisively win these team fight engagements. So if they're trying to pressure that lane, Gosu Zuna is going to have to stay back. It's going to be another 4v4 situation. Now that CLG has all their ultimates back up, they can still delay Dignitas' push. They can still keep the team out of their base like they've done for forever this game. However, once that Stand United comes back up, they're going to be in dire straits, because as soon as Dignitas decides it's time to go in, it's going to be a 5v4. HotShot's going to have to know when to split push, when to come back, and they're going to need a really good time around that Stand United.
So now we see both teams kind of just dispersing once again, farming out their lanes, making sure all the lanes are pushed out from both sides, so equalizing the map presence just a little bit. But we see a ton of wards from Dignitas up in CLG's jungle, and now they're going for that dragon, just trying to extend that gold lead they had. They did pull forward a little bit more than the early game, but again, as the game goes later on, like you mentioned in game 1, Tom, it's not going to matter as much unless it's distinctively large, such as 10 or 20k. So we can call both teams about even, but now CLG, even if their inhibitor comes back up in the bottom lane, they're going to have 2 inhibitors naked. So if they go for a split push race, Zuna can comfortably defend that top lane, and Dignitas can pressure both inhibitors and then take one of their choice.
In this game, the gold counts are going to be a little bit more indicative of what's going on. There's about a 7,000 gold lead now in favor of Dignitas. A lot of that, the mid lanes are even. The top lanes are even. The AD carries relatively even. A lot of the differential, almost 4,000 of that gold, 3,000 of that gold actually, is a difference in the support characters. That means there's a stronger team fight presence for Dignitas. Their support character is 16, has level 3 of that wild growth. Nhat Nguyen only level 13. That is not going to work out well. He doesn't have level 3 of his ultimate yet. Junglers as well, 12k compared to 9k, the other 3,000 gold being acquired from the side of Dignitas. That is letting Nocturne push down towers. That's letting Nocturne pick up kills and set up kills for his team. That's converting into him dealing damage and now building a bit tanky to try to survive. That means a lot of the Iron Solari, Mikhail's Crucible, Shirelia's Reverie have been acquired on the side of Dignitas. Only Shirelia's and only Runic Bulwark have been acquired for CLG.
Meanwhile, Zuna did push away HotShot, and he placed the ward in his own blue buff this time to make sure next time HotShot shows up, how far HotShot has disengaged, to see if they have that window for Stand United. Dignitas grouping up once again. HotShot's going to be seen here with that spear. Hopefully Dignitas, if they catch a glimpse of that, they know they can initiate and count on Stand United to come in and support them. So Dignitas is still milling about in the enemy jungle. Scarra now has pretty much all of his items set, just waiting for that Leandria's Torment to be finished, and then he's good to go for the rest of the game. The only thing left for him to buy would be an enchantment on his boots. Twitch also has that extra BF sword now, finally, maybe for another Mercurial Scimitar to counteract Vayne's, and also, of course, a lot of the crowd control coming in from CLG. We'll have to wait and see. Root percentage goes on Chauster. Chauster taking so much damage, and that's what you talked about, Tom. The health percentage damage coming in with Chauster that low. He's gonna have to maybe go back and heal really quick, so they're pressuring this bottom inhibitor once again for Dignitas. Imaqtpie poking at it as Scar stands in front of him, blocking those spears. He uses the Banish's Veil to take one for free. That's going to be the inhibitor. No, not going to be able to finish it. As soon as Chauster comes in, Imaqtpie has Standing United on him, but he's still going to be bursted down by Chauster's ultimate. Nocturne jumps in from the middle of the map though, and now Crumbz picking up 1 kill against Doublelift. Now Dignitas can fully take this inhibitor and possibly the mid lane one.
Yeah, we saw Nocturne in the meantime taking down, putting pressure in that mid lane. They took down the middle inhibitor turret as well. That's 2 inhibitors now down for the price of 1. Yes, they lost their AD carry, but guess what? Chauster can, it's not Chauster, sorry, Crumbz can deal damage. Zuna has a decent amount of damage to the Wit's End, and Scar is an auto-attacking machine. Yeah, HotshotGG's been able to pick up a Lich Bane of his own. Crumbz is dropping extremely low in this one. They actually got a little bit greedy going for that 3rd tower, but look, Scar just taking damage now in the fight. Look at him trying to take on the remaining members of CLG almost solo.
He bursted down bigfatlp, now chasing down against Chauster, and Nhat Nguyen, but he gets bursted down himself by a spear. So although they haven't been hit by too many javelins yet, as soon as one of them hit, they have to disengage. So they're gonna have to back off, but they're gonna be happy. They took 2 inhibitors and then left the 3rd one open at this point. So now, Tom, can CLG turtle it enough? They really can't count on their split push capability anymore.
we do have an enchantment actually being picked up on the boots from Doublelift. So we're going to see here what enchantment is it. It is Furor. We were talking about kiting potential. We were talking about earlier, actually yesterday, during the broadcast before the prize fight between Curse and X-Quantic, how important some of these enchantments are going to be on the boots and what Furor can do for an 80 carry. That's going to let Vayne kite in these team fights because every time she auto attacks, she gets a burst of move speed equal to 12%. On top of this, Phantom Dancer has been acquired for that 5% move speed bonus. So she has 17% move speed every single time she hits somebody, so she can continue to kite away from these dive buddies of Shen and Nocturne. However, as well on the side of CLG, Hotshot has built a Lich Bane. He has basically his entire build except for that Liandry's Torment, now just acquired from the side of HotshotGG. He is a complete full build Nidalee, as is Scarra a complete full build Rise. Vayne almost completed her entire build, just needs to pick up that the Mercurial Scimitar and one more item to complete it. Imaqtpie, same thing, he wants to pick up the Quicksilver Sash to finish it up as well, maybe upgrade it into a Mercurial Scimitar. We did see Dignitas pushing the advantage because CLG has to play defensive with those two inhibitors down, took the Baron, and they're looking to go into this top lane. I think the split push from CLG has finally been dwindled down. There's only one lane left for Dignitas to take, and now CLG has to try to defend it rather than push away onto Dignitas.
Hotshot has been spotted in that bottom lane. Hopefully he tries support back as soon as possible, but the damage might be too much coming up from Dignitas. They also have that Baron buff. They're spreading out to make sure they don't get caught off guard. The inhibitor just melts, and Scar gets picked off actually by a ton of damage coming from bigfatlp, but he turns around himself. Stand United comes in to save Scar. The kill is going to go double kill for Imaqtpie. Meanwhile, Crumbz zones out Doublelift on his own. Zuna lands the taunt, and there's the Wild Growth, not able to be cleansed. Zuna picking up the third kill. This is going to be the second game going to Dignitas, tying it up at 1-1, Tom.
That means we're going to see a prize fight game number 3, Chobra. What a battle between Dignitas and CLG, and we couldn't have called it any better. Both of those teams doing exactly what they had to do to stay in contention with one another. That's what I'm looking for. 12,000 gold advantage for Dignitas. Like you said, when it starts to get to those 10,000 golds, when it starts to get those 20,000 gold at the 45-minute mark, that's when we see big leaps and bounds between the two separate teams. CLG tried to split push it out. They knew that they were losing the early game to Dignitas. They tried to separate the team fights from the split pushes. It just didn't work out for them. Dignitas had the perfect counterplay to do so. They pushed their own lanes. They kept catching all the split push. I can't even talk with how excited I am that we're going to game 3. They kept catching all the split pushers out and shut it down from CLG. Is CLG going to be trying to do the same thing in game number 3? Has Dignitas finally figured out what the secret to CLG's success has been in recent amount of times? I don't know about you guys at home, but I'm really hoping for a great game number 3, and we're going to hop into that lobby as soon as possible. So guys, stay tuned. Quick commercial break, and we'll be back with game 3 of MLG Prizefights. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the MLG Prizefights. We're going deep into the night here in New York City at the MLG Studios. My name is OptimusTom Sirfos, and joining me for this cast, his first Game 3 of the MLG Prizefights is William Chobra Cho.
Very excited to see a Game 3. Not only is it my first Game 3, but those first two games were intense. They were pretty long and drawn out. We've seen them both go back and forth in Game 1 and Game 2. Different strategies coming out, some new items coming out, and especially, of course, Scarra giving us that nice surprise with the mirror mana on Rise. What do you think we'll see in Game 3?
I don't know, but it looks like a lot of these teams have already begun to experiment or at least theorycraft what some of these new Season 3 items can do. We were talking about it during the game, actually. That mirror mana on Rise, basically it's Mana Mune on crack for him. It basically turns it into a Rise that can push down towers, give that little extra oomph on his auto attacks, much like we see Lich Bane being used on Twisted Fate or like on HotshotGG's Nidalee that we saw that game. We also saw fan favorites as well as personal player favorite champions, HotshotGG on his AP Nidalee. We had Scarra on Rise, which he absolutely loved playing in the middle lane. We hadn't seen him play that for a very long time. Gragas was picked up by GG as well. Guys, I don't really know what we're going to see in game number 3, but regardless, this is probably one of the best prize fights we've had yet at MLG.
It's been absolutely exciting, and it looks like both teams are pretty much ready for this Game 3. So as soon as we hop in, are we expecting any new bans, or are they going to go standard? We saw Teemo demanding a ban from Dignitas after that Game 1. Are they going to have to ban out Nidalee and Teemo maybe just to see at least what Hotshot has else in store? We're going to be jumping right here into the ban phase.
I have to see here. Hopefully both of these teams don't forget what champions were a big problem and a thorn in their side in game number 1. Like you said, targeting down that Teemo. Diana has been left outside of the table for all of these games so far. She's been pretty much a permaban no matter where or who you're playing against. We're gonna have to see, are some of these champions that have been considered OP at the end of season 2 slip through the cracks? Are we gonna be able to see HotshotGG Rengar? Are we gonna be able to see GG playing Diana or Scarra taking that away? We really don't know, but right out of the get-go, Evelynn and Teemo being banned out. Problem game 1. Diana does want to get in the ban hammer as well as Twisted Fate, keeping that one away from bigfatlp and also keeping away the potential for a base race or split push that we saw CLG doing in game number 1 or 2.
Yeah, game number 2. And I don't think we're going to have to expect a Nidalee ban because Dignitas handled it pretty well. They had some trouble mid-game, but as soon as they made that excellent trade with the inhibitor tower and the inner tower, top and bottom lane, they were okay with it. They pressured it, they took down that inhibitor, and then it just slowly melted away. But now we see that Rise ban coming in from CLG. They said Scarra, not only is he a good Rise player, but he showed us what mirror mana can do on it. They don't want to have to deal with that again. And then Shen, another safe ban coming out from Dignitas.
However, like we said, someone slipped through the cracks, and now we're going to see what Rengar can do in the Season 3 patch. We saw at the end of Season 2, or actually during Season 2, started out, he was broken. He built AP, he roared, and killed things in basically one shot. Then he went to an AD build, and he was broken. He just jumped on people and killed them in like one shot. Then we saw him build a little bit tanky, and he was unkillable in fights and killed people in 2 shots. So what is Rengar going to be doing in Season 3? We're finally going to get a chance to see, is it going to be HotshotGG playing Rengar in the top lane, or is Chauster going to be taking him into the jungle? Probably leaning towards Hotshot as he was playing Rengar a little bit towards the end of Season 2. But Dignitas going to take away Ezreal from Doublelift. It was a problem in game number 1. He wound up getting a quadra kill at the end of the game and really carrying CLG through game number 1. They also take away that Nunu. Could potentially be a jungle Nunu or a support Nunu, but that shuts down the ever-powerful CLG Caitlyn Nunu comp.
Yeah, I was just about to mention Nunu also slipped through. It's been banned in both Game 1 and Game 2. Dignitas picking that up. So really good points, Tom. And now we do see Kog'Maw being locked in by Doublelift, followed by Zuna from Nhat Nguyen. So Zuna and Kog'Maw, how is that going to fare?
It's a very squishy lane in the beginning stages of the game, so if there's an aggressive jungler coming out from the side of Dignitas, they had the potential to shut it down. They also had the potential to steal away Lee Sin from Chauster, but as I say that, they're going to lock in a Mumu, so I guess they're going to be going for more of that team fight composition again. They have 2 AoE ultimates with a Mumu and Nunu, as well as the True Shot Barrage coming down from Ezreal. But Kog'Maw and Zuna, there's going to be a decent amount of poke. The one thing that Zuna can do, she can poke and prod away at the enemy bottom lane to try to keep Kog'Maw safe. She's going to offer a crescendo for in team fights. Kog'Maw, of course, can run away from this. Doublelift loves going for cleanse on his AD carry so he can keep himself relatively safe in these engagements, in these trades in bottom lane, even on these late game hyper carries like Kog'Maw and Vayne. Are we going to see Kog'Maw building a little bit more in the attack speed department? kind of interesting to see that Nhat Nguyen decides to go for Sona rather than Janna. He's gone for the past 2 games on a Kog'Maw that seems like he would excel so much with that shield and just build attack speed.
Well, yesterday you were gushing about Runaan's
Oh,
Hurricane
man.
on Kog'Maw. Are we going to see that happen, or at least some variation of that? We've seen it happen in one of the games we spectated yesterday on the live client too in public matches. Runaan's Hurricane on Kog'Maw is insane. Anyone with any on-hit capability really can utilize it, but Kog'Maw, it's not about getting some cooldowns or getting another passive up. It's about just dealing more damage, putting out the pain to everyone in the team fight. Also interesting, Nasus was locked in this time. Hopefully not a placeholder this time around, because I'd be excited to see what Nasus can do in Season 3.
Well, what happened last time was we had an Elise pickup when Nasus was chosen, and considering the composition from Dignitas looked extremely similar to game number 1, I wouldn't be surprised to see Nasus being Elise. Nasus, of course, though, he could potentially excel in that top lane environment. He is going to be going up against Rengar, so I don't necessarily know how he would fare. I think Rengar might wind up winning out in trades, and that would be, there is the leave in the lobby there, so it does look like that Patoy doesn't own Elise. Eventually, he's going to wind up buying that champion because, as we've seen so far, Elise has fared very well in Season 3 games. Even though she lost in game number 1, you can build her all over the place. Leandri's Torment, of course, made her even more powerful just by stacking that magic penetration on her, allowing you to go for items like Shirelia's Reverie, in addition to Frozen Heart and Guardian Angel. Just provide yourself as a big tank and team support kind of character, while still dishing out an immense amount of pain to the enemy team. So we're going to have Rengar against Elise in the top lane, most likely. We are just assuming, though, it could just be something else that Patoy didn't have. We actually haven't gotten the note yet. We'll see when they get back into Champion Select.
I think it is safe to assume, though, and for CLG, we saw the lineup rounded out with Orianna and Lee Sin. Lee Sin, of course, we've seen all 3 games today. Not a problem at all for CLG. Even though they lost game 2, it wasn't at all because of any deficiency that came out of the jungle. It was just a matter of good trades coming up from Dignitas in terms of structures. So Chauster on his comfortable Lee Sin once again, and bigfatlp on Orianna. And we talked about how bigfatlp has grown over the past 2 seasons. Now going into Season 3, he can be a little bit more aggressive now with Chauster in the jungle. Orianna, a brilliant roamer from the mid lane.
And we also going to see a little bit more of a team fight centric composition from CLG, something we really haven't seen in these previous 2 games. Orianna with the command Shockwave going to be a great initiator for these team fights. Sona Crescendo can lock people up. In addition to this, we have HotshotGG on Rengar as well as Chauster on Lee Sin to be jumping absolutely everywhere throughout these team fight engagements. On the flip side, though, from Dignitas, Scarra getting one of his favorite champions of all time in Katarina. Even more so than he liked playing Ryze is Scarra playing Katarina. One of those champions that, like we said, during the bans phase, slipped through the cracks. They took out Evelynn, they took out Diana, Katarina's left open, and we know how scary Scarra can be when he's playing a Katarina.
Especially if he gets that reset, he's going to be devastating against Counter Logic Gaming. But you're talking about team fight based comps coming up from CLG this time around. Orianna can initiate not only with Chauster on that Lee Sin, but with Rengar. Rengar can use his ultimate, go into stealth, have that ball, and then jump in with that shockwave, just like you said. On Dignitas' side, they're again really counting on Amumu to start the fight, though. They have to have him get in and put out that Curse of the Sad Mummy, and CLG does have methods to stop it immediately. If Lee Sin is the one that's not banished class, but right next to him, he can use his ultimate to kick him away. We can have Crescendo coming out just to stop the Curse of the Sad Mummy for disengage and reset of the fight. It's really going to come down to how quickly and, can Crumbz jump onto the right target at the right time. If he gets it, the follow-up's going to be absolutely monstrous from Dignitas. But if not, CLG can turn it really quickly around.
And we're looking down the lineups, like you said. Dignitas, they have one real initiation method for the lockdown. If they do land the Curse of the Sad Mummy, Absolute Zero is going to make sure a lot of those champions stay in place. If they don't have flashes up, it's probably going to result in very quick kills, which will give Scarra's Katarina that reset, and she'll be able to decimate everybody throughout the team fight there. Flip side, though, CLG, you mentioned it before. Crescendo to stop the Curse of the Sad Mummy from Amumu if he decides to initiate. Lee Sin, of course, can disengage that as well. We have the Command Shockwave, which will restart the fight in favor of CLG if that they do get to disengage, or, of course, being used to peel Amumu off of them in addition to everything else they have. Dignitas now, they have a composition that looks like they want to try to win the laning phase. They want to farm up a little bit and get into a point in time where they can get in a good engagement, which is what CLG has been doing the past 2 games. Now CLG has that, let's go for team fights. Let's engage against Dignitas. The same kind of thing Dignitas was running in the first 2 games. It kind of flip sides on this. Dignitas still is falling back on that Curse of the Sad Mummy and Absolute Zero ultimate to get a good team fight engagement going on. But now that CLG's got a little counter team fight going on to them, is Dignitas going to be looking just to farm up, win the lane phase, and get Scarra going on Katarina? Or are they going to be trying to do something else?
We'll have to wait and see as we're waiting on the delay to go down. Going into game 2, also, notably, is Crumbz going to be tanky enough this time around, even if he gets sent initiation down? Game 1, Dignitas actually had a really good lead, but they just started melting away. Despite good setups from team fights, they would go and get the lockdown, but as long as someone was left alive from CLG, they would just wrap up, clean up against that Amumu, take away the front line, and then that left Imaqtpie running or dead. So we'll see if they're able to counteract that this time around against CLG.
They got a little bit tankier support on that Nunu, but like we said, has Crumbz learned from his past Amumu mistakes? Guys, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll find out who the victor of this MLG prize fight is going to be. Is it CLG Prime or is it Dignitas? Game 3 coming up right after this. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the concluding game number 3 of this Wednesday evening's MLG Prize Fight series. My name is OptimusTom. Joining me by my side, my ever-vigilant co-caster, and I'm going to go say it again, karaoke master, Mr. William Chobra Cho. And Will, we got an excellent game 3, almost loaded up for you guys. Once again, Patoy needs a new computer, and that's what we're waiting on before we get into this level 1 start.
Game 3 in tonight's prize fight. What an excellent series it's been so far. No matter how this game goes, both teams have shown us what the preseason patch is capable of, what we're waiting to see in the next season, and now we've loaded into this game, so let's see if we see any action at level 1 this time around.
Alright, so we do have the level 1 items being bought all across the board. Once again, we have those mini wards, we have those total biscuits of rejuvenation being bought up. Nothing but consumables on the side of both support. Actually, gonna flip that one around for a second, because now that Nhat Nguyen has been playing Zuna, he's gonna be starting with the Fairy Charm start, something that we did see Patoy do in one of these games.
So Zuna going ahead and making sure having that sustain for the lane phase. Meanwhile, otherwise, we again, like you said, nothing too out of the ordinary. We do see that Imaqtpie picked up a longsword once again instead of something more standard, such as straight boots and pots, or maybe even a Doran's blade. Meanwhile, Kog'Maw, Imaqtpie picking up that boots and 3 start. Imaqtpie actually going to go ahead and check that tri-brush with his Ezreal Mystic Shot.
He's just going to barely miss out on Doublelift. Doublelift did take one Mystic Shot to the face, but not another one. So they do know that someone is there trying to scout them out. This ball on the river from CLG, of course, is going to see if Dignitas has been motioning anywhere to try to put one of those wards down by the Wraiths. They are going to want to try to keep tabs on Lee Sin. However, on the opposite side of the map, Chauster is actually starting over the enemy Wraiths, has a ward down in that area in addition to everything else, and we could potentially see him trying to steal away the red buff from the side of Dignitas.
And I don't think they're really going to spot anything out of that, because we have Ghost of Zuna sitting in that tri-brush, but he's not going to see vision if Lee Sin goes through the Wraith and then onto the red buff. So Zuna's probably just going to wait until the minion wave catches up, go to lane, and then the red buff is going to be gone against Crumbz. We'll see how it happens, but in bottom lane, Nhat Nguyen does get caught by the duo of Dignitas, takes a lot of burst, does safely get to the tower, but doesn't have time to go back to base, so is forced to blow one of her pots and actually just try to stay in lane.
Interestingly, that they use the health potion rather than that total biscuit of rejuvenation. We are going to see as we hover back over Nhat Nguyen is regenerating, that biscuit is going to heal 80 health and 50 mana, whereas the pot is going to heal 150 over 15 seconds. So it's a little bit less, so he is saving that for more of a situation where he wants to get into an engagement rather than going for his sustain all by himself to keep him back up to full health. So good choice of burning that health pot over the total biscuit. In addition to this, you are going to get mana when you use the biscuit, so you usually want to save that, like I said, when you're going into an engage or after an engage, to try to keep yourself in that lane.
Meanwhile, Chauster did successfully steal that red buff away from Crumbz. Crumbz still no idea just yet, but he'll see soon enough. No level 2 gank, but we do see that Hotshot jumped onto Zuna right away, showing some early level aggression. Rengar, of course, as soon as he gets that roar, he's going to be able to sustain a little bit better. So Zuna forced to pop that pot, but Hotshot's still content with where he is. Crumbz finally found out his red buff has his stolen. Can't really do much about it, but he has the knowledge now, so we'll see what he decides to do. Is he going to counteract it with some more ganks or just try to farm up the smaller camps a little bit more? Looking at this mid lane, again, starting with a bit of a more passive farming start, but Big Fat is going to want to harass Scarra with a good dodge already in lane with that Shunpo. Bottom lane, Imaqtpie going pretty aggressive against Nhat Nguyen, but Doublelift trying to turn it around with his slow. He's actually putting down a lot of damage, forces the exhaust, but now has to blow his own cleanse. Imaqtpie coming back with that blood boil, and now both teams are really low in this bottom lane.
We have an Ignite being used in that engagement as well, so Qtpie's Ignite, in addition to the exhaust from Patoy, have been burned in just response to the cleanse from Doublelift. So even though Nhat Nguyen's flash is down, he has his exhaust up. If they try to go for another trade, CLG may come out on top of this just because of the fact they haven't burned that additional summoner spell. We did mention that Amumu had his red buff stolen away. He's not going to be super sad about that. Of course he'll be sad because he's Amumu and he cries all the time anyway. However, he's not going to be as sad as if that blue buff had been stolen away, so he will be able to continue farming up these smaller creep cans. He may level up a little bit slower than Chauster, but Chauster did go back to base a little bit early, picked up some boots of his own in addition to a couple wards. We're going to see Chauster going throughout the jungle, warding up and keeping his team safe like we always do.
Yeah, so although the offensive or aggressive summoner spells are blown out from Dignitas, they do both have their flashes. So we'll see if Chauster wants to try to set up for a gank bottom or if he's going to go mid. Make sure that Scarra doesn't get a chance to build a big fat LP. Just trying to make sure that Scarra is zoned. Of course, Orianna has that range advantage, not to mention with the ball, with the command attack and command dissonance, has even more advantage in terms of harass. Chauster now going through the enemy jungle. Is he going to set up for a gank from behind or just checking out the wolves? So he's making sure that he actually missed the Sonic Wave but decided to just turn around anyway. Not sure if he's aware of how far his Sonic Wave went, but Crumbz trying to farm up with those smaller camps. Meanwhile, Chauster waiting in that middle lane. Imaqtpie and Patoy are both pretty low in the bottom. Chauster's gonna back off that middle. He is seen by Scar. Pings going down from Dignitas.
And we do see he's going to want to going back. We do have a lot of damage going on the Qtpie in this trade. Doublelift once again. Looks like an Ice Blast goes out from Patoy, but here comes Crumbz. Is he going to be able to convert with a bandage toss onto Doublelift? Does wind up connecting. There's a tantrum in addition to the despair. However, it's not going to be a lot of damage to Doublelift. Just going to walk away from that one. And Crumbz only relieving some pressure in bot lane.
Yeah, I mean, Imaqtpie was way too low to try to come back in for a kill despite the bandage toss, so Dignitas just gonna have to back off there. Scar is also taking a lot of damage from Big Fat LP, but Big Fat's running a little bit lower in mana now, so if that starts to drain out, Scar's of course gonna have a little bit of a better time, especially if Big Fat has to go back to base first. Scar's just trying to last it out at this point.
To see is Chauster going to come around to try to get a gank on Scar. We'll wind up finding Crumbz trying to take his wolves away. Now we have a fight between the two junglers. Orianna is going to be zoned out behind this tower unless she decides to dive through. Bouncing blades from Scar is not going to be enough, as it does just see that Chauster decides to back off of this one.
Yeah, and even already we see that Chauster was able to take some pain from Katarina, but in the early game it's not going to matter too much. He knows that Crumbz is now in the middle and Katarina had to go back, so Chauster's going to happily take this Wraith away from Crumbz, make sure that the invade he had at level 1 stays as an advantage. Meanwhile, up top, Hotshot just farming away while Zuna has gone back to base, picks up that cloth armor. Or no, didn't go back to base, actually sitting at the tower, but has that cloth armor to try to counteract some of that damage. But again, lots of pots and just that cloth armor, it's not going to be enough as soon as Hotshot builds up. We talked about this. Rengar can build anything and still do a lot of damage, so Zuna is a little bit behind in that regard.
Yeah, and he's also losing out a bit on CS. Has to wait for the lane to push to his tower just because Hotshot was harassing him early on by jumping out of those brushes, just being able to put a lot of pain down onto the Elise in the early stages of the game. Taking advantage of the fact that technically now she is a bit more of a caster than a bruiser, if anything, and Rengar can just jump on top of her, has the more damage output, has a bit more tankiness to himself compared to Elise. We do see bottom lane Cutie-Pie and Patoy just kind of freezing this lane up a little bit. It is going to start to push back out. Doublelift did go back, picked up a Vampiric Scepter first, whereas Cutie-Pie doing a bit of an old school Ezreal build with a Brutalizer first before even going for boots. This is what he did on Kale.
And, you know, with the new options, this could be really good. Ezreal, of course, a ranged 80 carry, but has a little bit of a hint of an 80 caster. But we do see Hotshot jumping in with his ultimate. He is going to be spotted, but it doesn't matter. There's a command protect, but they don't get the ultimate onto Scar. The Sonic Wave does connect, though, and First Blood goes to Chauster with that jump through the towers.
Is Crumbz going to be able to catch on to everybody here? The only person low in that fight was bigfatlp. However, he looks like he's going to get away. Crumbz trying to chase after HotshotGG. Hotshot's going to get a quick flash over the wall. He has actually found Cutie-Pie and Patoy, and Ken Dignitas trying to turn something out of this.
Patoy does get the Ice Blast, and now Cutie-Pie is just going to try to chase through as much as possible. Patoy trying to chase up with that Blood Boy, flashes and gets another Ice Blast down. HotshotGG puts down a good snare onto Imaqtpie, but Exhaust now coming out to Hotshot, so they do pick up the kill, but so much has been used just to pick up that one chase kill.
On top of this, we had Chauster coming up into the top lane, taking that red buff away from the side of Dignitas. We also see here, Nguyen taking a lot of damage in mid lane. He's going to wind up going down. Cutie-Pie chased through a couple towers for that one. bigfatlp, though, is going to return the favor and wind up picking up a kill on Cutie-Pie.
So we do have some trades going down. I guess, you know, in the end, Dignitas did pick up that second kill onto Nhat, but bigfatlp right there to pick up the equalizing kill. So CLG, the score is tied up 2-2. CLG has a slight lead though, 500, 600 gold, and now bigfatlp gonna start farming up this mid lane once again as Scarra has to go back again, and Crumbz still falling more and more behind in the jungle. He does have an advantage in terms of creep number, but what camps did he have? That's the important part. He has both red buffs stolen, so that's a huge disadvantage already.
You can see already he has about a 300 gold disadvantage. One of those, of course, is going to be First Blood that has been given to Lee Sin. So Amumu's CS advantage kept him in the game for a little bit until we saw Lee Sin picking up that kill in the mid lane. So that is, like you said, Amumu falling a bit behind the jungler. Kind of a bit of a flip side from what we've seen in the previous couple of games where Amumu, or at least Crumbz, is the one taking advantage of Chauster in the jungle. We do see Cutie-Pie going back, picking up a Shiva. Mid lane Scar trying to go in here on bigfatlp. Chauster's going to show up now, and that's just going to be a quick kill for GG.
A little bit of a miscalculation on Scar on how much damage he can do. Crumbz is here to defend this tower, but I don't think they're looking for a fight. CLG just wants to poke down this tower. They know that Crumbz can't really take them both at this point. Meanwhile, bottom, Doublelift has to flash out of the absolute zero, but the true shot barrage hits. Patoy picks up the kill onto Nhat Nguyen. Imaqtpie not willing to jump into the tower to try to pick up that kill, but they're going to be happy with this. Doublelift has to go back, and they should be able to put a lot of damage onto the outer tower in the bottom lane.
It's not the most common thing in the world where you hear Cutie-Pie's not the one that wants to try to arcane shift in the tower to pick up a kill. We saw him do it in the mid lane, but speaking of mid lane, Crumbz trying to get a curse to the side, moving down to save this tower. Hotshot going to come all the way around from top lane. Zuna not moving there at all, and it looks like that CLG going to take another kill and take the gold lead over Dignitas.
And, you know, it's really refreshing to see Hotshot starting to roam a lot more because Rengar, of course, utilizes that. But Hotshot's really used to just being in his lane, doing his thing. Like you said, being on that island in the top lane. But now he's the one roaming around, setting up the ganks for mid lane. They're trying to make sure that the mid lane doesn't get started from Dignitas. They don't want Scar to get into his comfort zone. He was forced back already several times, killed off 2 times. bigfatlp has a 25 CS lead on top of 2 kills and 2 assists.
Something I want to talk about on the side of Dignitas is Cutie-Pie went back and got his boots on his 3rd trip back. He got brutalized the first time, Shein the second time, and now he's picked up his pair of just regular old level 1 boots. So using that Blood Boil to try to give himself the extra move speed to just outpace his lane. He knew that combo was going to be squishy in the beginning stages of the game, not be able to dish out a lot of damage anyway, so he went for these items first, and he's been punishing Doublelift because of it. He's been punishing the enemy team of CLG because of it. 2-1-1, even though he's a little behind in CS, take a quick look at the gold counts, ladies and gentlemen. He is ahead 500 gold because of those kills from around the map. He's going to try to outclass Doublelift again, and if CLG's put in that defensive position where Doublelift just has to try to split off and farm, guess what? He's Kongwa. He's not going to be as safe as he was on Vayne last time, who has a tumble to escape, and that's going to be really, really good for Dignitas.
But look at what just happened. CLG took down that middle outer tower. Now they're pushing down against the inner one. This is what we saw in game 1. They're just pressuring down mid, allowing Big Fat and Chauster to roam around the map. Meanwhile, bottom lane, we do see Doublelift going down in a double double kill to Imaqtpie, tries to get an equalizing double kill onto Dignitas, but the Acadian surprise not going to be enough. Scarra had jumped down to the bottom lane. Dignitas trying to equalize. They're up now 5-4, but that leaves this middle tower entirely open as we were talking about. The inner tower almost down. Zuna is showing up, though Chauster needs to watch out. There's a command shockwave, followed by a crystal stat money from Crumbz. It's going to be a 1-for-1 trade. Can Zuna chase down bigfatlp? He's going for it. They both have similar damage output, though, but Zuna has the double buff now, so he gets the cocoon down onto Orianna, bursts him down, and Scarra actually comes in for the quick kill pickup to put Scarra back in the game.
And that's the turnaround that Dignitas wanted. They kept the mid lane tower alive, so the forward pressure has been alleviated from that mid lane. They take 2 quick kills down in the bottom lane. Too quick for me to even catch on camera from that one. Didn't even see Scarra roaming down in that bottom lane. They take the tower because of that one. They mop up 2 more kills, so it is a all in all a 4 for none, or 4 for 1 in favor of Dignitas. They take 1 tower in addition to this, and they've shot themselves up. They equalized out in gold now, 1 tower to 1 tower, 2 kills ahead. That first blood gold, a bit of the farm differential, just hanging it in there for CLG.
Ooh, Patoy trying to set up for a gank, but actually gets seen by that ward. Hotshot puts out a lot of pain, but Zuna comes back in with the cocoon. This could turn around. Hotshot uses the ultimate to maybe disengage. No, he's going to jump right back in onto Zuna, but the tower is still there. Zuna has that double buff. Patoy, of course, still in the area. Hotshot going to just back off for now, push up, because he has brought down both champions really low. So we'll see how much damage Hotshot can do to this top lane to maybe give CLG some more breathing room.
That was something I was about to point out, but you said it all too well for me. This Hotshot is dangerous with Rengar. Rengar is a dangerous champion. They both had to back off because Hotshot could have just towered over and probably picked up a kill on both of them. Now that's going to let Hotshot, Chauster, and GG come in here, invade, take away this red buff, which is something that Zuna was doing a lot of pain with in game number 1. Take it away now, so Hotshot's got it on his side. Zuna's going to have to be very, very careful when they get in these fights.
So, speaking of different builds, Doublelift picked up that Wriggle's Lantern. Do you think that was just a defensive purpose for the lane because of how much damage he was taking early?
I think it's building a little bit of extra armor to counteract the fact that PewDiePie has been going for these armor penetration builds. We talked about it in game number 1, how the Brutalizer was going to shred away at the enemy's life totals because of it was penetrating the armor. That's something that a lot of bottom laners don't normally build. Wriggle's Lantern means that Kalma, he's going to get a little bit of extra oomph to his farm. He's going to be able to one-shot some of those minions and be able to pick up a little bit more cash from that. He's also going to be able to survive trades a little bit better with Ezreal. Ezreal is one of those champions that can build a Trinity Force, and we see a Phage being hovered over with those Ruby Crystal and the Longsword in addition to a Sheen picked up. Kalma, he really can't do that, so he's going for the Wriggle's Lantern to try to equalize those trades that Ezreal is going to be forcing upon him.
And this time around, Crumbz going straight for the Aegis of the Legion right away, so a little bit more tankiness coming out. Still has that machete in store. We'll see if that turns into any form of Spirit Stone, or if he's just going to keep it and maybe even sell it off for bigger tanky items later in the game. Meanwhile, we do see that bottle now coming down onto Patoy, who is 1-0-5. So again, brilliant support work coming from Patoy, but can Dignitas last it out? That was the problem in game 1. Doublelift now returning to lane in the bottom. Scarra and Patoy are both there, though. They cleared out. The Dragon seems to be of high interest from both teams this time around, and Chauster's going to be hiding in this brush, waiting for Scarra. He starts the fight, but he spots Patoy right away, and Crumbz now coming in from the lane, barely misses the bandage toss, and there's a distance to allow Chauster to run away. Chauster wants to play it safe, uses his ult to push back Patoy, and this might be the Dragon for Dignitas.
That might have been a saving grace for Dignitas. I'm thinking about what would have happened if Crumbz connected with that bandage toss. He would have used the Curse of the Sad Mummy to lock down on Chauster. However, Crescendo would have come across from Sona, from Nhat Nguyen, and there are 3 members of CLG there. Orianna was in the mid lane. They could have completely turned that one around. So perhaps beneficial that Crumbz misses that bandage toss. One of the many reasons there why Dignitas is able to safely take that dragon. CLG trying to contest it, not really being able to do it, but their farm still keeping them ahead in this game. That extra tower they've taken down, keeping them all but even with the gold, despite Dignitas taking the first dragon of the game.
And so now the Phage has been finished on the part of Ezreal, being played by Imaqtpie, now saving up for that Zeal. Meanwhile, on the other side, we do see the recurve bow coming out on Doublelift. We'll have to wait and see what that gets built into, but maybe
that could be the Hurricane.
Could be the Hurricane, and that would be very exciting to see. Meanwhile, mid lane, bandage toss misses onto bigfatlp. Meanwhile, Chauster lands the Sonic Wave onto Crumbz to push him off. Patoy just holding the lane, waiting for Imaqtpie to come in and farm it up. Hotshot's waiting for Zuna in the top, though. Catches Zuna in his own jungle, but decides to just disengage, chasing Zuna off, keeping the lane to himself.
We're going to have to see now what CLG's next plan of attack is. They've been content with pushing down these towers pretty aggressively. Even though they're not going for the same kind of split pushing that they've been doing, they are grouping up a little bit more. Hotshot's been the one that's kind of been Rambo. Has to pop his ultimate here as Crumbz decides to come in. And that is going to halt him from pushing for now. But CLG on the opposite side, or not really opposite side, but just down the river, going to be trying to apply some pressure to this mid lane and continue to invade Dignitas' jungle, keep their buffs away from them, and keep them on the back foot so CLG can farm up offensively, just like game number 1, and try to get Doublelift in a position where he's going to be super tanky and super, not tanky, but super fed and super carry.
Crumbz is hungry for this kill, lands the Bandage Toss at max range, but Curse of the Sad Mummy is going to be denied, and there's a command shockwave beautifully placed, and the crescendo following up. Doublelift picks up 1 kill against Crumbz. Absolute Zero coming in to save this fight, but Imaqtpie already has to run with that exhaust on him, along with the Ignite. Doublelift now hungry for blood, has that red buff, he's chasing it, lands the ultimate onto Imaqtpie. Second one picks up the second kill for Doublelift, and now CLG is pushing against this middle lane against Dignitas.
Doublelift going for unhit effect Kog'Maw, has acquired a wit's end before that engagement, and that's what we were talking about. Had Crumbz landed that bandage toss before the dragon fight, that could have been the same result right there. CLG just collapsed in on that one. Chauster being able to quickly react with his Lee Sin mechanics, get himself out of that situation, safeguard Iron Will combo over to an ally over the wall. Curse of the Sad Mummy hits nobody. CLG doesn't get locked up. They reinitiate with the command shockwave and the crescendo, being completely able to turn that one around in Dignitas. 2 kills, both of them wind up going to Doublelift. He's getting a lot of farm, 140 CS compared to 106 of QtPie, and last time Doublelift got ahead of QtPie, it resulted in him completely carrying CLG to game 1 victory.
You know, another big problem is in game 1, Zuna played a huge role with his top lane Elise, but Hotshot has kept Zuna locked in at this tower, even pushing him back several times, even without his ultimate. So Dignitas is playing one man short because CLG, of course, this was their plan. Hotshot wanted to stay in that top lane, even though he roamed a little bit in the lane phase. As soon as it broke down, as soon as the rest of his team caught up and was strong enough, he said, I'll keep Zuna here. Zuna was a problem in game 1, and now Dignitas having to work without as much of a front line and, you know, sustained damage coming out from that Elise.
And one thing that really worked out for Hotshot was he was being able to bully around Elise in the beginning of the laning phase, which means that Elise was afraid of him. So when Hotshot was missing, Elise was hugging the tower because he thought that, oh, Rengar is going to be in a bush. That's going to be extremely bad for me. If he decides to jump out, he's going to burst me down. I'm going to take a lot of damage. Hotshot used that intimidation factor to be able to roam around the map. He set up ganks and he set up things in the mid lane, let his team take that 2-tower advantage, or 1-tower advantage that they wanted to. 2 towers, yeah, I thought that one was down in the mid lane that they wanted to do, just like in game number 1. Look at how much pressure they're able to put across the map, all because of that pressure they've alleviated from the mid lane, how far they pushed on the side of the map from Dignitas.
Meanwhile, top lane, there's the repel, but it's just going to come straight down. Chauster's been waiting for it. Hotshot puts down the bolas, but Patoy coming in for the save. Scarra showing up for some more threat. But bigfatlp is here too, so CLG now pressuring the top lane. The tower is low, so Dignitas, I don't think should stick around. There's the cocoon to land, but there's the true shot rush trying to push them back. Command shockwave misses Zuna as HotshotGG actually goes back so deep. Patoy decides this is the time to strike back, uses the absolute zero, not going to pick up a kill on either side, but can Dignitas keep the push away? Crumbz trying to land that bandage toss from over the wall, not going to happen. Cocoon lands onto Chauster, but they don't want to blow off their abilities on just one target yet again. They've realized their mistake, so both teams going to back off, which means CLG, if they stick around for just a couple more seconds, they should be able to take that top tower. But look at this bottom lane. Doublelift left all alone. That was all without the 80 carry for CLG, and that's going to be a free tower for CLG Prime.
Dignitas needed to connect on that bandage toss. They needed not to take so much poke damage. They burned the command shockwave, so they burned the initiation method besides the crescendo that CLG had. If they landed the bandage toss and Curse of the Sad Mummy, we saw Doublelift split pushing away. He was not grouped up with his team. There's no way they were going to be able to take a 5v4 team fight. Dignitas needed to push that advantage. Unfortunately, they weren't able to connect with it. CLG gets the brilliant disengage, and once again, it looks like it's going to be the Doublelift show. They're completely peeling for him. They're keeping him away from the enemy team. He is farming up like a monster. When he does get engaged in these team fights, he's the one picking up kills, as is Chauster, so he can keep the vision all over the map and keep that AD carry they want to protect safe.
HotShot starting the fight against Crumbz, but Crumbz trying to turn it back around. Scarra jumps in with his ultimate, but brilliant crescendo coming out from Nhat Nguyen. Doublelift picks up that kill and then disengages immediately. Now they turn back around as Chauster joins them. Can they jump in? He safeguards the HotShot to try to gain some distance. Ultimate's coming out from Doublelift, landing on the targets, but a cocoon coming out from Zuna is going to stop the engage for now.
We have picked up a BF sword in addition to a pickaxe on Doublelift's very interesting Kog'Maw build. I thought it was going to be going for some on-hit effects with the Wriggles Lantern and the Wit's End, something we haven't seen from an AD Kog'Maw build in, well, almost forever. However, now it looks to be he's going to be going for that Infinity Edge, which of course is going to provide a massive damage spike. He's getting a lot of farm. Maybe he just thinks that, hey, instead of going for this kind of build, I'm just going to go for the straight damage with the Infinity Edge. Wit's End is just going to be a bonus. It's going to protect me from the double AP composition coming out from Dignitas anyway. 3-1-0, 179 CS. This is letting CLG just roam all over the map and take control. This is the CLG we saw in Game 1 that we were afraid of, and Dignitas was going to want to get into a team fight to respond with. Now Dignitas doesn't have as strong as a team fight composition when CLG wants to, and they're losing out because of it.
A 2v1 fight going up at top, but Shockwave comes in from Orianna, keeps Scarra locked out. Scarra's going to go down. Are they going to chase down Crumbz? There's the bullets coming out. Target is on LP though. Zuna coming in with Patoy. There's the Blood Boil. There's the Repel, cutting off the escape route from bigfatlp. Dignitas could turn this around. Absolute Zero is huge. Picks up the kill for Orianna. HotShot, despite his tankiness, is now up against 1v3. They split brilliantly to try to find him. Patoy's going to spot him, but can they chase through? Nhat comes in with the speed buff, and Patoy's going to have to disengage until his teammates come through. Shirley's Reverie gets popped by Nhat Nguyen, and HotShot's going to escape.
That is a very quick Shirley's Reverie being acquired by Nhat Nguyen. In addition to that, 0, 3, and 4 has a lot of extra gold there. HotShot, of course, doing a really good job. We saw the initiation that they wanted to get on the Scarra. The command Shockwave going off of the command Protect on the HotshotGG's Rengar. They wound up picking up 2 kills there for only the price of 1. CLG taking their minor victories all over the map. Look how far ahead they are. Look how far pushed forward into Dignitas' base they are.
Scarra now jumping onto HotShot once again, but he's not taking that much damage. He still has a lot of distance to run away for, but Imaqtpie not able to catch up in time, so HotShot's going to get out. He's actually just going to come back in and pressure, and this is what HotShot does. He just keeps the enemy occupied, and he's doing it all over the map while CLG takes the Baron at 23 minutes. CLG is winning this fight all over the place. They have the push, they have the team fights, and now they have the Baron, Tom.
I think the thing that I'm most impressed with from CLG is the fact that they have so much composure after drawing the game out against Dignitas, after a crushing defeat where they were trying to do everything in their power to get Doublelift and HotShot into the game to get carried by them. HotShot had a complete build. Doublelift was almost at a complete build. Dignitas tore them apart and broke apart their strategy. They come back into this game, they go, hey, that was game number 2, this is game number 3. They go back to what they were doing in game number 1 and how well it worked against Dignitas, only they do it with a bit of a twist. Now they have the superior team fight composition to that of Dignitas. What Dignitas' strength was in the previous 2 games is no longer there. CLG identifies this. They are grouping up. They are getting team engagements. They're going for 3-man ganks. They're going for 4 or 5-man engages on the enemy team, and they're shutting down Dignitas because guess what? Dignitas simply isn't playing that style this game, and because of that, CLG's identified. They're shutting them down, and look at this. It's an 8,000 gold lead at about 25 minutes.
And now we do see that Lee Sin, being played by Chauster, picks up that Hex Drinker, and HotShot actually picked up the Locket of the Iron Solari, so just going straight for more tankiness like you talked about, Tom. What does Dignitas have to do to come back in this game? Can they rely on maybe just turtling? Is that even possible against so much pressure and so much of a lead by CLG?
What Dignitas wants to do, if they decide to turtle, if they decide to farm up, they have to do it very wisely, and they have to make sure they keep tabs on Doublelift, because the longer they try to pull this game out, the more powerful Doublelift is going to become. What they want to do is they want to burn one of the initiation methods from CLG. Whether they get rid of the Crescendo or the Command Shockwave probably going to be the better one of these because that eliminates the HotshotGG Rengar initiation method. So if they burn that ultimate from Orianna, make it miss, or maybe only hit one person who gets out safely, then they can go back on the aggressive. They need to land a good Curse of the Sad Mummy on the counter initiation in order to catch CLG out of place, or be able to use that that cocoon from Zuna to catch someone from CLG out and then have that benefit for them. But they're not going to be able to really turn that around until that ultimate gets used up. With this Baron buff from CLG, even then it's going to be very dangerous.
Crumbz takes a lot of damage, gets caught by the shockwave, has to use his Curse of the Sad Mummy, but Doublelift is still going to go on a rampage by picking up that kill. Beautiful crescendo picks up 2 people, double kill for Doublelift. He's still charging through a triple kill for Doublelift. He's now chasing down the rest of the team, but they all have gone away. Scarra barely making back. No, he's going to be taken down by Big Foul. That's a free tower and an inhibitor for CLG. Dignitas is looking very grim.
Yeah, and CLG just winning that team fight outright. They had both their initiation methods. They burned the Curse of the Sad Mummy, what Dignitas needed to turn that team fight around. They're not going to waste any time. CLG just going to push down, takes Nexus turret number 1. Nexus turret number 2 is down. Patoy and Crumbz are going to come up, but they have no ultimates available. CLG in this quick fashion here going to take game number 3 over Dignitas. And what an exciting best of 3 we've had tonight, Chobra.
That was a quick turn of events, Tom. A 26-minute victory, 14-9, and nearly or over a 9K gold lead for CLG Prime. The first 2 games were long and drawn out, back and forth, but CLG decided they didn't want to waste any time. Doublelift was already ahead, looking really strong. They just charged right through.
It was absolutely insane. We saw a completely rejuvenated CLG. Look at that score screen, 14-9. The kills weren't exactly high in that game. We could see the timer, 26 minutes and 45 seconds. That was all it took for Doublelift in that game to get 6-1-1, 11.2k gold, 228 creep score, Infinity Edge, Wriggle's Lantern, Wit's End. Looks like a mobile fire guide, but it works.
It was beautifully played out by Doublelift, and you know, they really nailed it. You know, they had the crescendos going. They dodged away from the Curse of the Sad Mummy. They had some good shockwaves. A couple missed, but it didn't matter because the ones that hit were the important ones. It's set up for the rest of the team. We talked about how Hotshot loves to be on that island. We were a little bit surprised at his roaming in the beginning, but then he kept Zuna locked down in the top lane. CLG is going to take it away 2-1 tonight.
Not only that, but they take away a cool $1,000 cash prize in there for their efforts. But Dignitas looked absolutely sharp in these games. They may have been a little bit rattled in game number 3. Like we said, they were going for these big team fight engagements. They were going for these big team fight compositions. CLG shut it down in game number 1 by applying pressure back and then never grouping up to get that team fight that Dignitas wanted. Game number 2, they had to combat the split pushes from both sides of Italy and Vayne from CLG. They had to try to shut that down and take an inhibitor by themselves while sacrificing some of their own turrets to do so in order to force CLG into a defensive posture where they're able to catch them out and finally use that team composition to their benefit. Game number 3, they come in thinking CLG is going to do something the same, but CLG takes a late pick Orianna. They wind up going for another team fight composition of their own. Sona, in addition to that, with their crescendos, like you said, Nhat Nguyen was spot on with those. Dignitas was not ready for it. Their team fight engagement just a little bit poor in that matchup, and CLG takes it away from Dignitas.
So we've seen today, not only did we see some roster changes in both teams because of recent events, they had to both use subs, but we've seen interesting builds from both teams. We saw, like you mentioned, Kog'Maw coming out with that on-hit build. We saw Rise from Scar bringing out that Muramana. I'm expecting to see that a lot in pub games now because we never thought of it, but seeing those stats, it's devastating against the enemy team. This is what we were looking forward to in the first week of this live patch, and the pro teams having a chance to showcase what they've researched so far.
Intervention all across all the boards here at the MLG Prizefights. Regardless, so like we said, CLG Prime going to take a victory over Team Dignitas, 2-1. $1,000 prize does go to CLG. And ladies and gentlemen, if you think we're done this week at MLG, not yet. We are going to be coming back tomorrow evening. Of course, you have your regularly scheduled StarCraft, Halo, and Call of Duty, but we also have the Riot Season 3 Challenger Circuit. The round of 8 is going to be broadcast same time, same place tomorrow evening, Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Myself and Chobra once again going to be bringing you that one, guys. But until then, stay tuned. MajorLeagueGaming.tv. You can find all the VODs if you missed this very long, entertaining series. Other than that, guys, we are going to be peacing out for the night. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and tune in tomorrow night for the Challenger Circuit from Riot Season 3.